It was a beautiful sunny morning, and the archery competition was being held with a huge number of spectators watching. One of the competitors hit the bull's eye of the target over and over again, which surprised the observers. It was the youngest participant of the championship, and he was preparing to make his last shot in this competition. This guy's name was Yu Sung-hyun, and he radiated self-confidence, realizing that he could become the winner of the competition right now. The commentators of the match said that the young man hit the bull's eye every time, and none of the participants had yet repeated his incredible result. Everyone was looking forward to Yu Sung-hyun's final shot to see if it would be as perfect as before. The boy concentrated and was ready to make his last shot and prove to everyone that he was the best, despite being the youngest. Yu Sung-hyun shot an arrow that headed towards the target with incredible speed. It hit the center of the target, and no one in the audience had any more doubts that Yu Sung-hyun was going to be the winner. The fans were chanting the boy's name because he had a lot of fans who were looking forward to the announcement of the first place. Yu Sang-hyun was immediately congratulated by his coach and friends who were with him at the time. Absolutely everyone was sure that the young man was a real genius and his abilities were an incredible gift. Suddenly, a piece of paper flew into his face and knocked him unconscious. His boss started shouting, asking what he was thinking so hard that he couldn't hear anything around him. Yu Sung-hyun didn't know what to say and simply apologized for his inattention at work. The boss was very angry with him and ordered him to redo all the documents. Yu Sung-hyun bent down and immediately picked up the papers from the floor, and his hand was shaking very badly. The boss looked at this and asked why they needed a brainless archer with an injured hand in the company. He did not answer because he realized that he could not lose his job, even though he did not like it. The young man left the boss's office holding the papers in his hands and breathed a sigh of relief as another terrible day at work was over. Yu Sung-hyun returned home that evening and replayed the moment when he became the youngest champion of the competition. It was one of the happiest moments in his life, because it was then that he was doing what he liked best. 10 long years have passed since then, and a lot has changed. The guy recalled that archery was everything to him, but this sport required serious financial investments. Yu Sung-hyun lived with his grandmother, and the only way out was to get a scholarship, so he devoted himself to training, and in the end he became one of the best. He liked being a young talent who showed great promise. The guy believed in his destiny and a bright future, but one incident changed his whole life. Yu Sung-hyun missed his sports past very much because he always wanted to do it and put a lot of effort into becoming the best of the best. But after that terrible accident, he could no longer shoot, and his coach got him a job in a company. Yu Sung-hyun exhaled and decided to stop remembering the past because you can't bring it back. He decided to go watch some streams and noticed that almost everyone started streaming immersive games, and these games became very popular. Full immersion games were an advanced technology that allowed you to feel like you were in the gaming world. To play, you needed a special device called a capsule, which is why these games were often called capsule games. The young man thought that the worst thing was that the capsule was very expensive, and an ordinary office worker like him could not afford it. Yu Sung-hyun thought that he was lucky because he could at least watch the broadcasts. The players who had the capsule went live and played in real time and fulfilled the whims of the audience for a reward. The comments during these streams were very controversial, with some supporting the players and others doubting their abilities. But still, streamers had the opportunity to earn good money as viewers donated large sums of money during the streams. And it didn't matter whether the streamer played well or not, because the money was deducted for defeats. The viewers were able to mock the streamer in moments of failure and enjoy watching the stream. Some streamers tried to blame their failures on the fact that they had an outdated capsule or something else. Yu Sung-hyun watched such streams and thought that he had never seen a player who was skillful with a bow. He believed that anything was possible in the game and wanted to pick up a bow and arrow again, even if only virtually. The young man envied the streamers because a huge number of people, including him, were fans of them. Yu Sung-hyun thought that he used to be ready to give up everything to achieve recognition. The next day, he came to work and his boss told him that he was going to be fired if he resigned, and that he would be paid well. The man waited for Yu Sang-hyun's response, and without hesitation, the young man said that he would resign. Since the boss assured him that he would be able to get a decent salary, Yu Sang-hyun signed the documents and quit the same day in order not to delay. The boss looked at the guy and told him not to worry too much because he still got into the company because of the coach's favor. All the other employees had to go to university to get this job. Some even went abroad to study. Of course, the guy realized that he was unfairly placed in the company, but no one would want to lose their job. He was lying there thinking about the last years of his life because at 28 years old, it is not easy to find a decent job. Yu Sang-hyun kept recalling his sports career to which he had devoted his entire life. He was very proud to be the youngest participant of the national championship who had just graduated from high school. And when looking for a new job, the young man had almost nothing to write on his resume. Yu Sang-hyun realized that he could not go back in time and did not know what to do with his life. He was lying on his bed and wondering what to do now, where to look for a job, and what to do in general. Suddenly, the young man received a notification that one of the streamers was starting to broadcast, and Yu Sung-hyun thought that everything is possible in the game. He immediately decided to find out more about how to start streaming, and maybe in the game he would be able to shoot a bow again. Having started his search, the young man immediately thought about whether he would become popular because one of his favorite streamers was not playing very well, and it seemed that the audience liked it. Yu Song-hyun decided to look up how many top streamers there were on the internet and was really impressed. There were really a lot of streamers and more skillful than his favorite, because many users wanted to improve their skills. Yu Song-hyun immediately drew a parallel with his desire to reach the top in sports, with users who wanted to become better at the game. The guy realized that this life reminded him of what he really liked in his youth. A life where you had to improve, compete, and gradually climb higher and higher. The young man thought that maybe he could reach this top and become the best of the best in capsule games. The next day, Yu Sung-hyun decided to meet his friend and told him that he was going to buy a capsule. His friend immediately started scolding him because he wanted to spend all his money on games and thought it was very irrational. He convinced the young man that he could lose money in such a way because he had never tried to play such games before. Yu Sung-hyun's friend did not believe that the boy would be able to buy the capsule even if he played very well. He yelled at the young man to stop believing in miracles and come down to earth. Yu Sung-hyun did not understand why his friend Kim Joo-hyuk was so nervous and what the problem was. At his previous job, where no one could be trusted, Kim Joo-hyuk was the only normal person, and his life was the complete opposite of Yu Sung-hyun's. He was an elite from an elite family who was on his way to success by leaps and bounds. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't believe in Yu Sung-hyun's idea and mockingly suggested that he go to a casino entertainment complex, but the young man immediately replied that he was not very good at cards. Kim Joo-hyuk began to calculate how much money would be needed to buy the capsule, which cost 4,000. Yu Sung-hyun asked his friend if it was true that he would need to buy something else besides the capsule. And Kim Joo-hyuk said that of course he would need a lot more things, and if you summarize it, you need about 1 million. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk told Yu Sung-hyun to wait for him, and after a while they met near a building. Yu Sung-hyun was very surprised because his friend brought him to a capsule rental building. He couldn't believe that the capsules were rented instead of sold because he had never heard of it before. The boys approached the entrance and met the boy Kim Joo-hyuk, who immediately greeted the young man. The guy turned around and said that his name was Kang Sung-hyun, and if he understood correctly, the boys wanted to buy a capsule. He immediately started talking about how he could offer the remaining models at a reduced price. Yu Sung-hyun looked at his friend and did not understand what else he could expect from the elite. The guys went inside and there were game capsules all around Yu Sung-hyun, looked around carefully because he had never been in such stores. Kang Sung-hyun came very close to the young man and invited him to check out one of the capsules before buying it. Without waiting for an answer, Kang Sung-hyun picked up Yu Sung-hyun and started asking him about his life. When the capsule was ready to use, Kim Joo-hyuk approached Kang Sung-hyun and thanked him, and the guy replied that he was just getting rid of the product. Kang Sung-hyun added that if he were Kim Joo-hyuk, he would still try to talk his friend out of the idea because there are so many people like him now. And besides, capsules are not a cheap pleasure, and many people mistakenly think that they will be able to show their talents in the game to the fullest. But in reality, it does not work out quite like that. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked if it was true that such capsule games, even when fully immersed, are very different from reality. And the guy replied that of course, because in the game you don't use your physical body, and when there are no physical limitations, logic and reasoning fade into the background. And in the end, everything rests on willpower, so it is very important to support Yu Sung-hyun if he fails after the first attempt at the game. Kim Joo-hyuk realized that if he lost, his friend would lose the meaning of life, but he could not dissuade him from trying to succeed in the game. Yu Sung-hyun's first attempt began with the fact that the young man had a lot of experience in archery, so Kang Sung-hyun set up the game accordingly. After that, he closed the capsule and Yu Sung-hyun began to immerse himself in the virtual game world. The guy thought that he was overwhelmed by unusual sensations. His body was in place and his thoughts seemed to be transported somewhere. At some point, he found himself at an archery competition. Everything looked the same as in real life, and Yu Sung-hyun had the feeling that he had traveled back in time. The young man carefully examined his hands and could not believe that in the world of the game his trembling had disappeared. Suddenly, he heard a voice announcing that Yu Sung-hyun, who had been very gifted since childhood, was ready for the competition. The boy still could not believe his eyes. Everything looked very real to the smallest detail, and he had a feeling that he really was at the Olympics. He took out the first arrow and prepared for the shot he had been waiting for 10 years of his life. Yu Sung-hyun was very worried about whether he would be able to hit the target, because he still had trembling in his hands, but it was because of his worries. Still, he decided to try. He put the arrow in the bow and began to pull the string. Kim Joo-hyuk watched his friend closely and wondered why he hadn't shot yet. Kang Sung-hyun immediately assumed that the young man might be nervous. Kim Joo-hyuk was surprised because Yu Sung-hyun was very calm in his life, and there was no reason to be nervous. After analyzing everything, Yu Sung-hyun realized that in the game, everything was completely different. The tension of the bowstring, the grip of the handle, the sensations were completely different. But the boy's hands no longer trembled because this was not an unreal world, but a game world. The young man shot his first arrow and it hit the center of the target. Kim Joo-hyuk and Kang Sung-hyun were shocked because Yu Sung-hyun hit the target right on the first try. The boy did not stop and immediately took the second arrow and hit the target again. The same thing happened during the third shot and all 3 arrows hit the bull's eye. Kim Joo-hyuk and Kang Sung-hyun could not believe their eyes because every shot that Yoo Sung-hyun made was in the top 10. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to ask Kang Sung-hyun how this was possible because he told him that capsule games are different from reality. Kang Sung-hyun looked at Yoo Sung-hyun carefully and assumed that the boy might be able to adapt quickly, but he thought something was wrong. He stared at the screen and said that Yoo Sung-hyun looked different from all the other players. Kang Sung-hyun could not understand who this young man was and how he managed to achieve such skill during the first game. The game was over, and after seeing what he saw, Kang Sung-hyun went to the capsule and said that it would be a crime to let the boy buy a used capsule. After the capsule was opened, Yoo Sung-hyun looked very tired, and Kim Joo-hyuk immediately started asking if his friend was okay. Yoo Sung-hyun tried to recover, and in real life his hands were shaking again. Kim Joo-hyuk was very worried about his friend and could not understand what was happening to him. Kim Joo-hyuk knew very well that Yoo Sung-hyun was the youngest gold medal winner, but at one point everything changed for him, and Kim Joo-hyuk really wanted to help him. The boy knew that his friend loved archery more than anything else in the world, and that's why Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to help Yoo Sung-hyun remember what it's like to be happy for a moment. After all, the last 10 years of his life were filled with negative emotions at a job he didn't like. Kim Joo-hyuk was sure that so much time had passed since the accident that his friend Yoo Sung-hyun didn't even remember how to hold a bow in his hand. But Yoo Sung-hyun said that he remembers everything to the smallest detail, as if it were yesterday's cold, indifferent look of a doctor. A dream that he had to say goodbye to forever because of his injuries. After that, the boy began to cry furiously. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to go to him and calm him down, but Yoo Sung-hyun told his friend not to touch him. After a moment of weakness, the young man gathered his thoughts and said that he was very embarrassed. But Kim Joo-hyuk understood his friend's emotions and did not say anything to him. A little later, the capsule was already at Yoo Sung-hyun's home, and all the necessary programs were installed. He was very happy and thought that he could start streaming today. Kang Sung-hyun was so impressed with Yoo Sung-hyun's abilities and the fact that he was so cherishing his childhood dreams that he sold the capsule for much less. Yoo Sung-hyun was a little worried about this, wondering if Kang Sung-hyun was in the red after such a sale. The guy quickly threw away all unnecessary thoughts and decided to start a stream, for which he had to choose a game and quickly coped with it. The game was not very popular but quite famous, and for a beginner it was exactly what he needed. After launching the game, he immediately started customizing the character's appearance and then fully immersed himself in the virtual world. Yoo Sung-hyun found himself in the vastness of the game, and suddenly he heard someone from the side telling him to open his eyes. He did so and could not understand where he was and why he was hanging upside down. He looked around trying to figure out where he was. Suddenly he heard something happening nearby and had to figure out what it was. He turned around and saw the events of a terrible battle unfolding just a few steps away. Yoo Sung-hyun could not believe that he had been transported to the world of the game right in the middle of the battle. Suddenly, a man started shouting at him and asking how much longer he had to wait until the guy came to his senses. It was a mercenary captain named Roman. Yoo Sung-hyun did not fully understand who this man was, but Roman saw that the young man had regained consciousness and ordered him to quickly choose a weapon. The boy was offered 3 weapons to choose from: a spear, a sword, and a bow. And Yoo Sung-hyun's choice was obvious, but for some reason the bow was not visible, even though it was on the list. Suddenly, the young man saw that people started to write comments on his stream and was very surprised. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately looked at how many viewers he had on his stream, and there were only 5 of them, after which he began to doubt whether he had chosen the right game. The commentators began to dissuade him from choosing a bow because there was a high chance of missing with such a weapon, but Yoo Sung-hyun was confident in his choice. The viewers immediately began to write that the young man had chosen the most difficult weapon and therefore would most likely lose very quickly. The choice of weapon was completed, and now Yoo Sung-hyun had to find where exactly his bow had appeared. He looked around carefully to find the weapon, but it was not an easy task. Suddenly, unexpectedly for Yoo Sung-hyun, the bow appeared right in his hands from nowhere. Now he had his weapon and 20 arrows, and the stream commentators were mocking the young man for making the wrong choice. Roman insisted that the boy come to the rescue as soon as possible and start using his weapon. He said that if the boy kept standing there, he would not be able to hit anyone and help. Yoo Sung-hyun concentrated and started to aim at the enemies to help his team win. He fired his first arrow and hit the enemy right in the head, which impressed the commentators of the stream. Yoo Sung-hyun reflected that this game was very similar to the one he had tried before, but the archery was a little different. The young man could not fully understand how he managed to immediately kill the enemy and whether this tactic would work all the time. The commentators immediately began to tell him that it was possible to take a life with an arrow only if you hit the vital points. Yoo Sung-hyun thanked the audience for the explanation and said that he would spend 1 arrow on 1 enemy, which amused the commentators. The guy immediately began to analyze that there were about 20 opponents, and he also had exactly 20 arrows. Therefore, he had to concentrate to make sure that each arrow found its target. Yoo Sung-hyun was confident that he would quickly deal with everyone and continue his way further in the game. The young man confidently shot arrow after arrow that hit the enemy's head, giving him no chance of survival. The guy realized that unlike static targets, the enemies were moving and he was afraid to miss. But it turned out to be easier than it seemed. The mercenary captain Roman was fighting with one of the enemies, and it seemed that he would not be able to defeat him. Yu Sung-hyun immediately noticed Roman's enemy and thought about how to help the captain. The young man realized that it would be difficult to deal with this shield bearer, but he decided to take a chance. At that time, Roman struck the shield bearer with powerful blows without counting on anyone's help. But all this was in vain because the shield bearer reliably defended himself, and there was almost no chance that Roman would win. Yu Sung-hyun concentrated and aimed his arrow at the mercenary captain's enemy and hoped for his luck. As soon as the enemy opened up and weakened his defense, Yu Sung-hyun's arrow steadily headed in his direction, and again the target was hit, the boy's shot was accurate, and the arrow hit the shield bearer's head. Yu Sung-hyun began to look around to make sure that all the bandits were gone. After that, he noticed a chat stream and thought that it was just hanging, and began to think that archery was not very impressive to the audience. But suddenly a huge number of comments began to be added, and the viewers were simply shocked and could not believe that Yu Sung-hyun was able to hit the targets. And in the end, it turned out that the guy managed to defeat the boss. And it seemed just incredible because it was almost impossible to take the life of this character. Yu Sung-hyun was surprised because he thought that an arrow to the head could take anyone's life, but it was not so. The commenters kept on being surprised because it was very difficult to defeat a boss who skillfully defended himself with a shield. After so many comments, the guy could not fully understand how he managed to defeat the boss, and why no one had ever done it before. It really seemed strange because Yu Sung-hyun did everything in the same way, with the same tension and force of the shot. Suddenly, someone came up to Yu Sung-hyun and started talking to him, and he immediately turned around to see who it was. It was the captain of the mercenaries, Roman, who asked if he had fired the last shot that destroyed the enemy bow. At that time, rumors about a newcomer who defeated everyone with a regular bow began to spread quickly on the internet, and everyone wanted to watch the stream. The mercenaries' captain Roman told the young man that he was really incredible, and he had never seen anyone shoot so skillfully before. All the commentators were just shocked because they had never seen Roman behave like that before and be so friendly with newcomers. The man immediately asked the guy's name, and Yu Sung-hyun said that his name in this game was Almond. The next day, Yu Sung-hyun was shocked to see that his streaming video was gaining popularity. The guy read all the comments under the video, and a lot of users wanted to see how the newcomer Almond played with their own eyes. Suddenly, the young man came across comments that said that even experienced players could not kill the boss with a bow. Everyone was talking about a player named Electron who was in the top among streaming players. Yu Sung-hyun couldn't believe that he was being compared to one of the best streamers and players after his first day of streaming. He was very pleased because he hadn't expected such an incredible result. Suddenly, Yu Sung-hyun heard his phone ring and he did not immediately realize who could be bothering him. When he picked up the phone, he saw that it was his friend Kim Joo-hyuk calling him. So he picked up the phone and asked why his friend was calling so early. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to ask Yu Sung-hyun how his first stream went and if the capsule was working properly. Yu Sung-hyun replied that everything was fine and the capsule was working properly, and added that it was all thanks to Kim Joo-hyuk. Kim Joo-hyuk continued to ask if his friend had any viewers during the stream. Yu Sung-hyun replied that there were some people present, and by the end of the game there were about 20 of them. When Kim Joo-hyuk heard about this, he was quite surprised because he did not fully believe that his friend would be able to become a streamer. He immediately began to ask what Yu Sung-hyun had done on the first day that there were so many viewers, and the young man replied that he had simply chosen the right game. Kim Joo-hyuk began to ask the boy why he was even applying for a job in the company when he had such an extraordinary talent. Yu Sung-hyun did not answer this question and told his friend that he had to get ready for the next stream. Kim Joo-hyuk asked why so early because he thought that Yu Sung-hyun would stream after dinner, but the guy replied that now streaming was his job. Kim Joo-hyuk was surprised by this answer and added that the guy never worked in the office during his lunch break. Yu Sung-hyun didn't understand this comparison because his friend knew how much he disliked working in the company. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk said that he had to leave because he heard the director come into the dining room and say that it was not the right time to eat. Yu Sung-hyun hung up and tried to tune into the game to start his new stream. He went to the capsule and wanted to start, but at some point he started to doubt because he thought he needed to eat more. But at the same second, he decided that he didn't want to go back to eating and needed to start streaming as soon as possible. Yu Sung-hyun thought that since he read all the comments, his heart could not calm down. The pressure of comparisons, the tension of being discussed by everyone. The young man could not believe that he was so inspired by people's interest and appreciation. It seemed to him that he was a true athlete at heart. The guy started his stream and the commentators quickly began to rejoice that Almond was back in the game. Yu Sung-hyun didn't fully understand what was happening because it seemed to him that the chat was moving much faster than last time, so he decided to see how many people were watching him. The young man was genuinely surprised because the number of viewers had increased ninefold in just one day, and he had never been in such a situation before, so he started to get a little nervous. Yu Sung-hyun immediately tried to calm down and began to imagine that it was all just unreal. He closed his eyes and reminded himself that it was just a game he was playing in the third person. After calming his nerves, he happily said that he was ready to continue from where he left off yesterday. At this time, Kim Joo-hyuk had already returned to the office and took his seat. He was angry at his boss Park for preventing him from eating properly. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a message and rushed over to read it. Kim Joo-hyuk wrote to Yoo Sung-hyun and thanked him for his help. Kim Joo-hyuk suddenly remembered that he had called Yoo Sung-hyun to tell him something. But during the morning conversation, he completely forgot about it because he was distracted by his boss. Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to tell Yoo Sung-hyun about something that Kang Sung-hyun, who had sold the capsule, had told him. But suddenly one of his colleagues reminded Kim Joo-hyuk that he had a meeting in the conference room. Since Kim Joo-hyuk's head was full of work, he again forgot what he was supposed to tell his friend Yoo Sung-hyun. The conversation was supposed to be about a capsule that allowed Yoo Sung-hyun to play virtual games. Kim Joo-hyuk was supposed to tell his friend something about body optimization, but he couldn't remember what it was. Before launching the second stream, Yoo Sung-hyun decided to look for information on various websites and mostly wrote about how popular streamers manage their audience. He remembered that it was written that reminding the number of viewers can disrupt the interest of his audience, and it encourages competition with other streamers. So Yoo Sung-hyun decided to start by thanking those who came to his stream for the second time. The commenters were happy that Almond remembered their nicknames and addressed them, and this reaction from the audience confused Yoo Sung-hyun a bit. The guy tried not to pay attention to it and decided to start the game after the launch. He found himself on a horse that surprised him. Last time, Yoo Sung-hyun asked Roman to introduce him to the head of the mercenaries, and now he had a new quest. But first, he had to explain to the audience what exactly was happening in Yoo Sung-hyun's new quest. It was nothing special. The task was to accompany the nobleman. But suddenly, the guy's thoughts focused on something else. The game seemed very realistic, and he had the feeling that he was really riding a horse. Suddenly, the mercenary captain Roman asked the young man if it was his first time riding a horse. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that it was not, but he had not had many opportunities to ride it. Roman immediately said that in that case, he needed to get used to it as soon as possible. The mercenary captain immediately added that in the future, Almond will have to ride a lot of horses. The viewers, seeing Roman's manner of communication, began to say that something was wrong with him because they had never seen the captain smile before. After a while, the commentators began to say that usually bandits on horseback should appear in this place, and this information surprised Yoo Sung-hyun. Suddenly, everyone had to stop their horses because something was happening ahead. And as the stream viewers said, bandits on horseback appeared and the mercenaries had to fight them. Yoo Sung-hyun realized that it would not be very difficult to defeat such strong opponents. But after reading the stream's chat, he realized that the audience really liked the way the events unfolded. The commentators were divided into those who believed in Almond's victory and those who doubted that the young man would be able to resist the robbers. Yoo Sung-hyun decided that in order to dispel the doubts of some viewers, he just needed to show them his skills. The boy took out his weapon and pulled the string as tightly as possible to make his first shot. He was focused because he wanted to prove to everyone that you can win this game using a bow and arrow. First, Almond decided to take care of the opponents in front of him, and his arrow flew through the crowd, steadily approaching the target that the guy had set for himself. The arrow hit right into the head of one of the robbers who was the biggest threat. When they saw this shot, the mercenaries led by Roman were very surprised and to some extent frightened. After all, the robber Almond had killed was the enemy leader, and it was extremely difficult to defeat him. After this shot, the commentators were just going crazy and could not believe that Almond had killed the leader of the bandits with one shot. But Yoo Sung-hyun did not immediately realize that he had defeated the leader because he simply shot the robber who was riding in front. While the chat was moving very quickly, the guy decided that it was not time to stop because the game was not yet finished, and he had to work on. Almond thought that he would be happy enough to leave the battlefield victorious, and the young man continued to shoot his arrows one by one, hitting each of his targets to the ground. He was once again focused and confident in his victory because with each successive shot, the number of robbers was decreasing. Absolutely everyone was surprised by this newcomer's skill, and finally the commentators began to realize that Almond was not a fake. Realizing that the robbers could not win, they began to flee the battlefield. But Almond had no intention of letting anyone go and fired another arrow. It once again hit the target and killed another robber. The audience was delighted with the skill and perseverance of the newcomer Almond. Seeing that the enemies were running away, mercenary captain Roman gave the order to catch up with them and kill them all. Suddenly, Almond received a notification that his task had been changed, and now he had to catch up with the robbers on horseback and destroy them. At this time, all gaming news channels were publishing comments about Almond's game at an incredible rate. And one of the game streamers named Acorn Jelly decided to come in and see who dared to play such an unpopular game. After all, the amount of news about this newcomer was simply off the charts. He immediately went to the stream recording and was very surprised because it was the first time he saw all the robbers being killed by a single arrow to the head. Acorn Jelly had heard about the perfect shot to kill anyone before, but he didn't believe it existed at all. In the game, the enemy instantly loses if you hit his vital point, but this only works for enemies of a certain level. In other words, if you're facing a boss, even an experienced player won't kill him on the first hit. But the game has a hidden system, and this is the perfect shot. Most players had no idea that the perfect shot existed, and experienced players still argue whether it does or not. Acorn Jelly couldn't believe that it was possible to attack in the first second and a half and hit the center of the enemy's vital point. He carefully watched Almond's stream and was surprised that each of his next shots was perfect. At one point, Acorn Jelly thought it might be the use of some kind of red, but then he started to doubt it. After that, he decided to see if Almond played other games because he felt like he had a lot of experience, but it turned out that Almond was really a beginner. Yu Sung-hyun continued his game and wanted to complete the quest, but the task was changed. Led by the mercenary captain Roman, he was chasing the robbers who needed to be captured and destroyed. Suddenly, Roman started asking Almond what he was going to do, whether he really decided to shoot from a horse, and added that he thought spears or clubs would be better. The audience immediately began to write that it would be very difficult to shoot from a horse, and Almond agreed, but he was not going to give up the bow. He told Roman that everything was fine and he was in control of the situation. Roman smiled gently at Almond and said that if the boy was confident, he trusted him. Yu Sung-hyun thought that he had never ridden a horse before and would be shooting at moving targets for the first time. But he was sure that he would succeed and prepared to shoot. The young man pulled on his bowstring and thought that no matter how much he practiced, his hands were still trembling, but he could not give up. The first arrow headed for its target and hit the enemy's neck. Almond was not very happy with this result because he was aiming for the head, but it was worth noting that this shot was extremely difficult. The guy started thinking that in order to improve his result, he first needed to adjust to the rhythm of the horse, and only now the attack on the enemy's head was more realistic. In a matter of seconds, the arrow shot by Almond hit the target and one of the robbers was killed. The other robbers were very frightened by the young man's skill, as it meant that their chances of escape were significantly reduced. Chat was just crazy about what Almond was demonstrating, because it seemed that his abilities had instantly increased several times. One more shot and he hit the head of another robber. This pace of the game scared the mercenaries' opponents because no one had ever done anything like this before. Very quickly, all the bandits were killed thanks to Almond's accurate shots. Roman smiled and said that Almond was an archer sent from heaven, and he had never seen anyone shoot like that in his life. All the mercenaries began to exclaim that Almond was Robin Hood in person, saying that they were very lucky to have the guy join them. The viewers wrote comments that Almond was really incredible and wondered why such a talented player did not join more popular games. Suddenly, Yu Sung-hyun froze for a moment when he saw that one of the viewers had dropped 100,000 to him. Almond's quest was successfully completed, and all enemies were destroyed. The nobleman who was accompanied by the mercenaries said that he would definitely remember the name of the young man. But Yu Sung-hyun was thinking about something else entirely. He did not expect that anyone would ever remember him. Commenters in the chat immediately began to ask why Almond did not respond to the donation. But Yu Sung-hyun didn't understand what he should do, because this was the first time this had happened to him. Viewers immediately began to advise what Almond should do, and the most popular advice was to shoot a bow. Yu Sung-hyun decided to follow the advice and prepare to shoot as a token of gratitude for the donation. He pulled the bowstring as tightly as possible and pointed the arrow upward, making a powerful shot. Such action surprised the audience, and Yu Sung-hyun was sure that he had succeeded. The commentators were outraged because they expected something more. Almond opened his hands to the sides and said that the arrow had disappeared. But a moment later, it hit the guy right in the head, and at that moment, his game was over. The audience started laughing wildly after Almond committed suicide, and Yu Sung-hyun was happy that the commentator liked it. But suddenly he was thrown out of the stream and thought that it could be because the capsule was of an older generation. Yu Sung-hyun decided to log into the stream from his phone and wrote in the chat that he was having technical problems, after which the viewers replied that they would wait for him next time. Commenters wrote that Almond has an extraordinary talent, and the young man thought that maybe it was very good for the streamer. The guy dreamed that he could become popular not only on streaming platforms but also on Altub, where he could earn a lot of money. The discussion of Almond continued, and everyone wrote that he had been recommended by the popular streamer Acorn Jelly, and that they most likely knew each other. Yu Sung-hyun decided to find out more about who Acorn Jelly was, and after registering his nickname, he immediately realized that the guy was very popular. Acorn Jelly was a very skillful player who used different types of weapons. But the tests with the bow did not seem very successful to Yu Sung-hyun, but the other videos were more than good. The guy sincerely wondered what such a popular streamer had forgotten from him, and why he decided to donate such a large sum. Yu Sung-hyun carefully studied the activities of Acorn Jelly and made sure that he was a versatile game streamer, and the young man wanted to become just like Acorn Jelly. Unexpectedly for the boy, Acorn Jelly wrote him a letter in which he offered to meet and get acquainted, and Yu Sung-hyun did not know what to say to the young man. Yu Sung-hyun did not expect that such a popular streamer would want to meet him, because he had only done 2 streams. The guy reasoned that Acorn Jelly was a versatile streamer, and that collaboration with him would definitely be useful. But if Yu Sung-hyun agreed to this, it might seem to everyone that he wanted to take advantage of Acorn Jelly's fame. Suddenly, he received a call from Kim Joo-hyuk, who told his friend that he had just watched his latest stream. Yu Sung-hyun felt very uncomfortable because he was a little shy, despite the fact that all the viewers liked his performance. Kim Joo-hyuk began to say that he was more nervous during the stream than Yu Sung-hyun himself, and the boy replied that since childhood everyone called him a genius, so he was used to such attention. Kim Joo-hyuk was both happy for his friend and convinced that he was really overconfident. Yu Sung-hyun asked Kim Joo-hyuk why he had just called to talk about the stream, and the guy said that it wasn't for that. Then he began to say that he actually called to inform him that he had quit his job. This information surprised Yoo Sung-hyun because he didn't even know about his friend's decision, and he immediately started asking what happened and why he made such a quick decision. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately replied that he had just had a fight with Chief Park. Yoo Sung-hyun was shocked and didn't know what to say to Kim Joo-hyuk or how to react at all. The young man could not believe that his friend who belonged to the elite was now free and could sign a contract with any company. While Yoo Sung-hyun was silent, Kim Joo-hyuk began to say that he, like his friend, had been patient for a very long time and finally had had enough. The question immediately arose in Yoo Sung-hyun's mind whether he should offer Kim Joo-hyuk to become his manager, but he immediately changed his mind because he realized that he would not be able to pay him. And suddenly Kim Joo-hyuk said that starting today he would be Yoo Sung-hyun's manager. The guy couldn't come to his senses after hearing this because he had a feeling that his friend had just read his mind. When Kim Joo-hyuk heard Yoo Sung-hyun's strange reaction, he thought that his friend did not want him to become his manager, but the young man immediately said that he could not even dream of such a thing. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to say that Almond was gaining popularity and that he already had his first donors. He also decided to talk to Yoo Sung-hyun about the capsule and reminded him that when he tried to play for the first time, he burst into tears. Kim Joo-hyuk continued to say that when he saw Yoo Sung-hyun in this state, he thought about it. He noticed that the boy really likes archery. Kim Joo-hyuk said that when he saw Yoo Sung-hyun's reaction, he realized that he had never done anything like that in his life. He said that he also wanted to find out what he really liked and what he wanted to do in life. Kim Joo-hyuk was convinced that he could take a year off before starting to look for a new job, and that if he and Yoo Sung-hyun tried hard enough, they could sign a great contract. Yoo Sung-hyun asked his friend once again if he was sure he was making the right choice, and immediately received an affirmative answer. After that, the guy made a smart face and said that he would let Kim Joo-hyuk bathe in money so he could quit right then and there. Kim Joo-hyuk began to play along with Yoo Sung-hyun and was happy that he had offered him a job. But still, Yoo Sung-hyun had his doubts and asked again if his friend was sure about his decision. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that of course he was, because they couldn't miss a great chance to become popular and get good contract. In one cafe, Acorn Jelly and his manager Na Yeon were sitting, and the girl doubted that they had chosen the right place to meet Almond. Acorn Jelly was more worried about the fact that he chose Almond to collaborate with because he believed he had potential, and was a bit doubtful that he was still a superstar himself. Yen made fun of Acorn Jelly for almost fainting the last time he collaborated with a streamer. Acorn Jelly, whose real name was Do Jae-mook, said that Almond has the best physical data in the country. He added that a guy like Almond was an investment in their future. Na Yeon did not trust Do Jae-mook very much and asked him if he had met Almond in person. The guy hesitantly replied that he hadn't, and this confused Na Yeon. The girl was furious and shouted that if Do Jae-mook made a mistake in his choice, his stream would fail. Suddenly, someone came to the table and asked if the guy was the same Acorn Jae-lee. Jae-mook turned around and said that he was very glad to meet him and was a little confused when he saw the young man in front of him. There was a guy standing in front of him who said that his name was Yoo Sung-hyun and he was Almond, and added that he was very pleased to meet him. Na Yeon was speechless when she saw Yoo Sung-hyun and thought that the guy was very handsome. Do Jae-mook immediately stood up and said that he was also very pleased to meet him. After that, he extended his hand to Yoo Sung-hyun and said that his name was Do Jae-mook. He then asked Yoo Sung-hyun who the person behind him was. The guy's friend immediately said that he was Kim Joo-hyuk and was Yoo Sung-hyun's manager, and then held out his business card. Do Jae-mook was very impressed by the meeting and said that he thought he was very experienced in this field, but it was the first time he had seen such a sociable person. He took Kim Joo-hyuk's business card and wondered who Yoo Sung-hyun really was. After reading the business card, Do Jae-mook and Na Yeon could not contain their emotions because they realized that Kim Joo-hyuk was a manager of a large company. Na Yeon immediately began to say that she was just an ordinary manager, nothing like Kim Joo-hyuk. After that, she bowed low and said that she was looking forward to working hard. Do Jae-mook, realizing that he and Na Yeon were acting strangely, invited them to sit down and start discussing cooperation. He immediately began to say that the sequence of the streams was listed in the table, and they needed to agree on what questions they would ask. After discussing the main points, Do Jae-mook immediately said that they needed to discuss the financial side of the issue. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately replied that since he was new to the field and really needed Do Jae-mook's help, he could do without paying. But Do Jae-mook and Na Yeon could not agree to this proposal and insisted on something else. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately took over the conversation and said that, given Do Jae-mook's experience, the offer of compensation made them feel uncomfortable. But Do Jae-mook said that in this field, the payment is not hourly, so it would not be possible to calculate the minimum wage and offered another option. The guy said he would give half of the donations they would manage to collect on all the joint stream. Kim Joo-hyuk was very surprised because he realized that most likely there would be a lot of donation. He looked at his friend who was also shocked by the proposal. Do Jae-mook asked Yoo Sung-hyun what he thought about it, and he didn't know how to respond. After the meeting, Yoo Sung-hyun and Kim Joo-hyuk were very happy because the terms of the contract were much better than they had expected. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately said that he had searched for information and the minimum amount of donations from one stream of acorn jelly for the last month was 2 million. Yu Sung-hyun didn't really believe that such amounts could be raised on streams and asked his friend to send him the information where he had read about it. Kim Joo-hyuk was very well prepared and made an audio recording of his conversation with Do Jae-mook and Na Young, just in case. The young man was focused on profit and wanted to discuss all the details with Yu Sang-hyun, but the young man did not like Kim Joo-hyuk's behavior. Kim Joo-hyuk did not stop and said that if Yu Sung-hyun earned more than 300,000 per month, he would like to receive 20% of the amount. Yu Sung-hyun could not answer his friend because at the time of this conversation he had not earned anything at all and could not promise anything, but Kim Joo-hyuk was convinced that they would succeed. The next day, Yu Sung-hyun hurried to join the game and started his stream, and all the viewers immediately started asking why Almond didn't play yesterday. The rumors about Almond and Acorn Jelly's collaboration spread very quickly, and everyone started asking if this information was true. Yu Sung-hyun decided not to say anything about the collaboration for now, and switched the topic to the game, saying that he would try to destroy all the opponents. This surprised the guy because last time the leader of the robbers lost his life immediately. But the commentators replied that this leader was not the boss, and Yu Sung-hyun began to feel insecure because he thought he had managed to defeat the boss. Suddenly, one of the viewers donated 10,000 to the young man and offered him a task for which he would pay 100,000, namely the destruction of the boss with one shot, and Yu Sung-hyun decided to accept the challenge. Yu Sung-hyun didn't want to miss this opportunity because even if this mission was impossible to complete, he couldn't miss the chance to earn money. The viewers were impressed by his confidence and started to donate even more. Yu Sung-hyun was sure that if donors would determine the course of the stream, such communication would be a great source of constant income. So he thanked his viewers and started the game. Almond returned to the exact point where he left off last time. He immediately heard someone talking to him and turned around to see who it was. It was a girl named Amelia, and she began to thank Almond for saving them from the robbers. Yu Sung-hyun immediately realized that this could be one of the main characters of the game, and his answer could change the course of the game. He had to choose between two answers, and all the commentators immediately began to advise him to choose the second option. But Yu Sang-hyun did not listen to them and chose the first option, and told the girl that he did not need a monetary reward because it was his job, but Amelia still continued to thank him. While the comments continued to argue about the main character, Roman approached Amelia. He told Amelia that there was a risk that the remaining bandits were scattered throughout the mountain range and offered his help. The girl agreed and the mercenary captain ordered them to stay near the kingdom and set up camp. When it got dark, Roman's team went in search of the bandits and eventually found their camp. The men slowly and very quietly approached to count how many enemies they had to defeat. After that, Roman announced the plan of action. They had to get as close as possible and simultaneously strike from the rear. It was the first time Yu Sung-hyun participated in such an operation, and it made him nervous. Once again, he thought that the sensations of being completely immersed in the game were almost indistinguishable from reality. But there was often no time for long thoughts because everyone was already in place, and Roman gave the order to move forward. The team of mercenaries was quickly approaching the robbers' camp to defeat them, once and for all. The robbers did not expect to be found and therefore were not fully prepared for the confrontation. Almond began his work and the first target was hit, after which one of the robbers began to panic because there was an archer in the mercenary team. With each arrow he fired, the number of robbers became less and less because Almond did not miss. As always, he was very focused and confident in his victory. Each arrow shot from Almond's bow hit, as always, directly into the head of the enemies, giving no one a chance to survive. The robbers quickly located the archer and talked about how they needed to destroy him first. Suddenly, Yu Sung-hyun received a notification that he had fulfilled the condition of 3 hits to the head in a row, and the skill of consecutive shooting was unlocked. He was happy to have a new skill and decided to use it right away. He activated the sequential shooting skill and his arrows went to find their targets one by one. Very quickly, the robbers began to say goodbye to their lives from Almond's attack. All the viewers of the stream were quite surprised because they always believed that this skill made absolutely no sense, and were surprised that the young man's attack was so fast. In a matter of minutes, all the enemies were destroyed by Almond's arrows. Yu Sung-hyun was also quite impressed with the new ability, and noted that the bow and arrow was cooler than he had thought at first. The guy analyzed his feelings and realized that it was not only about money, but about realistic feelings of full immersion in people's reactions and joy, and it was really very addictive. Immediately after the battle, Roman came up to Almond and said that he was really incredible, and if he continues like this, he will soon become the best in the empire. The commentators were surprised because the battle was over, but the boss was not destroyed, and Yu Sung-hyun realized that the task was not yet complete. One of the mercenaries approached the body of a man with an arrow sticking out of his head and said that he thought he had found the boss. Yu Sung-hyun did not understand whether he would receive his reward because the audience did not believe that the boss was killed with a single arrow. Suddenly, the young man received a donation of 100,000 from Acorn Jelly, who wrote that it was a great shot and a perfect shot could even defeat the boss. Yu Sung-hyun didn't understand what the guy was talking about because he had never heard of a perfect shot before. Most of the stream's viewers did not believe in the existence of the perfect shot after reading Acorn Jelly's comment because they had never heard of it. Do Jae-mook really wanted everyone to believe that the perfect shot existed and that only Almond could demonstrate it? But Yoo Sang-hyun had never heard of it either, so he couldn't explain to the audience how it could be used. Acorn Jelly dropped another donation and asked if the guy really didn't know anything about the perfect shot and was asked what it was. Acorn Jelly could not believe that Almond did not understand how the perfect shot worked, because he used them all the time in the game and it seemed to him that the young man was just waking up. Do Jae-mook believed that Almond was just a brilliant player and did not want to reveal his secrets. Acorn Jelly dropped another donation and invited Almond to stream together the next day to prove to everyone that the perfect shot exists. All the viewers of the stream immediately began to talk about the rumors of Almond and Acorn Jelly's collaboration being true. Realizing that Do Jae-mook was trying to gently suggest a collaboration, Yoo Sang-hyun decided to play along. But the commentators began to demand that Almond refuse, even though they really wanted to see them play together, and suddenly one of the viewers donated and offered to prove that the perfect shot exists. Yoo Sang-hyun felt that this was the moment and thanked for the last donation, and said that there would be a joint stream, and added that it would be an honor to play with Acorn Jelly. Do Jae-mook was also very excited because he would be able to show everyone that the perfect shot exists and that he and Almond would be able to earn a lot of money. Yoo Sang-hyun reread all the messages in the chat and was glad that the audience supported his decision. He was thinking that Acorn Jelly really understands this business, because not everyone can come up with such a story about a perfect shot and make everyone believe in it. Suddenly, Almond said that Acorn Jelly had donated more than 120,000 and had not received any thanks from him. The commentators immediately realized what the guy was referring to and asked him not to finish the stream. But Yoo Sang-hyun didn't want to change his traditions. He launched his arrow very high into the sky and thanked the audience for all the donations. And his arrow hit him in the head again, just like the last time, after which the stream was over. Yoo Sang-hyun got out of the capsule and tried to come to his senses because it was incredibly hot inside. He wondered if it was too dangerous to end the game in this way every time because he felt pain after the last shot. Immediately after the end of the stream, Yoo Sang-hyun wrote to Kim Joo-hyuk and said that he really liked it and asked where they could meet tomorrow to go to a joint stream with Acorn Jelly. Yoo Sang-hyun had completely forgotten about the interview during which he and Acorn Jelly were supposed to stream together. At some point, he started to worry about it, but he shook off all the bad thoughts and texted his friend where they should meet. After that, he decided to see what the feedback on the site was after the last stream. The site was very active in discussing the existence of the perfect shot and trying to discern the moment when Almond killed the boss. Yoo Sang-hyun read all the comments and was shocked that he managed to destroy the boss with one shot, but the video was not quite clear how it really happened. Eventually, users began to write that it was enough to discuss the existence of the perfect shot because tomorrow on Almond and Acorn Jelly's stream, everything would become clear. After that, everyone immediately started making assumptions about what Almond looks like in real life and whether he looks like a nerd. Suddenly, Yoo Sang-hyun's phone rang and he hurried to answer it. It was Kim Joo-hyuk, and Yoo Sang-hyun immediately asked why his friend was calling because they had just been texting, and Kim Joo-hyuk asked if the guy had seen the video on Altub. Yoo Sang-hyun was immediately surprised because neither he nor Kim Joo-hyuk had an account on Altub. In addition, Kim Joo-hyuk told his friend that Acorn Jelly had posted an advertisement for their joint stream on his channel. Yoo Sang-hyun immediately decided to go to Altub to watch the video Kim Joo-hyuk was talking about. The video was extremely high quality and highlighted all of Almond's strengths. The video was accompanied by a very good musical score that only enhanced the viewing experience. All the users of the platform were very impressed with the abilities of a newcomer named Almond and could not believe that this video was real and assumed that it was edited. Everyone who watched the video that day was looking forward to the joint stream of Acorn Jelly and Almond. And the next day, Acorn Jelly's stream had a record number of viewers across Altub. Before the start of the stream, the guys discussed that they would need to show their faces and say hello to the viewers, and Yoo Sang-hyun immediately agreed. Kim Joo-hyuk and Na-yeon were there to watch everything that was happening. Kim Joo-hyuk wished his friend good luck and the stream started. Acorn Jelly immediately appeared on the screen to greet the audience and start the stream. The guy was quite surprised because the number of viewers was off the charts, and at the time of the broadcast, there were already more than 10,000 of them. Yoo Sang-hyun carefully watched Do Jae-mook broadcasting and tried to memorize as many useful moments as possible for himself. Acorn Jelly said that he had a very important guest today, and that they would prove the existence of the perfect shot at the end of the stream. When more than 40,000 viewers joined the stream, the guy announced that the moment had come to invite the guest everyone was waiting for. Acorn Jelly began to announce the popular genius archer Almond. The audience was eagerly waiting for the moment when they could see Almond because they had never seen what he looked like. Acorn Jelly picked up on the comments and began to say that he himself was surprised when he first saw Almond and could not imagine that he was so beautiful. Yoo Sang-hyun was very surprised because the chat was flying by so fast that he didn't even have time to read anything. Suddenly, Acorn Jelly said that he understood what the audience wanted and invited Almond to start the game. After that, the guy asked Yoo Sang-hyun what his optimization code was. The young man did not understand what he was talking about and asked Acorn Jelly what it was. Acorn Jelly was surprised that Almond did not know about it and explained that the optimization code for the capsule is needed to tune it to the brainwaves and the body. Almond immediately replied that he had never heard of it before and asked if it was important to have his own code. And Acorn Jelly was very confused because he kept thinking that the guy was not really a beginner. He couldn't believe that Yu Sung-hyun was playing without optimization all the time, because it meant that he must have felt like he was carrying a heavy sandbag. At that moment, Yu Sang-hyun's friend Kim Joo-hyuk started to behave very strangely, and no one could understand what happened to him. It was at this moment that Kim Joo-hyuk finally remembered what he was supposed to tell Yu Sang-hyun about using the capsule. The guy came up to the boys during the stream and said that Yu Sang-hyun really didn't know anything about optimizing the capsule because he just forgot to tell him. While Acorn Jelly was trying to come to his senses from the information he received, Yu Sung-hyun sat in silence, not understanding what was happening. The stream viewers asked a lot of questions, and Acorn Jelly tried to explain to everyone that Almond just bought a capsule that had already been used and did not bother with the details. Everyone was just shocked and could not believe that the guy was able to play at all without optimizing the capsule. Now it finally became clear why. After Almond committed suicide, he was thrown out of the game, and the question remained how he continued to play because everything had to start over. At some point, Acorn Jelly began to say that Almond was really a genius because no one had ever thought of such a thing before. Yu Sung-hyun looked at his colleague and smilingly said that he was indeed like that. Acorn Jelly was surprised every time by Almond's answers and behavior because it was the first time he met such a brilliant player and streamer. He was convinced with each passing minute that Almond was the typical genius that everyone wants, and he looked like he had experience communicating with the audience. Before starting the game, Acorn Jelly suggested that Almond create his own optimization code to start with. After a while, they met in the virtual world, and Acorn Jelly asked the guy how he was feeling now, and Almond replied that he was fine. The guy finally managed to feel what virtual space was. He had a feeling that his body did not exist at all, because this whole world was just consciousness. Now everything was ready to start the game and prove to everyone that the perfect shot does exist. Acorn Jelly pathetically invited all the present spectators to find out right now whether the legendary perfect shot that everyone has been talking about for so long actually exists. After that, the guys went to the virtual game and it was time to get a new task. Not far from where they were, there was a goblin cave because of which the farmers were not alive. They had to find this cave and destroy it. Almond listened carefully to the task and did not understand whether he would be able to defeat everyone with a bow and arrows. But Acorn Jelly was sure that the young man would be able to demonstrate the perfect shot to everyone. The boys set off to the place where the cave was supposed to be, and during the journey, Acorn Jelly suggested that Almond learn about the conditions for a perfect shot and how to achieve it. He immediately began to talk about these conditions and said that it was necessary to imagine a target on the enemy's forehead, and explained that if you hit exactly in the center of this imaginary target, such a shot would be considered perfect. Almond immediately asked what the second condition was, and Acorn Jelly replied that it would be more difficult to fulfill. Then he turned his gaze to Almond and said that the second condition was that this shot must be made on the first try, and there is only one chance. Yu Sang-hyun listened carefully to the conditions of the perfect shot, and replied that he understood everything. He wondered why Acorn Jelly was behaving like that and had a strange reaction. Acorn Jelly in turn was confident that Almond would be able to make a perfect shot and that it would not be a big problem for the young man. Suddenly, Roman appeared behind him and hit him on the head, and the commentators were choking with laughter, saying that finally the Roman they had known all along was himself. The captain of the mercenaries was angry with Acorn Jelly and said that they had already arrived and it was time to leave. After that, the man looked at the boys carefully and asked where he and Almond had come from. Then Roman turned his gaze to Almond and said that together they had to successfully complete this task. There were a lot of goblins near the cave that needed to be destroyed, and it was a very difficult task. Acorn Jelly was confident that this task would be successfully completed because Almond was playing a brilliant player right now. Suddenly, Roman hit the guy again and said that if he wanted to help, he should shut up. The mercenary captain told Almond to show Acorn Jelly what a real surprise attack is. Yu Sung-hyun thought that after his character Almond was optimized, it became much easier for him to move, and that unpleasant feeling that he always had completely disappeared. He immediately took a position and prepared to shoot, knowing that he had to hit the target. Acorn Jelly watched the young man closely and was once again surprised that Almond chose a position that he thought was not very comfortable, and he did not understand how the boy was going to shoot. Yu Sung-hyun thought that no matter how impossible this task might seem, since he was Almond, he should be sure that he could handle it. After that, the guy shot an arrow that moved steadily towards the goblin and hit exactly in the center of its forehead. The entire chat room was extremely surprised by this hit, and Acorn Jelly had the same reaction. Almond continued to work without paying attention to the chat and external stimuli. He was focused on the enemy. All the spectators immediately noticed that, after the optimization, Almond looked even more skillful than before. Acorn Jelly thought that the guy even made his shot quieter to be able to shoot from ambush. He reflected on the fact that in addition to his extraordinary physical abilities, Almond had a personal touch that was evident in his conversation and behavior. Acorn Jelly sincerely admired Almond, and at one point he thought that the guy was in the light. Yu Sung-hyun, not paying attention to anyone, continued to destroy his opponents one by one, hitting the target every time. After the last shot, he lowered his bow and was able to exhale. All the enemies were destroyed and none of the goblin guards remained. Roman was impressed by Almond's work, and Acorn Jelly was shocked by the young man's abilities. Usually mercenaries had to work together to pass this stage of the game, but Almond managed to destroy them all on his own. Acorn Jelly immediately began to address the audience and say that this was the perfect shot because the goblins said goodbye to life after one shot, but the commentators did not agree with the guy. In order to completely deal with the goblin pack, the commander ordered to light a fire at the entrance to the cave so that everyone who remained inside could not leave it. In a moment, Roman's order was fulfilled and the flames engulfed the entrance to the cave. But suddenly a champion goblin appeared on the horizon, not too afraid of the trap set by the mercenaries. Roman saw the enemy and ordered to prepare for a fierce battle. Acorn Jelly immediately realized that this was a great chance to demonstrate to everyone that the perfect shot really exists, and told Almond that this time he needed to hit it like always. The commentators immediately started talking about how this was the moment when it would really become clear whether this perfect shot existed. Almond prepared for the shot that everyone expected him to make, but at some point he stopped. The problem was that the champion goblin had an iron mask on his head, which the arrow would hardly pass through. Almond realized that there was no point in aiming at the head, and he thought that maybe he should choose another vital point. But after analyzing the situation, he realized that the head was the most important vital point that was easiest to hit. Suddenly, the guy raised his bow up and released an arrow. No one could understand what Almond was trying to do and why he was shooting upwards. The young man realized that for a perfect shot, he just needed to hit the head and not necessarily the forehead. Since the iron mask was only on the goblin's face, Almond released the arrow so that it hit the enemy from behind. No one expected that the guy would be able to defeat the goblin champion, and absolutely everyone was shocked by what they saw. For a moment, Acorn Jelly was even speechless. The commentators began to say that Almond was a superhuman because no one had ever done this in the game before. The giant body of the goblin champion fell to the ground and everyone froze in anticipation because no one knew for sure whether he was still alive or not. After some time passed and the enemy did not get up, it was clear that Almond had defeated him. Acorn Jelly began to rejoice like a little child because he had proved to everyone that the perfect shot exists. After that, Almond immediately received a message that he had been donated 200,000 and congratulated on his victory. The guy was a bit embarrassed because he had never received such a sum before and donations started pouring in. The game was over and Yu Sung-hyun opened the capsule to get out of it. Even in the top capsule, he was sweating as usual and was upset that such expensive gaming attributes did not have a normal cooling system. After the game, Do Jae-mook immediately ran up to his manager Na Yeon and began to rejoice that he finally managed to show everyone a perfect shot, and the girl said that the server was overloaded and therefore the stream was cut off. But Kim Joo-hyuk said that the error occurred only in the game, but the stream is still going so they can continue to collect donations if they do an interview. Do Jae-mook was happy to hear this news and suggested that Yu Sung-hyun do it. The guy replied that he needed to dry his hair before going on the air, but Na Yeon started saying that he looked great anyway. The decision was made instantly and the guys were already greeting their viewers again. Acorn Jelly started all over again because he was sure that now everyone would take his statements more seriously about the perfect shot. Yu Sung-hyun was a bit embarrassed and said that he really didn't know anything about the perfect shot before. After a few minutes of chatting with the audience, the donations started pouring in again at an incredible rate. Acorn Jelly didn't even have time to read all the nicknames under which donors came to thank him. Kim Joo-hyuk was shocked because more than 1,000 people donated, and he had no idea how much they managed to earn in just one stream. He and Na-eun watched the guys and were really impressed by the viewers' reaction to them. Suddenly, a user under the nickname Seo Yeon donated 1 million Yu Sung-hyun, didn't know what to say because he couldn't believe that people were willing to give such money for a simple game. Kim Joo-hyuk couldn't believe his eyes and was just as shocked as his friend. Acorn Jelly began to thank him sincerely and said that it was the first time he had ever seen such a large donation. He immediately read the message under this donation, which said that Almond was very handsome. After that, the same huge donation was received from the user SCO Yeon again, and the guys were so shocked that they decided to start the interview immediately. On the eve of the stream, Acorn Jelly conducted a poll on his website asking for questions to Almond. Yu Sung-hyun continued to answer one of the most popular questions, namely whether he had a girlfriend, and the young man said that he did not. The guy thought that he was a little bit embarrassed by such a huge amount of attention, but he liked the interest of people. Acorn Jelly and Yu Sung-hyun continued their interview and watched videos of different games. Yu Sung-hyun thought that playing virtual games during streams was an unusual new thing for him, but it was very suitable. The young man could finally do what he really liked and what he was ready to dedicate his whole life to archery. After the stream was over, Na-yeon came up to the boys and brought Yoo Sung-hyun a towel because he was sweating so much and was all wet. The girl thought that it was due to the lack of a normal cooling system in the capsule, but Acorn Jelly suggested that such a reaction of the body could be due to the excellent concentration on the game. The guy decided that it was not the time to talk about it further and thanked Yoo Sung-hyun for the wonderful stream. Kim Joo-hyuk also immediately thanked them for being invited and gave them a small gift. Yoo Sung-hyun looked at his friend and thought that he was a really great manager, because he would never have thought of such a surprise on his own. The time came when everyone could find out the amount of money the guys managed to earn during this stream. Everyone was waiting for Acorn Jelly to announce the amount of money earned. The amount that the guys managed to earn was 5,360,000, and it shocked Yoo Sung-hyun again. Acorn Jelly was also amazed and asked the boys if they always earned this much money, as it was the first time he had ever earned such a huge amount. Na-yeon immediately reminded them of the terms of the contract, that they had to divide the entire amount earned during the stream in half. And so Yoo Sung-hyun and Kim Joo-hyuk earned 2,700,000. The boys started to thank Acorn Jelly, but the young man said that they shouldn't really be thanking him, but him. The guy added that even 500,000 is considered a jackpot on a joint stream, and Kim Joo-hyuk realized that this meant that donations were not the main source of money. So he decided to ask Acorn Jelly directly how he makes money, and the guy replied that the most important thing is advertising. Na-yeon also added that she also attracts third-party advertisers because that's what a manager should do. The girl explained that it is mainly advertising games or products such as clothing, streaming equipment, and capsule sponsorship. Kim Joo-hyuk listened attentively to everything that Acorn Jelly and Na-yeon were saying, and noted that it was very similar to what celebrities usually do. At some point, Na-yeon and Acorn Jelly started arguing with each other, and the boy decided not to interfere in the argument. The argument was that it was unclear whether Acorn Jelly could behave like a star, and the girl turned to Yoo Sung-hyun. She said that she believes that the guy can actually partially behave like a star because the audience is crazy about him. Yoo Sung-hyun was embarrassed at this point and said that he didn't want to do that, but wanted to be a regular game streamer. After the boy's words, Na-yeon said that she was just thinking about strategies for generating income, and Acorn Jelly added that if the young man is going to be engaged in streaming, he needs to increase the number of outside activities. The girl advised Yoo Sung-hyun to move into a wider field because game streams are in a more niche area than others, and also advised him to create his own channel on Altub. Acorn Jelly immediately started asking Kim Joo-hyuk if he had done something like this before, and the guy replied that, unfortunately, he did not have such experience. Acorn Jelly immediately replied that in this case, he needed to find someone who knew how to edit video, and said that since Yoo Sung-hyun's income was still low, he shouldn't rush. Yoo Sung-hyun and Acorn Jelly shook hands and thanked each other for the wonderful stream. Acorn Jelly immediately offered to do another joint stream because the success of the first one was off the charts. He thought that maybe when they met next time, Yoo Sung-hyun would be far ahead. And if this happens, there will be even more viewers on the stream and, accordingly, more donors. Acorn Jelly stood and watched the boys go and said that he was somewhat jealous of Yoo Sung-hyun, but that hardly anyone could match the young man's talent. Kim Joo-hyuk gave Yoo Sung-hyun a ride home, and the boy thanked his friend for it. Saying goodbye, Kim Joo-hyuk said that he saw that Yoo Sung-hyun was thinking a lot about streams and YouTube, and immediately advised him not to rush. Yoo Sung-hyun did not fully understand what his friend was hinting at, and Kim Joo-hyuk added that the young man was definitely talented, and that whatever he did, he would succeed. The guy said goodbye and Yoo Sung-hyun went home, and as he walked up the stairs he felt cold. And he immediately remembered the past, the times when he and his grandmother climbed the stairs when it was also cold, and he was very worried about his grandmother, and held her hand tightly. Yoo Sung-hyun smiled and said that he had earned a lot of money, and added that his friend had not taken a penny of it, as if he was talking to his grandmother, who had been gone for a long time. The young man said that he was thinking about whether he should continue doing what he was doing. After all, when he was inside the capsule, his right hand did not tremble and everything was in perfect order. That car accident was a terrible memory, not only for the boy, but also for his grandmother. The boy remembered his grandmother's tears and thought that his right arm was more than just a horrible memory. It was the most hated part of his body because it had hurt his grandmother. His right arm had always followed him as a dark and unpleasant shadow since the accident, but now he could use it to pull the string again. He continued to talk to his grandmother and happily said that she would faint if she saw him now. He said that now he is surrounded by many good people who help him, and he had a feeling that all these people were sent by his grandmother. Yoo Sung-hyun started to cry and said that he did not even know how he could repay this kindness. And suddenly he remembered how his grandmother used to beat him as a joke and never let him drop his hands in any difficult situation. The boy exhaled with a smile on his lips and added that he would make every effort to achieve his goal. He continued on his way home and said that he was sorry that his grandmother would not be able to see it all. Acorn Jelly was browsing the forum and said that he expected the hype to be quite high. Suddenly, he noticed that the post with the video had reached the top 10 in the games community for the first time. Nayen immediately asked him why he was surprised, because the video was great, and the guy replied that the fact was that no one had posted any video. Acorn Jelly didn't understand what kind of video he was talking about, so she explained that the community of editors had posted a video of their game and sent the link to the guy. He didn't waste any time and clicked on the link to see what exactly caused such a huge stir. Acorn Jelly was really impressed after watching the video because Yoo Sung-hyun looked really cool there. Yoo Sung-hyun was at home and was thinking about how he had to organize all the information he had received the day before. He was thinking about how streamers make money and what are the main schemes they use. The young man came to the conclusion that they use two main schemes: donations from streams and a percentage of advertising, and it was also possible to earn money from edited videos. Yoo Sung-hyun realized that the so-called star style, which is often practiced on OldTube, would most likely suit him. His friend Kim Joo-hyuk also thought that this style would suit Yoo Sung-hyun. After all, he understood perfectly well that such videos are a great way to earn extra money and gain even more popularity. Yoo Sung-hyun came to the conclusion that he urgently needed an editor, because OldTube brings good money but needs professional editors, and the young man decided to look for talents who make popular videos. In a few minutes, he came across one of the most popular videos and decided that this was exactly what he needed, and suddenly saw that he was in the video. This video was edited from Almond's stream, and the author was one of the commentators who donated the largest amount at the time. The video picked the best moments from that game and presented them in the best possible light. When Yoo Sung-hyun watched a few seconds, he was shocked because he did not expect that his usual stream could be made into such a high-quality video. All the music and colors were chosen extremely well, and it even seemed that this montage complemented the story. At some point, the guy thought he was watching a real movie, not just an ordinary video on YouTube. The mood of the characters was conveyed so accurately that goosebumps went through the whole body, and the music only emphasized the best moments. The video was made so dynamically that Yoo Sung-hyun could not even imagine that it was possible, because it seemed that he was playing extremely professionally. He couldn't believe his eyes and thought that it just couldn't be him in this video. After that, Yoo Sung-hyun decided to read the comments and was really impressed because everyone wrote that Almond was one of the best players. The young man decided to call his friend Kim Joo-hyuk and tell him about the video, but suddenly the phone rang in his hands. Kim Joo-hyuk told Yoo Sung-hyun that this was the editor they needed for the job, but Yoo Sung-hyun was not sure that they could afford him because their income was still very unstable. The guy decided not to think about it because Kim Joo-hyuk took over the job, and Yoo Sung-hyun decided that he needed to get into the game as soon as possible in order not to lose his popularity. Wasting no time, the young man climbed into the game capsule and got ready for the next stream. Yoo Sung-hyun analyzed his character and thought that he was a pretty good shooter, but compared to other streamers, his physical data was not so outstanding. And the guy noted for himself that training is very important if he wants to stream like a professional. After an extremely hard workout that lasted 3 hours, Yoo Sung-hyun decided to take a break. He looked at his watch and, despite the fact that he was very hungry, decided that it was better to start streaming right now. He thought that most likely the commenters had already written a lot of their thoughts, because after the stream with Acorn Jelly and watching the video, the fans would expect a stream. Yoo Sung-hyun's stream was about to start and the guy suddenly started to get nervous, which had never happened to him before. At that time, one of the largest game distributors was very nervous. Because the game he had chosen did not bring enough money and did not become commercial because of its genre, the man desperately hoped that something could change because the expert reviews of this game were quite good. He thought about what he could do to get the attention of new users and how to turn the players' attention to this game. But at some point he realized that the game could only be promoted if a top player started playing it. But it seemed unrealistic. Suddenly he decided to look on YouTube for ways to promote the game, and came across one of the most popular videos of the very game he wanted to promote. The man couldn't believe his eyes because the quality of the video was top-notch, the editing was great, and the acting of the guy in the lead role was simply unsurpassed. He immediately decided to find the player under the nickname Almond, and found that this account was created just a few days ago. The man couldn't believe that the guy was a newbie because his game was extremely good, and it was clear how capable this young man was. And besides all this, Almond was also a talented streamer because his popularity was growing very quickly. And it was at that moment that the man realized that this guy was exactly the player he needed. It was at this moment that the man saw Almond starting his broadcast. He was very excited because it was a great opportunity to see how the guy really plays. The stream was started, but Yoo Sung-hyun did not immediately start talking to his fans because of his excitement. The number of viewers on the guy's stream was steadily growing, and only from the beginning there were about 1,000 of them. Kim Joo-hyuk was very excited about this because there was a chance that as soon as the number of viewers exceeded 1,000, his friend would be able to become a full-time streamer. Everyone was eagerly waiting for Almond to start saying something, but for a while the young man was just in a stupor because he did not expect that there would be so many commentators this time. Yoo Sung-hyun thought about the fact that there were more than 5 to 10,000 viewers on the stream with Acorn Geely, and everything went without any problems because the organization was at the highest level. He was worried that he would not be able to cope with so many commentators alone, but he decided to start his stream and greeted everyone. But suddenly the audience began to demand that Almond turn on the video because they wanted to hear and see him. Yoo Sung-hyun didn't know what to do because he usually played without video. Unexpectedly, someone leaked his photos and they began to spread very quickly among users. The guy didn't like it very much, but it seemed like that's what he wanted everyone to pay attention to. So he decided to just turn on the camera and give the audience what they wanted. While the donations were coming in every second, Almond was already in the game and was met by Amelia. The girl began to say that she had heard about Almond's extraordinary abilities and how easily he dealt with goblins. The boy began to say that it was not only his merit and he was not alone during the battle with the goblins, but the girl stopped him. Amelia took Almond's hand and said that she had already been told everything by Commander Roman. After that, the girl looked into the boy's eyes and said that she had another task for him. Almond wasn't sure he could handle it and asked why Amelia didn't ask Commander Roman about it, and the girl immediately said that she wanted the young man to handle this challenge himself. Amelia pointed to a large castle nearby, and the boy thought that maybe it would be a mission for which he could get a good reward. Amelia began to ask Almond to destroy the lord of the castle she pointed to. The boy thought that it was a fairly simple task and was glad that he got this task. He immediately asked if the lord often leaves this castle. Amelia answered that it was extremely rare and the young man needed to get inside in order to complete the task. Almond knew nothing about the lord of this castle, but he knew he could not refuse Amelia. The girl tried to encourage the young man and said that she believed in him and that he would succeed. Almond doubted whether he should agree to this task because the opinions of the viewers in the stream were divided, and some donated to the guy to agree, others to refuse. The man who watched the stream carefully thought that he had played this game many times, and it was simply impossible to complete this quest with just a bow. He sincerely believed that the guy would refuse because most commentators wrote that Almond would not be able to destroy the lord and complete the task. The man knew that in this game it was extremely difficult to get inside the castle unnoticed because it was necessary to climb the wall, and the artificial intelligence of the enemies was very advanced. But that was not the most difficult part because the biggest problem was the lord of the castle himself. He was armored from head to toe, and he was the worst possible opponent for an archer. Almond was undoubtedly very talented and handsome, but in this field, that alone is not enough to become a star. He couldn't miss the opportunity to complete a personal challenge from Amelia, so he agreed to the girl's offer. She smiled sweetly at Almond and said that she had no doubt that he would agree. After his answer, the young man read the messages from the commenters and realized that this quest would be really difficult for him. The guy reasoned that the game developers were very proud of their historical accuracy, which meant that the castles were not as big as they were supposed to be. And if this was true, Almond was sure that he could manage with a little effort. Suddenly, he looked at Amelia and wondered what the reason could be that the girl had ordered the destruction of anyone. Even though Amelia was just a game character, she didn't seem like the kind of person who would hate or harm others. Almond decided to ask what the lord of the castle had done to deserve to lose his life. The girl thought for a moment and answered that the lord, whose name was Talorant, made his people slaves. Almond did not expect the reason to be so serious, although he knew that Amelia could not have wanted to take the lord's life for nothing. The girl told him that the lord had driven his people into debt, thereby turning them into slaves who were obliged to serve him until the end of their days, including women and children. Amelia immediately added that if Lord Talorant died, their family would be able to take care of his people. Almond listened carefully to the girl and thought that he had made the right decision by agreeing to this task. He bowed to Amelia and was ready to fulfill the task that was set before him. Suddenly, Yoo Sung-hyun began to ask his viewers if the game could recognize when he was talking to himself, and the commentators told him that the game might be able to do that. One of the viewers advised the guy to change his settings in the game, and after that, everything started working as Yoo Sung-hyun needed it to. He was ready to start his task and decided that it was time to get into the castle. Or to get closer to the almond building, he had to go through a field of corn, and thanks to his training, he managed to do it almost silently, which impressed the commentators. The guy thought that he really felt the changes after the training, and that the 3 hours spent the day before were not in vain. There were guards on the castle walls who constantly monitored the situation around. Almond chose the right moment and quickly ran closer to the wall so that no one would notice him. The young man thought that he had already gone too far, and now he needed to get over the wall unnoticed. Almond heard that there were 2 guards on the wall and realized that if he acted foolishly, they would call for reinforcements. The young man immediately prepared a bow and arrows to strike the guards, and the commentators were really surprised by this decision and were sure that he would be revealed. While everyone was watching Almond, not understanding how he wanted to get into the castle, the guy said that he had come up with one way, namely to take down the guards with one hit to the head with a bow. Although the audience did not really believe in this idea, Almond prepared to shoot. He thought that first he needed to take out the guard on the left and make the arrow's flight path longer to slow down its landing. The young man shot the first arrow, which quickly began to rise. Then he prepared the next one, which was to hit the guard on the right. Almond waited for the first arrow to reach the point he needed and fired the second arrow. And very quickly, 2 arrows hit their targets and the guards on the castle wall were neutralized. The commentators saw what the boy had done and were very impressed because no one expected that the young man would really succeed in realizing his plan. Almond looked carefully at the wall to make sure that no one else was there. After that, he opened the comments from the stream and immediately thanked everyone who had donated to him. The man saw Almond's skill and couldn't believe his eyes because it seemed impossible for an archer who was alone to get into the castle. He thought that he had been working in game distribution for many years and had seen a huge number of players, but he had never met someone like Almond. The man was so impressed that he decided to contact his director to tell him about the streamer called Almond. He insisted that the director should do everything possible to get this guy to cooperate with them. Almond did not stop and very quickly reached the top of the wall. Once on the top, the boy was catching his breath because the test was really extremely difficult physically. The young man said that this game was very difficult because all the sensations were real. The audience noticed that Almond was more prepared than before and started asking how he managed to do it. And the guy answered that he had trained at the most difficult level the day before. The young man thought that first he needed to remove the bodies of the guards so that no one would notice them. But suddenly he heard the sound of someone approaching. It was another castle guard who was on guard duty and was walking to his colleagues when he suddenly saw Almond. Almond did not hesitate and prepared an arrow to take out the guard. After the danger had subsided, the young man began to read the comments of the audience again, as there might be some useful tips. He began to put the bodies of the killed guards together as the audience advised him. He realized that once he got inside the castle, it would be even more difficult, and he had a brilliant idea. The guy decided to use the clothes of the guards he had destroyed and changed his clothes in order not to attract too much attention to himself. He immediately went to the armory to get some arrows for himself just in case. As soon as Almond opened the door and went inside, one of the guards noticed him. He immediately yelled at the guy to stop and return to his position as quickly as possible. Almond realized that this guard could hurt him, and without thinking twice, he fired an arrow straight at his head. The audience began to laugh, saying that Almond must have misunderstood the task because it was not all the guards in the castle that needed to be destroyed, but the Lord. Suddenly, Almond was noticed, and one of the guards began to shout that a stranger had entered the castle. The boy was not confused and focused on his target, as he had done at a shooting competition a long time ago. He pulled the bowstring and aimed to hit the target. Almond fired an arrow that headed straight for the guard who noticed the young man. The boy once again hit his enemy's head and felt his strength grow to unimaginable heights. Almond realized that the guard could have heard the scream he raised, so he hurried to move forward as far as possible. The young man was noticed by another guard who tried to stop him, but it was all in vain. Almond managed to prepare the next arrow, which flew towards the guard and hit him in the leg, which surprised the commentators. The viewers were convinced that now they had to flee the castle because the surviving guard would call everyone inside and tell them about the stranger. This is exactly what happened, and very quickly the guards began to run to the wounded man, and one of them tried to stop Almond. But the guy was not going to give up because he realized he had to achieve his goal. On the move, the young man turned around and shot the guard who threatened him. The arrow fired by Almond pierced the man's head and he fell to the ground. Without hesitation, the young man stopped and fired 2 more arrows, or kill the remaining guards. Almond thought that the outside was cleared and it was time to move inside the castle, but suddenly he ran into another guard. Having destroyed one guard, the guy moved forward and met more and more obstacles, and at some point the alarm was sounded throughout the castle. One of the guards blew the horn to let everyone know that someone had broken into the castle. Very quickly, Almond was surrounded by a huge number of guards and there was no way back. Viewers of the stream immediately began to write that they did not understand how this could have happened and how Almond could have gotten into this situation. Many guards stood along the wall and were ready to grab the guy who had gotten into the castle. Despite the fact that Almond found himself in a bad situation, he was not going to let go and prepared to attack his enemy. The guy activated his skill of sequential shooting and prepared to strike the enemy. One by one, the arrows found their targets and destroyed the guards who stood in the way of the young man. The guards did not understand what was happening and who this stranger was who was shooting arrows one after another and hitting without missing. One of the guards started shouting that this young man was a monster and that he had to run away as fast as possible to save his life. Almond was not going to let go of his enemies and rushed after them to prevent them from escaping. The guards were desperately trying to run away from the danger, but Almond was gradually catching up with them. The boy took out his bow and decided to shoot while running to kill all the enemies. The young man was sure that he would succeed because he was focused only on his goals and believed that the most important thing in archery is concentration. And Almond succeeded. His arrows caught up with the enemies and hit the head of everyone he aimed at. Despite the fact that the enemy was begging for mercy, the guy did not stop because he aimed to complete his task without unforeseen situations in the future. Finally, all the guards were destroyed and it was time to move on to Lord Talleyrand's main target. The young man turned to his audience and asked if they liked what they had seen. The audience was really surprised and said that the guy was just crazy because it was almost impossible to get out of Almond's situation alive. After a little rest and a breather, Almond went to meet Lord Talleyrand. The boy opened the door to one of the rooms and entered and saw the Lord in front of him. The boy was surprised to see a giant man in armor, but he expected to meet an old man. Almond was very surprised that the Lord was sitting on his throne as if waiting for him, although the boy had to enter the castle secretly. The group was not verbose and did not hesitate to frighten their uninvited guest. He threw his Latin sword in Almond's direction, which stuck into the wall near the boy's head. Almond thought that Lord Talleyrand had extraordinary strength because it took a lot of effort to throw such a sword. The Lord looked at the young man and said that he would not do anything to him with a bow because the armor he was wearing could not be pierced. Talleyrand did not want to waste his energy on this boy and called his guards, who were also dressed in armor. They began to approach the young man, realizing that he would not hurt them because an arrow cannot make iron. Almond watched his opponents closely and tried to come up with a plan of action. The boy realized that he needed another weapon, and the sword that the Lord threw at him might be useful. But was it wise to take a weapon that you do not know how to use? So Almond decided not to change anything and find a way to destroy the enemy. The young man reasoned that if there is a task, there is a way to accomplish it. And since there is a bow among the weapons, there must be a way to win. He looked around carefully to find something that could help him in this confrontation. Suddenly, Almond noticed something that could save his life. Lord Talleyrand sat on his throne and watched the boy's actions because he did not believe that he would get out alive. The Lord's guards began to attack Almond, who was ready for this battle. The young man immediately dodged the first attack, trying to move very quickly to prevent the enemy from hitting him. After that, he pulled the bowstring and shot an arrow that went towards one of the guards. When the arrow reached its target, the guard's helmet flew off, and he hadn't expected that. When Almond shot down the helmet with the arrow, he noticed that the feathers on the armor were attached with a small ring with a hole in it. The other guards were very surprised to see this because no one had ever done this before. He realized that he could not stop until his opponent realized what was happening, and that is why in a matter of seconds, all three of the Lord's guards were without helmets. They were very confused because they did not understand how the guy managed to do it. The guards began to approach Almond, trying to attack him, but the young man had other plans. The young man pulled the bowstring again because now he had no obstacles to destroy his opponents. And the arrow found its target. One less enemy and two more to go. Almond did not stop and began to shoot in the direction of the guards because he realized that he should not have delayed. Finally, all the obstacles were destroyed and now the boy could fight Lord Talleyrand. The Lord was really impressed by the boy's abilities but was sure that he would not be able to defeat him. The stream viewers began to get nervous because the same plan as with the guards would not work, since the Lord did not have a loop on his helmet that could knock the helmet off. Almond thought that the hit to the head was done and now he just had to see if he could discover a new ability. He activated the skill of sequential shooting and prepared to fight the Lord. Almond prepared all his arrows and got ready to attack Lord Talleyrand. The boy was more concentrated than ever because he had only one chance to defeat the enemy and stay alive. Lord Talleyrand approached the young man and said that his miserable arrows could not harm him. But Almond was confident in his abilities and thought that everything was going according to plan. He looked at his opponent carefully and was sure that he had found a way to defeat him. Almond continued to shoot at the Lord, but the man kept repeating that the young man's attempts were in vain. Talleyrand was angry with the boy because he had turned the entire castle over and was steadily approaching the young man. Almond kept shooting arrows at the same place on the armor, and it began to irritate the Lord because he was sure that nothing could save the boy. But the young man did not listen to anything and was focused only on the shots. The arrows were approaching Talleyrand faster and faster as the distance between him and Almond was shrinking with each step he took. The guy was thinking only of one thing. He needed to shoot even faster and more accurately right in the heart. And finally, sparks began to fly from the armor, symbolizing that the metal began to break down. Lord Talleyrand was getting closer and closer, and Almond's shots were getting faster. The guy was sure that he had enough arrows and did not stop. And finally, a hole appeared in the Lord's armor, which was successfully hit by the young man's arrow. Lord Talleyrand fell to the ground, and finally Almond could exhale because victory was in his pocket. The boy had enough arrows to realize his plan and destroy his enemy. The young man put his hands down and took a deep breath, as he had been in incredible concentration for quite a long time. Almond was very happy because the time spent on training was not in vain, and even after such a difficult quest, he was full of energy because of his victory. After the battle, the young man opened a stream and started answering questions from the audience and thanked them again and again for their donations. The commentators immediately began to worry that after completing the task, the guy would end the game again by taking his own life. But Almond wasn't going to quit the game yet and said he wanted to see Amelia's surprised face. Suddenly, the guy received a donation of 300,000 from the user who had made the largest donations for all time. At this point, Almond began to feel strange because the fact that the same user was making constant donations for large sums scared him a little. It was the end of the working day on the streets and a huge number of people were heading home. One girl was very focused on her phone and didn't notice anyone around her. It was very difficult for her to be in a crowd of people because of the unbearable noise. She was exhausted and dissatisfied with her life because she could not find herself in this world. She opened the door and entered her empty apartment. Her thoughts were only about one thing, how she wanted to dive into a giant ocean where there was not a single living soul around. She turned on the light and entered the room, then hurried to the computer and exclaimed that it had finally started. She was in time for the very beginning of the stream that Almond started. The girl was very happy because Almond's streams were the only ray of light in her life. At first, she started watching his streams through a nickname because Almond was translated as Almonds, which she adored. But then when she saw the young man, she could not tear herself away. When the girl heard what task Amelia was offering Almond, she was quite surprised and could not believe that the guy agreed to it. She watched his every move without missing a single second. The girl was impressed by Almond's skill and ingenuity because not every player had such skills. She was shocked after Amelia's task was completed, and Almond managed to defeat Lord Talleyrand. The girl was sincerely happy for the young man who surprised her more and more every time. After this victory, she immediately decided that she needed to donate and thought about how much she had to drop, and this time the amount was 300,000. This girl was exactly the user who constantly made the biggest donations, and Almond immediately recognized the viewer's nickname. The guy, as always, wanted to do something interesting or to thank for the donation, and after reading the comments, he chose the best option, namely to do a backflip. The young man jumped out and flipped over in the air and then successfully landed on his feet. Suddenly, Almond received a notification that he had lost his life and returned to the last saved spot. The guy thought that he was probably not thrown out of the game because of an optimization he hadn't done before. Since it was not possible to stop the game as usual, Almond once again thanked the user under the nickname Seo Yeon for the donation and said goodbye to the audience. Yoo Sung-hyun opened the capsule and finished the game, and was pleased because he had received a lot of donations. He thought about the user Seo Yeon because during a joint stream with Acorn Jelly, he donated a huge amount of money and the guy was curious about what this viewer does in life. Yoo Sung-hyun thought that Seo Yeon must be very young to spend such a huge amount of money on a newbie streamer. After the stream was over, she lay down on the floor and was happy because she saw a really cool game, and Almond remembered her. Suddenly, she got up and thought that she needed to make a quick video. She began to create a video from Almond's stream and thought that this time the guy played even cooler than before. She was sure that this video could become extremely popular and epic. The next day, Yoo Sung-hyun was woken up by a phone call. It was his friend Kim Joo-hyuk, who told him that they were going to have lunch together today. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately started asking why Kim Joo-hyuk was calling so early and what was the urgency. The guy told his friend that there was a small problem, and he asked if Yoo Sung-hyun and Seo Young remembered the user who posted the video. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that of course he did, and asked what the problem was. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that this user had closed comments, and therefore he could not contact him. He asked Yoo Sung-hyun to ask Seo Young when he would next post how to contact him and talk to him, but the guy didn't think it was necessary to do it on the stream. Yoo Sung-hyun ended the conversation with his friend and decided to clean his apartment to free his space from unnecessary things and his head from unnecessary thoughts. He left the apartment and walked downstairs slowly. It was quite difficult for him to climb the stairs, even though he did it almost every day, and he decided to consider it a kind of training. When Yoo Sung-hyun went downstairs, a door suddenly opened in front of him and hit him on the head. It was a girl who didn't expect anyone to be at the door or immediately start apologizing to the guy. She approached Yoo Sung-hyun and asked him how he was feeling and if he was injured. Yoo Sung-hyun looked up and said that he was fine and had no injuries. When the young man looked at the girl, she immediately recognized him and felt very embarrassed. So she dropped her phone, which rolled down the stairs. She was embarrassed and did not expect to see her idol right on the street. Yoo Sung-hyun noticed that something was wrong with the girl and started asking her if she was okay, because he didn't understand why she was behaving like that. After making sure that everything was fine, he threw away the garbage and was about to return home when his phone rang again. It was Kim Joo-hyuk again, telling his friend that the video from his yesterday's stream was up again. Kim Joo-hyuk asked if Yoo Sung-hyun had seen the video and added that it was really cool. The guy said that the video had just been released and it already had more than 1,000 views and about 100 comments, so if things continue like this, Yoo Sang-hyun will quickly gain a lot of popularity. Yoo Sang-hyun was shocked and did not know what to say. Kim Joo-hyuk said that he had left their contacts in the comments under the video so that the author could contact them, so they just had to wait. The guy hung up the phone and heard the girl he had bumped into speak to him. He immediately recognized her and stopped to find out why she was catching up with him. Yoo Sang-hyun immediately started checking his pockets, thinking that he had lost something when they bumped into each other. Suddenly, the girl handed him a notebook and asked for his autograph. She bowed her head in anticipation of the boy agreeing to sign the notebook. Yoo Sung-hyun did not expect this because he did not consider himself a star, and this situation was a bit strange and unusual for him. He could not believe that this girl was his fan and most likely watched his streams all the time. He immediately decided to ask the girl about it because it was strange for him because he was not very famous yet. And then a fan met him at home. Yoo Sung-hyun didn't ask anything else, but signed in a notebook and asked the girl what her name was to sign it for her personally. The girl didn't answer, but said her name was Seo-ji-ah, and Yoo Sung-hyun immediately signed the autograph for her. The girl could not believe that she had met her idol and that she had received an autograph from him. Kim Joo-hyuk eventually contacted Seo-ji-ah and asked her what she was doing because her video editing was incredible. Seo-ji-ah replied that video editing is her main job and hobby. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to tell her that he and Yoo Sung-hyun had been looking for her. Seo-ji-ah immediately asked why, and the guy replied that nothing really happened. And he immediately asked if the girl would like to work with them. Yu Sung-hyun was very surprised because he did not understand how his friend managed to prepare all the documents for cooperation so quickly. The girl was confused by this offer because she did not expect to be able to work with her idol. Kim Joo-hyuk noticed that Seo Ji-ah started to doubt whether she wanted to work with them or not, so he immediately started talking about the fact that the videos she posted could cause some problems with monetization, namely with copyright and the use of content from streams. Seo Ji-ah didn't understand why the guy started threatening her, because she believed that she was not doing anything illegal, and she was constantly donating large amounts of money to Yu Sang-hyun. The girl immediately replied that she didn't create the videos to make money from them, and this answer made Kim Joo-hyuk feel a little ashamed. Despite this, Kim Joo-hyuk continued to say that they could make money together on these videos if the girl agreed to cooperate with them. I immediately thought that she was behaving strangely, because usually people are interested in money, but she was not. From the very beginning, Kim Joo-hyuk thought that Seo Young was some kind of a major, but it turned out that she made such huge donations solely because of her fan love for Almond. And since she was making videos with Almond just on the strength of her enthusiasm, Kim Joo-hyuk decided that he had to convince her to agree to work with them by any means necessary. He immediately began to say that he needed the help of an editor, and not just anyone, but Seo Ji-ah and no one else. The girl did not expect to hear this and could not even dream that Almond himself would need her help. Yu Sang-hyun immediately began to scold his friend because he didn't want Kim Joo-hyuk to put pressure on the girl like that. Seo Ji-ah couldn't believe what she was hearing and asked if Almond really needed her. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately realized that only Almond could influence the girl's decision and began to say that the guy had been looking for her for a long time. Yu Sang-hyun immediately continued and said that he really needed Seo Ji-ah's help because her videos were simply amazing. The girl had never heard that someone needed her before and asked the guys for time to realize and think about it. Yu Sang-hyun replied that of course she had as much time as she needed. Seo Ji-ah said that she couldn't really agree to work with them right away because there was one small problem. This problem was that the company where Seo Ji-ah was currently working prohibited double contracts, so to officially become an Almond installer, she would have to quit her job. The girl said that the company paid quite well and that it would be too risky for her to rely only on the income from the video, and added that she needed a fixed salary. Yu Sang-hyun was unsure whether they could afford it because he had only been a streamer for a few weeks and couldn't even afford to buy a friend a coffee. But Kim Joo-hyuk was determined and wanted the girl to work with them. The guy took out a letter from his bag and said that he had received an offer of cooperation from a gaming company, and that the terms also included payment for the work of an editor. The girl thought about it and couldn't decide whether she should accept the offer, but without hesitation she answered that she would sign a contract with them, and this answer surprised the boys because they did not expect Seo Ji-ah to agree so quickly. Yu Sang-hyun looked at the girl and realized that despite the fact that it was about livelihood from the very beginning, Seo Ji-ah was not against the contract with Almond. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately announced all the terms of the contract, the salary, and offered several options. The girl said that she was satisfied with the fixed amount and signed the documents. Kim Joo-hyuk said that as soon as the game company gives an answer, he will immediately contact the girl and hopes that they will have a fruitful cooperation. Seo Ji-ah immediately decided to ask what would happen to the videos she posted on her channel, and the guy replied that most likely they would need to be re-uploaded to the official channel. She asked him to let her know as soon as all the issues were resolved and left. Yu Sang-hyun immediately started asking Kim Joo-hyuk if the offer of cooperation with the game company was real. The guy replied that the offer was real, and he was surprised when he saw the letter in the morning and asked if Yu Sang-hyun would agree to sign a contract with them. Yu Sang-hyun couldn't have dreamed of such an offer and of course agreed to work with the game company. The two boys went further down the street and talked about Seo Ji-ah. Yu Sang-hyun said that it's one thing to be a fan and quite another to work side by side with your idol. But Kim Joo-hyuk couldn't fully understand why Seo Ji-ah was dropping such large amounts of donations on Almond's stream, and most likely it means that she likes the guy very much. At this point, Seo Ji-ah returned to her apartment and locked the door. After that, she quickly took off her outerwear and went to her room where she hid under the covers. She couldn't believe that this was really happening to her, because she never dreamed that she would ever meet Almond, let alone become his editor. Seo Ji-ah held the contract in her hands and could not fully realize everything, but still realized that this was not a dream, but a reality. She remembered her colleagues from her work who were always laughing at her, and did not consider her a professional. They kept telling her that no one else would treat her as well as they did, and this made Seo Ji-ah constantly stressed, but eventually she managed to break this vicious circle. She met people who really appreciated her abilities and were more friendly and pleasant than her previous team. Yu Sang-hyun was at home and decided that he should start streaming earlier than usual, as he usually streamed at different times, but decided that everything should be fine now. He got into the capsule and immediately noticed that someone had sent him a message. The message was from Seo Ji-ah, who asked him to watch a video and music for a screensaver for the channel. Yu Sang-hyun wondered how the girl could do all this work so quickly, since they had just said goodbye. Yu Sang-hyun decided to ask her directly about it, and she said that she had done everything gradually and had already edited the new video. The guy thanked Seo Ji-ah and said that he would definitely use the screensaver in the right place, and the girl was happy that she could help her idol. Yu Sung-hyun started the stream, and all the users who were subscribed to it began to receive notifications about the start. Everyone was pleasantly surprised because they didn't expect Almond to start streaming so early. The first thing they saw was a video sent to Yu Sang-hyun by Seoji Ah. After that, Yu Sung-hyun appeared on the screen and greeted everyone, and the subscribers were so happy that they immediately started donating. The guy didn't want to waste much time, so he offered to enter the game right away. Almond was in the game and had to complete the task, namely to tell Emilia that he had destroyed Lord Talleyrand. But first, the young man decided that since he had taken the castle on his own, he was entitled to a little reward. Of course, Almond was not interested in any other weapon but the bow, and he had a small choice. But suddenly the guy found a box with a lot of gold coins in it. In addition, there was armor that looked pretty decent, and Almond was confused for a few seconds. He quickly made his choice and changed into a new uniform and took everything he could carry. The young man was walking along the castle and talking to his subscribers at the same time when he suddenly saw a horse. And now Almond was able to travel not on foot but on horseback. So he climbed on the horse and went to Emilia. At dawn, Almond reached Emily and was able to complete his task. The girl was sitting in the carriage in the yard and did not immediately recognize the boy because his clothes were different. The boy approached Emily and bowed, and the girl was sincerely surprised that the young man had returned so quickly. Almond immediately told Emily that he had completed the task she had given him. The girl told one of her maids that she wanted to talk to Almond alone and asked her to leave them alone for a while. The woman did not want to fulfill Emilia's request, but the girl insisted that the maid leave. Emilia got out of the carriage and invited Almond to enter the castle. As they walked, Emilia immediately began to ask him why he had returned so quickly and why he had changed his mind about killing the Lord. But Almond looked at the girl and said that she had misunderstood him and that he had fulfilled her task and destroyed Lord Talleyrand. When Emilia heard this, she could not believe it at first because very little time had passed since she had instructed Almond to destroy the Lord. Almond didn't understand why Emilia was so surprised and began to say that he spent one day traveling one way and another half a day, preparing for the raid and another half a day on the raid itself. The girl was shocked because she could not imagine that the guy would be able to accomplish this task on his own and so quickly. Emilia began to ask Almond if he had really done everything she had asked him to do. The guy looked at the girl and said that in fact Lord Talleyrand's security was quite serious, and that's why he decided to destroy them all. When Emilia heard this, she could not believe Almond's words and could not even contain her emotions of surprise. After that, she calmed down and tried to continue the conversation with Almond in a calm tone. Emilia immediately asked if she understood correctly that Talleyrand Castle was now empty, and the boy replied that there was no one left there. Emilia was sincerely surprised because she did not understand how the young man managed to capture the impregnable Talleyrand Castle on his own. Almond didn't say anything because he didn't think he had done anything extraordinary. Emilia quickly decided that she had to go to the Lord's castle to protect innocent people and annex those lands to her territory. She immediately ordered a carriage to be prepared for her because she needed to be the first to move so that she would not have to deal with other nobles. Emilia's order was quickly fulfilled and the girl was able to go to Lord Talleyrand's castle. When she was in the carriage, she immediately turned to Almond, who was standing by the girl's side. Emily began to ask the boy why he was still standing there in thought. She immediately told him to get into the carriage with her because she had many questions about his adventure. Emily and Almond set off and the girl began to ask how a young man could be such a powerful warrior. The girl said that she had seen many great knights, but none of them came close to Almond's skill level. Of course, he was flattered to hear such praise from Emilia, but he still didn't consider himself superpowered. Almond thought about it a bit and said that he just happened to be very good at archery. This surprised Emilia because she thought that such a weapon as a bow would not be enough to defeat all the knights in the castle alone. Emilia smiled and said that it was just incredible because she had never seen a knight rely on a bow. The guy immediately said that he was not a knight at all, but a simple mercenary. Emilia immediately began to ask Almond if he would mind if she thought about becoming a knight after this task was over. The girl added that she really needed a reliable person to run Talleyrand Castle when she annexed its lands. Almond continued to say that he was just a mercenary despite having some fighting skills, and asked why he should become a knight. Emilia listened carefully and hoped that he would agree to become her assistant and move from mercenary to knight. The girl immediately began to say that her father wanted to meet Almond in person. And she added that her father was pleased with how skillfully the young man had resolved the difficult situation with the Lord. Such words of Emilia surprised Almond very much, because he was sure that her father, the Count, had left immediately after giving the task to Emilia. But suddenly the girl began to behave strangely in the boy's opinion. Emily began to say that not paying attention to such things was a sign of respect for a noble lady. Almond was silent and did not say anything when suddenly the girl announced that they had already arrived at the place. In Lord Talleyrand's castle, people were removing stones in the destroyed fence. Suddenly, they noticed that the castle gates were open and some people were approaching them, and they immediately began to ask each other who it could be and assumed that perhaps someone had been sent by Talleyrand. Emilia overheard this conversation and immediately said that they were not from Talleyrand but from the Janneret family. All those present were very surprised because they did not expect anyone other than Lord Talleyrand and his men to come to them. People did not understand what to do because Lord Talleyrand's troops were defeated, and they did not know what to expect from Janaret's family. Almond looked carefully at everyone present and thought that they still did not know what to do and whether they could trust Amelia. In a few minutes, Lord Talleyrand's banner was thrown, and Amelia looked at Almond with joy and gratitude. She was sincerely glad that thanks to the boy's help, she would be able to manage this castle with dignity. Lord Talleyrand's banner was replaced by the banner of the Janaret family. People could not believe that in just one night, the lord of their castle had changed. Some said that the Janaret family was much better and smarter than the Talleyrand's, while others were convinced that all wealthy people were the same. Almond observed everything around him and asked Amelia if it was okay to just leave everything as it was, because people did not fully understand who they were supposed to serve now. Emily looked at him with a smile and assured him that everything would be fine. People went on with their lives and did what they usually did, only occasionally continuing to voice their doubts about the Janaret family's rule. A week later, everything changed, and now the people of the area who had been so deeply in debt that they were on the verge of being sold into slavery could pay their bills with their honest labor and were allowed to earn a certain amount of money to live on. Thus, the labor force increased and the recently lifeless territory began to slowly revive. Almond was confident that in the long run, all the changes would bring much more benefit and prosperity. Amelia approached Almond, who was still in the castle, and the stream viewers immediately noticed a strange atmosphere in the relationship between the girl and the boy. Amelia asked Almond if he had forgotten that tomorrow they had to meet her father. The boy clutched her hand and said that of course he remembered because it was very important. The viewers began to leave a lot of hearts in the comments on the stream because it was clear that Amelia and Almond were in love with each other. Suddenly, alarm sounds began to come from the street, which scared Amelia and alerted Almond. A large army led by a knight in armor was approaching the castle. Almond immediately assumed that they could be Talleyrand's allies, and Amelia said that it was likely, and they had come to recapture the castle. The boy looked around and said that he could stop them no matter what. Emily grabbed the young man's hand and begged him to be as careful as possible. The army of the Janaret family quickly lined up and Almond was ready to defend the castle for Amelia. The commander of the army was the mercenary captain Roman, who was preparing his men to fight for the castle. The mercenaries whom Amelia had hired were ready to defend her because she had treated them very mercifully. Almond was also ready to defend not only the castle but also Amelia, and he looked at the girl standing on the wall. She was very worried that she would never be able to see Almond again, but she hoped that everything would end happily. After that, Almond received a new task, which was to win this war. The guy's subscribers were very surprised because no one in this game has ever had the task of winning a war. Almond read the comments and told everyone that he decided to end the stream for today. When the subscribers heard this, they begged him to stay a little longer, but Yu Sung-hyun decided that it was time to end. He remembered the advice of Akorn Jele, who said that it was important to choose the right moment to end the game, which may be disappointing for the audience, but in the long run, it is more beneficial for the streamer. Yu Sung-hyun decided to browse through the various posts and found something interesting. He found posts about himself where some of the best players were surprised that Almond had played almost the entire game so quickly. The young man immediately remembered Akorn Jelly's words about his extraordinary ability to concentrate, and Yu Sung-hyun thought that maybe he really had a talent for playing in virtual reality. He decided to see what other popular posts were out there because it seemed to him that concentration alone was not enough to successfully play virtual games. And suddenly he came across posts analyzing the skills of the archer Almond, where they analyzed in detail the postures of the hands and so on. The young man immediately realized that the author of these posts was not an amateur, but a real person who understands archery. Yu Sung-hyun was very curious because he had missed that this author could be a former athlete, and if he was an archer, then most likely the boy would know him. Suddenly, the young man put the phone down on the bed and thought that he was thinking about this in vain because it was nothing interesting. After all those who were engaged in archery 10 years ago had severed all ties with him, and yet the boy was wondering whether he knew this person or not. Yu Sung-hyun had retired from the big sport because of an injury he received in an accident, and no one else knew about it except his coach. The boy remembered the day he was going to quit archery once and for all. His friends could not believe that he really decided to give up because they did not know what happened to him. Yu Sung-hyun did not want to tell the whole truth and decided to say that he just wasn't interested anymore. His girlfriend could not believe that archery was just a pastime for him. She was convinced that if Yu Sung-hyun left their team, the other archers would show worse results because everyone looked up to him. It was very painful for Yu Sung-hyun to say goodbye to his favorite pastime, but he could not go to competitions or hold a bow in his hands anymore. His girlfriend, thinking that he was really quitting archery because he was no longer interested, shouted at him to never come back. Yu Sung-hyun kept walking without turning around, and tears just rolled down his face because for him, archery was not just a pastime but a life's work. The next morning, Yu Sung-hyun went to read the post to see what people were discussing, and all the comments were about how much they wanted to see Almond's battle today. Going down the stairs, Yu Sung-hyun met Seo-ji-ah again, who came out of her apartment. He immediately greeted the girl, and she turned around and was surprised to see Yu Sung-hyun. The girl immediately asked him where he was going to train, and he replied that he was going to warm up a bit. Yu Sung-hyun asked Seo-ji-ah to walk with him, which surprised the girl, and she of course agreed. They walked to the park together and sat on a bench to drink water and talk. Yoo Sang-hyun offered a bottle of water to the girl, who thanked him and said she had something to show him. Seo Ji-ah wasted no time in pulling out her phone and searching for something to share. She said that she had finished editing some videos for Almond's new channel and asked him to watch them. The guy was surprised that Seo Ji-ah had finished editing so quickly and started watching. It was a video edited from his very first stream where the girl picked up comments that said that a beginner with a bow in his hands would not be able to achieve anything. The idea was to show how Almond, being a beginner, exceeded everyone's expectations. Yoo Sang-hyun watched the video carefully and liked it very much. Seo Ji-ah was nervous because she didn't know what his reaction would be and immediately asked him how he liked the video. Yoo Sang-hyun looked at Seo Ji-ah and exclaimed that it was a masterpiece, and he began to say that cutting a day's stream and including all the other highlights was just incredible. The guy said that the graphics that the girl added for better perception are also at a high level, in addition to a great sense of speed, a reasonable number of inserts from the chat, and even a perfect ending. Seo Ji-ah didn't expect such a reaction from Yoo Sang-hyun. The guy immediately asked if they could upload the video right now, and the girl replied that not yet. She immediately explained that she had heard that it was better to upload 3 or 4 videos at once. The girl said that if Yoo Sang-hyun didn't mind, she would continue in the same format, and the young man said that he liked it. Seo Ji-ah returned to her home and sat down on the bed and wanted to rest a bit because she was very tired. In front of her eyes was the face of Yoo Sang-hyun, who told her that her video was a masterpiece. She was very happy because her idol liked her work and she was proud of herself. Suddenly, Seo Ji-ah received a message on her phone and she was surprised because she hadn't expected any messages. She thought that no one should be texting her at this time and assumed that it could be Almond. She picked up her smartphone and hurried to read who had decided to send her a message. But it wasn't Yoo Sang-hyun, and she threw the phone on the bed in disappointment and decided to go take a shower. All of Almond's subscribers were eagerly awaiting the start of the stream, and finally the guy started. Despite the fact that the young man decided to start 4 hours earlier than usual, there were still quite a few people, and he immediately told the commenters that he decided to start early because he thought the battle might take a long time. Almond started the game and found himself near a castle that needed to be defended from attackers. Next to him was Captain Roman, who was sincerely happy for the young man who had come from the bottom to achieve great success. Hinting at a love affair with Emilia, who was not an easy girl, Emilia was very much looking forward to Almond's return with victory and was worried not only for him, but also for her entire army. Yoo Sang-hyun began to tell Roman that there was nothing between them, but the captain was sure that the guy was hiding something. Almond was a little surprised that Roman started talking to them so directly about the relationship, because he and Roman had been on good terms before, but there was no such emotional closeness between them. Roman said that thanks to Almond, he also received good loot and offered him to fight side by side in the future. After that, the man pointed to the knight in the golden helmet and said that he was the key to victory in today's battle. Almond looked closely and noticed that it did not look like this knight was rushing forward, but the boy needed to defeat the knight in the golden helmet for the battle to end. The army that fought for January's family was ready, and Commander Roman gave the order to move forward. Very quickly, one army was approaching the other, and the battle was about to begin in a few seconds. Almond was in charge of the archers, and waiting for the right moment, he ordered them to shoot. At the same moment, a huge number of arrows shot toward the enemy and killed them, one by one. Suddenly, Almond received a notification that he could now give orders to NPC players. Almond's subscribers continued to surprise the guy, and one of the viewers donated 10,000 and wrote that he gives this amount for each destroyed enemy. Almond was a little shocked by this message and such conditions, because it was the first time he participated in such a battle and did not know how the enemy soldiers would behave. Pulling himself together, he said he was ready to accept the offer from the subscriber. Almond separated from his team and decided to hide in the bushes to better see the enemy's numbers and be able to attack them unnoticed. The guy counted that he had about 8 to 10 arrows, and if he managed to hit one arrow at a time at one enemy, he could earn good money. The young man had already had experience with similar tasks from subscribers and knew perfectly well that doing this was very good for the character. And now Almond's task was not only to defeat the knight in the golden helmet, but also to destroy as many opponents as possible. The enemies were moving towards the castle because they really wanted to capture it and overthrow Emilia from the throne. But it was not as easy as many thought, and Almond's first arrow hit the target. One of the soldiers noticed that the attack was coming from the left flank and immediately informed his allies. The army immediately turned toward the left flank, but the soldiers did not see anyone there and did not fully understand what was happening. The commander of this group of soldiers said that they did not have time to be distracted by every arrow and needed to move on. But this commander did not have to move forward anymore because Almond's next arrow killed him. While the soldiers were trying to figure out where the fire was coming from, Almond hid behind the bushes and waited for the right moment. One more shot and he hit the enemy's head, who again did not expect the attack. One of the soldiers on horseback noticed which side the archer was attacking from and ordered 20 soldiers to take up a position to defend this flank. Almond quickly prepared 20 arrows and got ready to go. The soldiers in armor slowly approached the place where the boy was hiding. Almond told his subscribers that he had 20 arrows ready and there were 20 soldiers coming at him, so now he just had to make sure he didn't miss. The enemy looked around, not knowing where this archer would strike again. But all this was in vain because Almond acted quietly, quickly, and very professionally. The guy activated the skill of sequential shooting and very quickly destroyed most of the targets. Those who managed to stay alive tried to escape and said they needed reinforcements, but it was all in vain. In a very short period of time, Almond killed more than 20 enemies and earned 230,000. Seoji Ah watched the stream at home and was once again convinced that Almond was simply incredible. She was convinced that everyone loved Almond so much, including her, because he was very confident. The guy was really very confident and knew for sure that he was a professional. After all, each of his shots hit the target over and over again, and all his opponents were defeated at the first blow. And none of them had any chance of survival in a fight with such an opponent as Almond. Almond continued to destroy his enemies relentlessly and used up half of his arrows, leaving only 40. The commander of the enemy army saw how his men were being destroyed very quickly by just one archer. He was quite surprised because it was the first time he had ever encountered such a danger. The knight in the golden helmet ordered to send 40 men and not to allow this archer to destroy his men without orders. This order was quickly executed and 40 knights were already standing near the bushes from which Almond attacked. At some point, the guy started reading what the commentators were writing and was a little shocked that he could count on 1,000,000 after completing the task. Almond clearly decided that today he had to take this 1,000,000 for himself. The first arrow flew in the direction of the enemy and Almond got even closer to the coveted 1,000,000. The young man was not going to stop and immediately activated his skill of consistent shooting. He destroyed one enemy after another without stopping for a second. Suddenly, one of the arrows sparkled out of the bushes and now Almond could be spotted. And so it was that an archer from the enemy side began to attack the boy. Almond immediately realized that he had to destroy the enemy archer first because he was threatening him. The boy carefully watched where the arrows were coming from and eventually managed to spot the enemy's ambush. The young man fired an arrow and prevented the enemy from attacking him, who continued to shoot arrows at him. The archer whose arrow Almond deflected was very frightened because it was the first time he had ever faced such a strong enemy. And while he was thinking about what he should do, Almond made his attack and took the life of this archer. Now the guy was safe and decided not to hide but to come out and continue the fight. The enemy army was very scared and was about to retreat, but Almond could not allow any of them to leave the battlefield alive. The young man kept counting how much he had earned and how many more enemies he needed to destroy to get 1,000,000. Realizing that there was no way to escape, one of the enemy soldiers drew his sword and hurried to strike Almond. The guy noticed the danger approaching him in time and had the opportunity to dodge it. He reacted very quickly and sent one of his arrows in the direction of the soldier. The enemy army was even more frightened because the speed with which Almond was moving was simply amazing. When it was clear that Almond could not be defeated, all those who were still alive tried to escape with their last strength. Almond was about to shoot his next arrow when he realized he was out of arrows. He lowered his bow for a second and tried to think of what he should do next, because he still had a little bit more than 1,000,000 left. The boy watched the soldier running as fast as he could, and at some point he thought he had lost Almond. But the young man did not give up and went after the enemy. Seeing this, the soldier was so frightened that his complexion even changed from fright. Almond was moving very fast and noticed one arrow that he could get to make the last blow. He stopped and concentrated on his target so as not to miss. The arrow quickly caught up with the fleeing soldier and, as always, hit the right spot. When the enemy soldiers ran out, the guy exhaled and smiled, telling his followers that there were only 20 people left to kill. A subscriber who promised to donate for each destroyed enemy immediately sent Almond 1,000,000, and the guy was sincerely happy about it. Suddenly, Almond noticed someone approaching from the outside and did not fully understand what had happened. It was the soldiers of the Yanare family's allies who entered the battle after the mercenaries. The commander of this army was a young man named Robert. The soldiers who fought for Emilia rejoiced when they saw Robert and said that he was the undisputed hero of this war, and it was thanks to him that they won. Robin was surrounded by soldiers who thanked him for his help and said that without him they would not have been able to cope. Hearing this, Almond was a little upset because he had killed 100 enemy soldiers and no one even noticed. Suddenly, someone told him that he was sorry for such shameful behavior of the soldiers. It was Commander Roman who understood that real knights would never treat mercenaries well. It was a bit surprising because he hadn't known before that there was any difference between knights and mercenaries. Roman began to explain that knights tell mercenaries to take their miserable basic pay and go away, even though the mercenaries made a decisive contribution to the victory. Roman continued to talk about how the knights hadn't really done anything in this battle, when he suddenly heard someone ask if that was why the mercenaries were so upset. It was Robert who continued to ask what was wrong with the mercenaries taking the honestly earned money they had agreed on in advance. Roman began to get angry and said that the contract clearly stated a clause about additional remuneration for outstanding performance. Hearing this, Robin began to say that the mercenaries could not show any outstanding results. The knights of Robin's army picked up on this and began to mock the mercenaries, showing their disrespect for them. Robin was convinced that the mercenaries were fighting solely to protect themselves, and claimed that this was the only value they had. Such words of the man made Roman very angry, and he shouted that it was a very strong insult. Almond tried not to interfere in this conversation and just watched everything from the outside. Robin continued to mock the mercenaries and asked what he had said wrong and how he had offended Roman. Almond listened to Robin's words and realized that this was a fairly common stereotype about mercenaries, but in fact they were not like that, and it was just a stereotype. Roman was saying that if mercenaries acted only as Robert said, they would not be trusted, and without trust, their community would not last long. The mercenary commander went on to say that he thought the knights had hung the battle on them because they recognized their skills, but all gratitude disappeared as soon as the battle was over, and added that it was not very noble for knights. Despite the fact that Robert did not like Roman's words, the man continued to say that Almond alone killed 100 men, and the knights dared to say that the mercenaries were only worried about themselves and did nothing. When Robin heard that the archer was able to destroy 100 soldiers, he laughed very hard and did not believe a word of Roman's story. Roman was very upset because no one was going to recognize the merits of the mercenaries and Almond personally. Suddenly something started to happen and everyone turned to see what was going on. The enemy commander was trying to get through the crowd with a knight in a golden helmet. The knight stood next to Robin and said that he was defeated and that he would admit it. The knight said that their castle had been occupied without trial, and the soldiers had been ruthlessly killed. Then he asked if the Janere family really solves all their problems this way. Almond noticed Robin's strange reaction and was sure that the man in the golden helmet must be very influential. Robin began to justify himself by saying that Lord Talleyrand was very bad with people, but the knight in the golden helmet did not want to listen to him and said that he wanted to talk to Amelia. When Almond heard this, he exclaimed that he would not be able to meet Amelia face to face. The knight in the golden helmet's eyes immediately fell on Almond, but he did not know who this guy was. The knight in the golden helmet immediately asked Almond if he was a knight of the Jenneret family, and the boy immediately replied that he was not. This answer surprised the knight and was immediately followed by a question about who this young man was. Roman decided to answer instead of Almond and said that he was a mercenary and he was with him. The knight in the golden helmet immediately began to ask if he was really the archer who had single-handedly killed 100 of his soldiers. Robert was quite surprised because he did not believe that an archer could show such results on the battlefield. Almond did not understand how the knight in the golden helmet knew that 100 soldiers were killed by an archer. Robin began to talk about how it was too much for a joke, and still did not believe that an archer who usually hides behind other people's backs could destroy so many enemies on his own. The knights were confused because they did not understand who they should believe and what really happened on the battlefield. The knight began to take off his golden helmet and at the same time asked if Almond wanted to continue working for these idiots if they didn't even believe him, people who couldn't even appreciate him. This knight was a girl named Rosanita who offered Almond to work for her. Almond was very surprised because he did not expect a girl to be hiding behind the golden helmet and tried to find at least some information about her in the comments on the stream. He had to choose between accepting Rosanita's offer or staying and continuing to work for Janneret's family. The guy sincerely wondered how Rosanita could continue to maintain such resilience and grace despite the defeat, and he noticed that the girl's aura was significantly different from Amelia's. Even the knights of the Janneret family admired Rosanita and were completely enchanted by her. Almond's subscribers at that moment began to go crazy, some of them telling him to take the first option, while others were sure that he should choose the second. The young man tried to analyze everything that had happened before with Amelia. He had known her from the very beginning and had been progressing with her mission. Suddenly, Rosanita began to demand that he make a decision faster and not keep her waiting for a long time. But the guy could not make such a decision so quickly, and he tried to estimate at least roughly how many people were for which option. Since Almond was not 100% sure of the correctness of his choice, he decided that this was the moment to end the stream and left the game. Kim Joo-hyuk was closely watching everything that was happening, and when Yoo Sung-hyun finished the broadcast, his manager realized that this time, he would not be able to do without a powerful dose of hate. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk noticed that there were still people on the stream who were the very first to enter the stream, and these people were called fanatics. Obsessed with being the first to enter the stream. They not only quarreled, but also spread information about the events of the last stream to various communities. And Kim Joo-hyuk noticed that there were quite a few of these fanatics on Almond's stream. He tried to analyze Yoo Sung-hyun's subscribers to figure out who should be targeted more, boys or girls, and who donated more. Suddenly, the door to Kim Joo-hyuk's room opened, and he was forced to interrupt his search. The young man's parents entered the room, and Kim Joo-hyuk's father was very angry and scolded his son, asking what he had done. The man was very angry because Kim Joo-hyuk had left the company without telling him anything. The boy's father yelled at him very loudly and argued with him because he believed that his son was ruining his life and also ruined his own reputation. He told Kim Joo-hyuk that he had to go back to work tomorrow morning, but Kim Joo-hyuk was not willing to go back to a job he didn't like. He wanted to object to his father, but he wouldn't listen. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't want to fight with his parents, so he couldn't disobey, so he had to agree to the man's terms. The young man was very upset and lowered his head and told his father that he would do as he wanted. After these words, the parents turned around and headed for the exit. Kim Joo-hyuk's mother was very worried about him and asked how he was doing. The boy wanted to achieve everything on his own, and together with Yoo Sung-hyun, they managed to earn a little over $2.5 million in a week. It wasn't a lot of money, but Kim Joo-hyuk liked doing what he started doing with his friend, and saw it as a prospect. He was very much offended that his father was forcing him to return to the company, but he could not leave Yoo Sung-hyun right now. He gathered his thoughts and tried to think of something he could do to avoid having to talk to his father about this topic. Yoo Sung-hyun was resting quietly at home and was not expecting anyone to visit. Suddenly, someone started ringing his doorbell and he had to wake up to answer it. He opened the door and immediately asked what was the reason for coming so early. Yoo Sung-hyun saw his friend Kim Joo-hyuk standing outside the door with a full backpack. The guy happily told his friend that he would stay with him for a while and offered to have breakfast and a beer. But Yoo Sung-hyun said that he was not going to drink in the morning, especially before the stream. He wanted to find out the reason why Kim Joo-hyuk moved out of his parents' house right now. But Kim Joo-hyuk was not ready to talk about this topic and said that he would definitely tell him about everything later. Kim Joo-hyuk decided to ask Yoo Sung-hyun what he was going to do next in the game, and whether he would choose Amelia or Rosanita, and added that it seems Almond has a love triangle. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that it didn't matter at all because the main thing for him was to show his archery skills. But Kim Joo-hyuk insisted that it was very important and asked if his friend had ever visited the forum after the stream. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately decided to look at what was being written there, and was surprised because it was really important for people to know who Almond would choose. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't understand why his friend was so calm, because there were many threats on the forum if the young man chose the wrong girl. Yoo Sung-hyun didn't want to talk about it anymore and changed the subject, saying that he wanted to discuss something with Kim Joo-hyuk. The guy started to say that given his progress in the game, the finale was very close, and they still hadn't chosen which game they would play next, and it would be nice to find something spectacular to get more views. Kim Joo-hyuk seemed to be waiting for this question, and immediately told his friend that he already had a few ideas. The guy said that he had conducted a whole research to find out what was currently the most popular. Kim Joo-hyuk turned on the computer and showed Yoo Sung-hyun the game everyone was talking about. He was sure that it was the game that his friend should play next. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately said that he had heard the name of this game before, but did not try to find out more. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to explain that this is an online survival game where players compete with each other in real time with the main goal of staying alive. He was sure that this game would fit Almond's image and emphasize his style. He was not sure whether to continue with this game, but did not object to his friend. The guy began to say that he was not used to playing in real time, but if he practiced a little before the stream, maybe everything would work out. But Kim Joo-hyuk started shouting that the guy shouldn't even try to do it in any case. The young man immediately asked Yoo Sung-hyun if he understood what the viewer wanted to see from him. Yoo Sung-hyun thought about it for a while and answered that the most important thing was probably a spectacular performance. But Kim Joo-hyuk said that every gamer with enough skill can show a high level of play. From Almond, they want to see an unsurpassed genius who does incredible things as a beginner. He reminded Yoo Sung-hyun of his first stream during the game, when the guy showed incredible results from the first time, despite the fact that he had not trained to play before. And then he added that the audience just goes crazy when they see unsurpassed geniuses of the game. Kim Joo-hyuk was sure that Yoo Sung-hyun needed to repeat the same trick of showing a perfect game without training, but Yoo Sung-hyun didn't quite understand how he was supposed to do it, because the new game was different from the previous one and was tied to weapons, and the guy didn't really know much about it, except for a bow. Kim Joo-hyuk insisted that the boy had talent and that no one else had hit the target 10 times in a row, and that was why people admired him so much. At that moment, Yoo Sung-hyun thought that maybe his friend was right, and that's why the audience loved him so much. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately told his friend that before he started playing, he practiced a little bit in the simulation games that came with the capsule, and the program is really well optimized, so he can play on the highest difficulty every day. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked him what his record was, and he said that it was about 12,000 points. After hearing this and checking the information in the simulator, Kim Joo-hyuk was really surprised because it said that Yoo Sung-hyun was on the first place in the ranking. The guy continued to say that his friend was a brilliant player, and it wasn't just archery. He continued to praise Yoo Sung-hyun and said that he was a genius in this field. Kim Joo-hyuk was so pleased that he invited Yoo Sung-hyun to sign up for a new game right away. After the conversation, Yoo Sung-hyun immediately went to the capsule, which surprised his friend a little because it was still early enough for the stream, and the guy said that he was currently testing what time period would have the most views. Kim Joo-hyuk said that this was a very smart strategy and wished his friend good luck before the game. It was the first time Yoo Sung-hyun heard such words of support from his friend that he was even a little scared. He decided that he needed to start streaming immediately to save himself from unnecessary attention from Kim Joo-hyuk. In a few seconds, Almond was back at the castle where he had to choose who he wanted to work with. Rosanita stood waiting for the boy's answer and hoped that he would accept her offer, but he realized that his choice would determine the further plot twist. So he answered that although he was a mercenary, he had already sworn allegiance to another. Thus, Almond chose to stay with Amelia, which upset Rosanita a little. The girl smiled at the boy and said that he was better than all the knights she had met. After these words, Rosanita left. The stream viewers who supported the girl were upset because they thought that Almond would choose her. The guy thought that if he had chosen Rosanita, the plot would have developed much longer and he had to change the game. Almond looked after Rosanita and said that he was really devoted to Emily. Suddenly, Emily appeared behind him and was approaching him. Almond turned around and saw the girl and was a little surprised that she came to him instead of waiting at the castle. She was very happy to meet Almond again, whom she had been so worried about during the battle. The knights tried to keep the girl away from Almond, saying that it was still not safe here. But no one and nothing could stop Amelia because she really wanted to hug her beloved again. Almond hugged the girl and told her that they had won and could return to the castle. Amelia told Almond that he had done a great job. Her eyes were full of feelings for the boy. The girl approached the boy and was about to kiss him, but suddenly the picture disappeared, and the audience was outraged that they would not see the moment of Amelia and Almond's kiss. The knights of the Janneret family, mercenaries led by Roman, went towards the castle, and one of the knights who was riding next to Almond began to tell him that he was a really good archer. Roman also heard the knight's words and was outraged because the guy was acting as if he hadn't insulted Almond just a minute ago. He did not like the fact that their allies did not recognize mercenaries as honest people, unlike their enemies who recognized Almond's achievements immediately. Roman did not really want to trust the knights of the Janneret family and was a little upset, because now Almond was not just a mercenary but Amelia's lover, and now the guy had every right to choose who he would be in the future. Roman thanked Almond and said that only thanks to his contribution, each of them earned enough to forget about work for 4 months. After a while, they reached the castle and the guy on horseback rode inside. The boy thought that it was the first time in his life that he had seen the castle from the inside, and so he looked around carefully. Amelia immediately invited Almond to share dinner with her and invited the boy into the hall. When they entered the hall, she immediately said that this was the hero of the day and pointed to the young man. Lord Janneret was sitting in the hall. He invited Almond to take his place at the table and said that he had already heard a lot about the boy's achievements. The man said that Almond had done an incredible job and he wanted to thank him from the bottom of his heart. Lord Janneret immediately ordered the maid to bring a treat. Almond looked at the man and thought that he was fortunately not one of those aristocrats who evaluates people by their status, but he was still worried. Suddenly, Almond received a notification that he had successfully joined the dinner with Janneret's family, and he was somewhat surprised. One of the maids brought a large bowl of water to the young man and placed it in front of him. Almond looked at the bowl and did not understand why it was there, and there were strange buttons that he did not know the meaning of. He had to figure it out very quickly so as not to embarrass himself in front of a wealthy family. While he was trying to figure it out, he accidentally pressed one of the buttons and something strange started happening. A minigame appeared in front of him that Almond did not expect to see. The stream viewers started laughing at this and talking about how minigames are often inserted into various moments of virtual online games. In order to move on, Almond had to pass the minigame, and after a while he managed to do it. After that, Lord Janneret turned to the young man and asked if he wanted to become one of their knights. The guy needed to choose his future path, and he thought about the fact that he played most of the quests in this game as a free mercenary, and thought what would happen if he deviated from the standard. The guy's subscribers began to write that this was probably the end of the game. Everyone could not believe that the guy had completed it so quickly. Almond had previously assumed that he would be able to quickly reach the final if he chose Amelia, but not so much. When it was time to make a decisive choice, Almond told the audience that he wanted to finish the stream for today and continue later. After that, Yoo Sung-hyun opened the capsule and noticed that when he was not participating in the fights, he did not sweat as much as usual. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately came up to him and said that it was a very good job and the stream turned out to be fun as always. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately said that he had been contacted by a representative of the game company, and they were ready to pay for the game that the boys had chosen the day before, and this information made Yoo Sung-hyun very happy. The boys were happy that they would now be able to get a regular salary and not have to worry about whether they would have enough donations to live on after the stream. The next day, the boys were to meet with a company representative to discuss all the details of the cooperation. The news that Almond was now an official partner of the gaming company quickly spread through news chats. This company holds a leading position in the market without any specific strategy and has been maintaining its strong position for a long time. But recently, other gaming companies have started to grow and therefore began to cooperate with streamers. Yoo Sung-hyun came to the company to meet with the management and discuss all the details he was interested in. All of the guy's subscribers were looking forward to a new stream from him, but Almond did not go online and everyone started to worry about it. But instead of streaming, Almond released a new video on YouTube where he told his subscribers that he had created his own account and became an official partner of the gaming company. All of the guy's subscribers were very surprised because they did not expect the young man to achieve such success so quickly. COG worked on creating a video for Almond because now she was in full swing. Almond told his subscribers that very soon all the videos that were previously uploaded to this channel will be re-uploaded, and he will continue to work to make even more interesting content. Immediately afterward, Yoo Sung-hyun and Kim Joo-hyuk gathered at a cafe to celebrate the beginning of their new life. Kim Joo-hyuk told his friend that it would be nice if Seo joined them for their little celebration, but Yoo Sung-hyun didn't think it was a celebration because they were just there to have a beer with their friend. Kim Joo-hyuk wondered how the girl managed to make 3 full videos in just 2 days, and Yoo Sang-hyun replied that she did it in her free time before she became their official editor. Kim Joo-hyuk was surprised by this because he did not understand why the girl did not respond to his offer of cooperation when he wrote to her. Yoo Sung-hyun remembered that his friend was going to tell him the reason why he decided to move out of his parents' house, and suddenly felt his head coming very fast towards the table. Kim Joo-hyuk grabbed hold of Yoo Sung-hyun's head and leaned against the table with the young man as if he were hiding from someone. After that, Yoo Sung-hyun began to say that his friend did not have to tell if he did not want to, and not to do such actions anymore. But Kim Joo-hyuk leaned over not because he didn't want to talk, but because he saw his former colleagues. He immediately suggested that Yoo Sung-hyun leave quietly before anyone noticed them, and the boy agreed. But it was too late when one of the former colleagues recognized the boys and came closer. It was the manager who, while working in the company, constantly reminded Yoo Sung-hyun that he got the job by accident. The man could not keep silent and pass by because he took great pleasure in mocking the boys. Kim Joo-hyuk pretended to be very happy to see his former boss and asked him how he was doing. The man began to answer and immediately began to ask where the boy went when he quit and why he left them. After that, he immediately joked that Kim Joo-hyuk probably works in this very cafe, hinting that he was no longer capable of anything else. The guy realized that his former colleague was waiting to hear that the young men could not find another job and be able to mock them even more. From the moment the man approached the boys' table, Yoo Sung-hyun didn't say a word, so his former boss started saying that he should say hello to him. Yoo Sung-hyun looked up and asked why he should greet him, a response the manager did not expect to hear and was shocked by the young man's impudence. Kim Joo-hyuk, on the other hand, was delighted that his friend dared to speak so sharply to his former boss. Yoo Sung-hyun was sure that he was doing the right thing, and continued to say that he did not intend to greet the manager because he and the manager were not even friends, and the man always humiliated him. This tone of communication really annoyed the man, and he started to say that Yoo Sung-hyun had become an outcast because he didn't know how to communicate with people and didn't understand how society really works. Yoo Sung-hyun did not interrupt him and continued to listen to everything his former boss said. The man, with a confused smile on his face, continued to insist that it didn't matter what kind of relationship they were in, and that they should be polite and say hello, because it was just a simple upbringing. The guy tilted his head slightly and started laughing after the man's words. The manager did not understand why he caused such a reaction, and Yoo Sung-hyun replied that first, the man himself should learn how to behave with other people before telling someone about education. This conversation became quite loud, and everyone in the cafe paid attention to the man and the boys. Yoo Sung-hyun remained as calm as possible, showing his superiority over the manager. But the man could not contain his emotions and was already preparing to get into a fight with the boys. Yoo Sung-hyun was ready for this turn of events, and stood up from his chair to show his former boss that he was no longer afraid of him. It was the first time the man had ever seen the boys so confident, and so he could think of nothing else but threats. Kim Joo-hyuk was scared that his friend was getting into a fight with his former boss and tried to stop them. Suddenly, a man came into the cafe and saw Yoo Sung-hyun and went to him to say hello. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately recognized the man as the director of the gaming company with which Yoo Sung-hyun had agreed to work. When the young man turned around and saw the man, he was surprised because he did not expect to meet him in this cafe. The man began to approach Yoo Sung-hyun and talk about the video that he had posted today because the number of views was incredibly high. The man said that the directors of the gaming company were delighted when they saw the numbers, and added that the CEO wanted to have dinner with the young man. When Yoo Sung-hyun's former boss heard about it, he was very surprised because a giant gaming company was interested in a loser whom he had never respected in his life. Suddenly, people in the cafe began to recognize Almond and pay attention to him. After that, everyone started asking for Almond's autograph, which confused the former boss because he didn't understand what was going on and who this young man really was. Yoo Sung-hyun happily signed autographs for everyone who asked for them and no longer paid attention to his former boss. The manager, realizing that Yoo Sung-hyun had become a star, was very angry and wanted to leave the cafe immediately. He was filled with anger and envy because he had intended to approach the guys and make fun of them, but it turned out the other way around. All of the man's colleagues with whom he came to the cafe followed him out, not understanding the reason for the manager's mood. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately thanked the director of the gaming company for saving them from a fight, and the man replied that there was no need to thank him. Yoo Sung-hyun also started to say that he was grateful because the director even lied for the sake of the boy, but the man immediately smiled and said that Yoo Sung-hyun was very observant and caught him in such a small lie. He went on to say that people like the manager only know how to talk a lot, and when they hear big names, they get nervous. The guys continued to thank him, and the director said goodbye and wished them a good dinner. As the man was leaving, he turned around and said one last thing to Yoo Sung-hyun. He told him to let him know when he was ready to have dinner with the CEO. At that moment, Yoo Sung-hyun realized that the man was not joking or lying, and that the offer to meet with the CEO of the gaming company was true. The young man thought that the CEO was joking again and said that he understood his sense of humor. The man laughed and said that it was true. Kim Joo-hyuk and Yoo Sung-hyun did not fully understand whether they were really supposed to meet the CEO or not. But the director said that the only lie was that the directors reacted to the number of views and everything else was true. After all, how popular Yoo Sung-hyun was could not leave the CEO of a game company aside. The next day, Yoo Sung-hyun was inspired and wanted to continue working, even though he knew that he shouldn't expect a quick result. He remembered Acorn Jelly's advice that popularity on Altub and the number of views largely depended on the editor, and the guy realized that Seo was doing her job incredibly well, and it was her editing that influenced the success of his channel. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk told Yoo Sung-hyun that he had received a message from a former colleague who said that the manager had been walking around all day looking like he had eaten something wrong. The guys laughed at this because it was the first time they had ever managed to put their former boss in his place. Yoo Sung-hyun finished his morning wash and hurried to go practice before the stream. He was glad to start working out again because he hadn't done it since he quit his job. He also started eating a lot of very unhealthy food, and sometimes allowed himself to drink a glass of beer. Suddenly, Yoo Sung-hyun's phone rang and he had to stop and answer it. It was Kim Joo-hyuk calling him, and more than once he was very angry that his friend did not pick up the phone immediately. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that he just didn't hear because he was jogging, but Kim Joo-hyuk started yelling at him that he needed to answer the phone all the time. Kim Joo-hyuk called to tell him that he would not be at the meeting with the CEO of the gaming company, and that Yoo Sung-hyun should try to behave. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that he understood and asked if that was the only reason his friend was making such a fuss. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately replied that it wasn't the only reason, and suggested doing something for Seo because the guys owed her their success, and they should at least thank her. Yoo Sung-hyun completely agreed and was just about to say that he could give her a gift when he stopped. Because he saw her right in front of him, she also went for a morning jog. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately invited Seo to a cafe to have breakfast together and talk. While he went to order, the girl was waiting for him at a table by the window. The young man quickly returned with a full tray of food and offered the girl a meal. Seo felt very insecure and didn't know what to talk about with her idol, so she started eating the burger to justify her silence. The boy and the girl sat and ate in silence. And Yoo Sung-hyun thought that I don't like to talk much myself, so it didn't bother him too much. But Seo in his opinion, was even more silent than he was. And even when he tried to talk to the girl to break the awkward silence, the conversation always came to a standstill. The girl answered very briefly and did not try to tell him anything. Because of this, it was very difficult for Yoo Sung-hyun to find common topics for conversation. So he decided that there was no need for a frank and trusting conversation, and that the girl was probably having some difficulties at work. Suddenly, the girl tilted her head down and said hesitantly that she was not very good at keeping up a conversation. It was hard enough for her to talk to strangers, and she didn't have many friends. Yoo Sang-hyun immediately started to say that it was no big deal, because they had a very good conversation about the video, but Seo said that it was about work, and a girl can talk about work without any problems, unlike talking about everyday life. Seo was very upset and told Yoo Sang-hyun that he probably thinks she's weird. The guy didn't say anything because he didn't know how to react to it, because he didn't think the girl was different. Suddenly she started crying and said that she had often been told this by others. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately asked if he understood that something had happened to her at her previous job. He continued to say that of course working in a company has its advantages, but also many inconveniences, and if you continue to suppress your feelings without saying a word, they will eventually come out. The guy wanted to support the girl and said that he didn't know what really happened to her, but he thought he could understand, given that he and Kim Joo-hyuk had also quit their office jobs. He added that he hoped that Seo would be able to tell him what had happened. The girl looked at the young man and did not understand what she should do because it was the first time she heard words of support. After this conversation, the two left the cafe and headed home. Seo looked at Yoo Sung-hyun with admiration and once again convinced him that he was truly incredible. When Yoo Sung-hyun got home, he hurried to start his stream because he knew that his subscribers were eagerly waiting for the end of the game. He started the stream by saying hello to everyone and informing them that Almond is now a partner streamer of the game company. The guy immediately launched the game, but his subscribers suspected that Almond would finish the game on this stream and were waiting for a new one. Almond immediately told all the viewers that he did not want to waste time and chose to become a knight. The guy bent his knee in front of Amelia and held a knight's sword in his hands to show his respect. The girl took the sword in her hands and, according to all traditions, declared Almond her knight. All the subscribers thought that this was the end of the game, but suddenly, Almond found himself inside the castle. The guy was surprised because he had traveled in time and spring had already come in the game. His clothes changed to more luxurious ones, and the boy thought that it was probably because he had become a knight, and all his trials at this stage of the game were over and he could start a new game. But suddenly, Almond received a message that he had to pass the last test to become Amelia's knight. This was the final test that Almond had to pass, and suddenly a boy ran into his room. He started yelling that it was too bad that Almond was not dressed yet because he might be late for the test. Almond didn't know what he was talking about and decided to ask the boy, but the boy didn't understand why Almond was acting like he didn't know anything. Almond really didn't know what was going to happen next, so he decided to just trust the boy. The boy began to say that today Almond had to defend his knighthood, and it would be very bad if he was late for the test. Suddenly, Amelia entered the room in high spirits. She approached Almond and kissed him, but it was very unexpected for the boy. Amelia began to say that if something went wrong during the test, their future together would be in doubt. but she believed that Almond would be able to handle it. The boy and the girl went to the test, and Amelia asked Almond to prove to everyone that he was really worthy of the title of knight. A huge door opened, and Amelia and Almond found themselves in the arena near the castle. The boy looked around because he had never known that there was an arena at all, and the thought that this test would be in the style of gladiatorial fights did not leave him. Almond was immediately met by Amelia's father, Lord Janneret, who was eagerly waiting for the boy. Almond immediately began to feel insecure because there were a lot of eyes on him. The audience was eagerly waiting for the battle for the title of a true knight to begin. Lord Janneret began to talk about how Almond was not of noble birth and therefore had to prove his worth to them. Amelia immediately decided to defend her beloved and said that Almond had constantly demonstrated his abilities before and had single-handedly captured Talorant Castle and even managed to defeat an incredible monster. Lord Janneret became annoyed that his daughter began to defend a mere mercenary. He began to shout that the girl had no right to humiliate her father in front of a young man. But Amelia did not pay attention to Lord Janneret and told Almond that it was time for them to go. The boy immediately noticed that Amelia was very nervous and worried about how the young man's fight would end. Almond looked at the girl and tried to calm her down, saying that everything would be fine and that he himself had agreed to this test. Amelia replied that she was not worried, she just didn't like it when people looked down on Almond. The guy smiled and said that from now on, no one would dare to look at him like that. The spectators in the stands were chanting the boy's name and were eager to see how he would cope with the challenge. Almond went to the middle of the arena and asked the Lord what the conditions for victory were. The man immediately said that there is a saying that a real knight can stop a troll on the move. This was the condition for victory because Almond's opponent was a troll. The guy was surprised and somewhat embarrassed because the troll was one of the strongest characters in the game. The audience began to worry for their lives and for Almond's life because his opponent was very dangerous. It seemed impossible to defeat the troll with a bow and arrows. Almond's followers were also not sure whether it was even possible to defeat the troll with arrows because it was able to regenerate constantly. Lord Janneret was sure that Almond would be defeated in this difficult battle, so with a smile on his face he announced the start of the test and immediately hurried to take a seat away from the arena. Almond looked at the Lord and exclaimed that it seemed to him that there was no smell of knights among them. Then he turned to his opponent and tried to find the troll's weak point. The troll was in no hurry to launch an attack, so Almond decided to strike first. The boy fired his first arrow at the enemy, which hit him in the neck. After that, the young man raised his bow and no one understood what Almond was going to do next. The boy turned away from the troll and the monster fell to the ground, and it seemed that the battle was over. Lord Janneret could not believe his eyes when he saw this because he was sure that the boy would lose. But everything pointed to the fact that Almond honestly proved to everyone that he was worthy of the title of knight. Almond knew that the perfect shot exists and that it also works on trolls, so he used his ability and won a quick victory. Lord Janneret could not contain his anger and could not allow Almond to win, and began to say that he was sure that someone had just poisoned the troll. He shouted that the monster should be autopsied to verify this. The knights of the Janneret family did not understand whether to take the Lord's words seriously because, at that moment, it seemed that he had gone mad. Amelia stood up again to defend her lover and told her father that the test was over. Lord Janneret could no longer find the words because he realized that Almond had won in a fair fight, and he was worthy to bear the title of knight. He looked at the man and smilingly said that he thought his title of knight was fully confirmed. After that, Almond moved in the game to the time of his wedding with Amelia. The girl was incredibly beautiful and happy because Almond was just incredible. Almond and Amelia's luxurious wedding was the happy final chord of the game. For Yu Sung-hyun, this game was over and he felt like he was moving from virtual reality to the real world. His first virtual game lasted only a week, but this game completely changed his life. It made him realize that he could hold a bow in his hands again and do what he wanted to do all his life. Yu Sung-hyun left the game and now had the opportunity to talk to his subscribers. The first thing he said was that now his first game was over, after which he smiled and suggested moving on to the next one. The stream chat immediately started to receive a lot of messages with options for virtual games, and most of them were about competing with real people in real time. Yu Sung-hyun was a little nervous because he realized that online games were different from story-based games, and he would have to compete with real people, not bots. And it would most likely be difficult because he was just a beginner. The guy realized that if he was careless, the image of the genius that everyone expected from him could collapse in an instant, but he could not stand still for fear that people would be disappointed in him. That's why he decided to immediately announce which group he had chosen to continue his career as a gamer streamer. After the end of the stream, Kim Joo-hyuk told Yu Sung-hyun that the viewers who followed him during his game would most likely leave because they didn't want to switch to another group. Yu Sung-hyun replied that this is normal because many streamers experience this phenomenon, so there is no need to worry. When Kim Joo-hyuk heard that Yu Sung-hyun might lose about half of his audience, he was a little confused. But the guy told him that this is how streamers should act, and it is beneficial in the long run. He continued to say that these are obvious things because no viewer wants to continue watching the streams of a player who is not developing. Even though Yu Sung-hyun said so, losing about 900 viewers was quite painful for him, but he expected it. The young man clearly decided for himself that as soon as his new game was installed, he would start playing right away. The new game was more realistic than the previous one, and it surprised him. Yu Sung-hyun was not afraid of difficulties and therefore wasted no time in continuing his journey as a popular streamer and player. And now the time has come when Yu-san first entered the new game and found himself in the cockpit of a helicopter. His first task was to land from it and land successfully, but the game was really very realistic. Yu Sang-hyun could feel everything around him as if he were actually experiencing the height and the force of the wind. The man who was responsible for landing the guys from the helicopter shouted that they should jump immediately, but Yu Sang-hyun couldn't believe that he was actually going to jump from such a high altitude. The day before, he had watched other streamers play and could not even imagine that the game would be like this. One of the players jumped out of the helicopter and Yu Sung-hyun watched him carefully, not knowing if he could do the same. One by one, the helicopter's passengers jumped out without fear of crashing. The stream viewers wrote that they should jump out as soon as possible or it would be worse, and Yu Sang-hyun listened to them. In a moment, the guy jumped out of the helicopter and thought only that he had no right to lose and disappoint his subscribers. While in the air, Yu Sang-hyun thought only about one thing. This game doesn't feel like a game. At some point, his parachute opened and he breathed a sigh of relief because it turned out that it opened automatically. But going down, it still seemed to him that he was approaching the ground very quickly. And suddenly he landed. But this landing left much to be desired, and the boy's followers were once again convinced that he was a beginner, and his clumsiness was very amusing. Yu Sung-hyun got up and tried to figure out what to do next and what task he had in front of him. He wasn't quite ready for such a scenario from the very beginning of the game. Suddenly, the young man saw two other players competing with each other not far from him. Nothing was clear and he could not see where to go next when he heard someone shouting for everyone to get together. One of the players pointed at Yu Sang-hyun and said that he was a newcomer and offered to destroy him first. Yu Sang-hyun did not understand how other players could see his level and had no choice but to run away. He noticed a building ahead and decided that it would be the best place to hide. He found himself inside this building and hoped that he would find at least something that might resemble a weapon. He looked around and noticed a block bow lying on a table. The young man was surprised because as a professional athlete, he sometimes played with such weapons and could not even imagine that he would find them in this game. Suddenly, Yu Sang-hyun heard sounds from the street that meant other players were approaching the building. He immediately realized that his opponents were climbing the outer stairs. 3 players were climbing to get into the building through the second floor. He immediately grabbed a bow he had found and prepared to confront his enemies. The second floor opened and players began to enter. One of them immediately assumed that Yu Sang-hyun was on the first floor, and since he was a new player, they thought he was just hiding. One of Yu Sang-hyun's opponents came down the stairs and said that judging by the way he landed, he must have been a newbie. But they underestimated the guy, and Yu Sang-hyun, who kept the pseudonym Almond, made his first shot and killed one of the opponents. The allies of the deceased did not even realize how it happened, because they did not expect Almond to have a bow. They immediately began to think about where the arrow could have come from, and having calculated the trajectory, determined the guy's location. One of them started to shoot without hesitation, but not everything was as rosy as he thought. Almond managed to strike earlier, and the young man's arrow found its target again. Now he had only one enemy left to destroy in order to move on. But when he came out of his hiding place, he did not find anyone else alive in the room. He was a little upset because his enemy had managed to escape. The young man immediately began to think about whether he should follow him, and his subscribers immediately began to say that these 3 were acting as a team, and in any case, they should be destroyed. After listening to his audience, Almond decided that he should try to catch up with his opponent because he couldn't get far. Suddenly, the last guy on the team jumped out behind Almond and aimed at him, and it turned out that this player also had a bow. But Almond was a professional and his speed and accuracy were unsurpassed. The young man shot his arrow faster than his opponent, and now the 3 of them were no longer a threat to him. Yu Sang-hyun smiled at his audience and said that his enemy probably thought that if he copied him, he could win. The guy decided to spend some time chatting in the stream and asked if it was really so easy to destroy opponents in this game. The subscribers began to support him and say that it is quite difficult to use the bow in this game, but Almond is a professional and therefore can continue. Suddenly, Almond heard something happening outside and he didn't know what it was. He did not understand what these strange sounds were and suddenly saw a notification that the blue zone would decrease in 30 seconds. The guy did not understand what this could mean because it was the first time he played this game. This game was a survival game, so some players might have thought that they could just hide and wait until there were fewer enemies. But to avoid this situation, there was a blue zone that gradually decreased, and if the player was outside of this zone, he would die. Almond immediately opened the map to see where he was and how far the blue zone should shrink, and found out that he was not in the best position. He looked out of the window and saw other players already fleeing the place and realized that he should hurry up as well. Once outside, Almond looked around and once again emphasized that there are not many places to hide in this game, so you need to act carefully. The young man was hiding behind a wall and suddenly heard the sound of a car approaching him. He tried to understand which side the vehicle was coming from and hoped that it would just drive by and not notice him. But suddenly Almond was attacked and a bullet almost hit his head. The young man managed to dodge, but he definitely did not expect this. His followers immediately started laughing when they saw the guy's face in danger. And Almond said he was just really scared because it was his first game. Soon the boy managed to see from which side the car was approaching. He realized that this was a very dangerous situation for him because every player in the game was a threat. Almond decided to hide behind a wall so that the car could not get close to him. But the players who were in the car were probably more experienced, and while catching up with the guy, destroyed everything in their path. Almond continued to run forward and reached another wall behind which he could hide. He jumped over it and managed to save his life at the last moment. Almond's enemies did not give up and were determined to kill the young man. The guy realized that he could not just sit back and therefore had to act very carefully. It was again a group of players who gathered in teams to have a better chance of winning the game. Almond prepared for the attack and waited for the right moment to shoot. When he heard that one of the opponents was approaching him, he looked out of the wall and shot an arrow. As always, the shot was right on target, and Almond thought that it was a good thing that no one wears helmets in this game. The enemies were shocked because they did not understand how the young man managed to destroy one of them with just one shot, although they knew that the bow was more damaging, but it was extremely difficult to aim. While they were talking to each other, Almond wasted no time in launching his next attack. The last member of Almond's group realized that he was in great danger and decided to hide behind a wall. Almond tried to see where the last enemy was, but he could not see him on the horizon. So the young man heard where his voice was coming from and decided to shoot blindly. He calculated the trajectory of the arrow and released it so that it would find its target. Almond's opponent was sitting quietly behind the wall, unsuspecting, but the arrow was approaching him very quickly. Almond stood up and listened carefully to see if he could move on or not. His first shot was not very accurate because the enemy had moved away, so he had to strike again. The guy pulled the bowstring and fired the next arrow. The stream viewers were extremely impressed because Almond could find out where his opponents were just by sound. In a matter of seconds, he received a notification that his enemy was out of action. But Almond did not fully understand what this meant and whether he could no longer worry about his life. Stream viewers immediately explained that the term out of action meant that Almond had mortally wounded the enemy, but not in the head. In the comments, they began to write that such a term is more common in team battles. Almond was surprised and a little embarrassed because he did not expect to fight with teams. At that moment, he remembered that team battles are a mode that allows 4 players to join a team, but a team does not have to have 4 players, it can be played by 2 or even 1. Almond could not believe that he had made such a stupid mistake, and the stream viewers immediately sent him a challenge, saying that if he got the first place, they would donate 10,000. But suddenly the guy started thinking that everything looked rather strange, because if they were a team, why was the last player still alive, even though he had killed the other 3 participants? And at that moment, Almond realized that there might be one more team member left. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the guy was attacked and wounded. Almond did not have time to react and dodge the enemy's bullet. After that, the young man fell to the ground and dropped his weapon. Almond did not expect the injury to feel like real life. The guy was in great pain, but he had to save his life and dodge the enemy's next attacks. He managed to roll to the side and hide behind a small wall nearby. Almond tried to regain consciousness and figure out how to escape and destroy the potential danger. Suddenly, the young man felt that his pulse became clearer and in just a second, almost crossed the red line. If the indicator lights up red, the security system will take it as a signal to force the system to exit to protect the player. Almond began to think that maybe something was wrong with him, because many players successfully played this game and he failed. But he couldn't dive into his thoughts for long because the last member of the enemy team was approaching him. The young man felt that the enemy was already very close, although he was slowly creeping up, but Almond determined the direction from which the sound came. Suddenly he realized that the enemy did not know where he was hiding, and therefore had a chance to destroy him first. The last player of the enemy was heading to help the wounded, and at that moment Almond shot an arrow, preventing the enemy from helping his ally. After that, the guy smiled and said that everything was just as he thought, that the last member of the enemy team wanted to lift his friend. But Almond won, despite the fact that he was up against an entire team. The guy looked at the stream and saw a lot of names for the first time, but a lot of people donated, albeit small amounts, and the young man was very happy because it meant that he was on the way to becoming a popular streamer. After defeating the team, Almond decided to take some of the trophies for himself, and when he saw the assault rifle, he wondered if he should trade the bow for the rifle. Almond reasoned that if he continued in the same spirit and won with the bow, he could establish himself as a single content streamer, as it was in the last game. And he decided it was worth a try, so he told his viewers that he would be with a bow, because it was easier for him because he wanted to continue using the bow himself. But the thought of how people would perceive his possible defeat did not leave him. Suddenly, Seo Jia wrote a task that the guy had to win the game with a bow and then get 100,000 donation, so Almond decided that he could not refuse such an offer. The guy smiled and thanked him for the task, and added that he would show everyone the victory with the bow. After that, the young man opened the map and found out that he was quite far from his next destination. He thought that it would be very nice to get a car to move faster, and he remembered that the last team of opponents had a car. So Almond did not hesitate and decided to take it for himself because now no one needed it. Sitting behind the wheel, the guy decided to immediately get to the nearest place where the final battle for victory was to take place. Stream viewers began to write to Almond that he was driving very bravely through a neighborhood full of enemies, and at that moment, a grenade fell near the wheels of the car he was driving. Almond did not expect such a turn of events and did not even think about looking around more carefully. The car turned upside down and the boy was trapped. He was hanging upside down and was glad that he had remembered to fasten his seatbelt. But this was not the end of the enemy's efforts, and the second grenade flew back to the car. But this time Almond managed to react in time and get out of the car and hide behind a building. The guy tried to see which side the enemy was on, but the smoke from the burning car made it impossible to see anything. The young man thought that in order to have a better view, he needed to climb to the roof of the building. Almond looked around carefully to make sure no one was there. When he looked out from the roof, he immediately noticed his enemies. But the enemies knew where the young man was, so they immediately opened fire on him. The enemies were at a fairly large distance from the building, so it was not easy to hit Almond. One of the team members suggested that two of them go into the building, and the others would cover them. While Almond was hiding behind the wall, the enemies gradually approached him closer and closer. Almond realized that he was at a great disadvantage and closed his eyes and tried to calm down and concentrate as much as possible because he had to listen to all the sounds around him. He immediately remembered that he had seen 4 team members and, judging by the sound of their footsteps, 2 were approaching the building. The young man knew that as soon as he tried to stick his head outside the walls, he would immediately say goodbye to his life, so he decided to stay put. The 2 enemies were closely watching the roof of the building and did not understand why Almond was not moving. The guy was not going to just sit there, so he tried to determine where the enemies were and where to aim by the sound. One of the enemies accidentally stepped on a stick that cracked, and at that moment, Almond realized where to shoot. The enemies did not even suspect that they could be in danger. The arrow fired by Almond hit the arm of one of the guys who was approaching the building, and after that, the young man immediately made a second attack and killed him. Almond recalled that when he was training to impress his friends, he learned a few tricks and did not even think that they would ever be useful to him. He learned the so-called Robin Hood's death-defying number, hitting a falling arrow, and many other things. Suddenly, he heard a sound coming from very close to him, the footsteps of the second guy from the opposing team. Almond immediately realized where the enemy was coming from and began to attack him. The young man realized that the enemy had a gun, and in a head-to-head fight, he would be at a disadvantage if the enemy started shooting at point-blank range. He would not even have time to put an arrow in place, so he could only hope that he would not miss. As soon as Almond heard the sound of the enemy trying to open the door, he fired an arrow. Stream viewers were surprised that the guy was so nervous that he did not even wait for the door to open. But Almond knew what he was doing, and the arrow he fired went through a small gap in the door and hit the enemy. The guy was waiting for the door to open completely and he could make sure that the enemy was no longer a threat to him. And it happened very quickly. The door opened and the enemy fell to the floor. All the viewers of the stream were very impressed with Almond's skill and talked about it. At this time, the 2 remaining members of the opposing team could not understand why it was so quiet on the roof of the building. They decided to contact their comrade and learned that Almond had destroyed him when he barely opened the door. This information surprised the 2 remaining members of the team. While the opposing team was panicking, Diamond was calmly sitting on the roof of the building and communicating with his subscribers. These guys were in a team of players who had experience in the game and high levels, but due to certain circumstances they had not played for a long time, and because of this all achievements were reset. So they had to start from the bottom. Almond's opponents were trying to figure out what to do and whether to try to save their comrades. After all, one of them was not yet completely destroyed and tried to fight with his last strength. But 2 guys who were outside the building suspected that Almond's plan was to destroy them while they were treating their allies. So one of them suggested not trying to get their comrades because their opponent might be a real professional. But the other insisted that they should at least try, because Almond was acting like a beginner, and so they needed to make every effort to destroy him and be able to rise in the ranking. The guys were confident that they would be able to win and achieve high scores in the ranking table again. Therefore, it was decided that one of them would go to the aid of his friend and the other would stay to cover. They did not discuss their plan for a long time and began to act. The team of Almond's opponents moved very professionally and carefully observed the place where the young man was sitting. In a fairly short period of time, they were able to get halfway across the street. One of the guys offered to move a little faster, but the other said that this was the wrong tactic and that there would be more chances of getting injured. After all, Almond could jump out at any moment and strike. As they got closer, they noticed their friend calling for help. The guys talked about staying closer to the wall so that the enemy's viewing angle would be much lower. When they got almost close to the wall, they exhaled with relief, saying that they were in a blind spot. But there were no blind spots for him, and without looking outside, he shot an arrow towards the enemy. But this time, the enemy managed to dodge Almond's attack. But Almond was not going to stop at one shot and immediately fired another arrow that hit one of the enemies right in the eye. This frightened the last of the enemies of the guy because it seemed to him that the way the arrow flew was simply impossible. While he stood motionless for a few seconds in shock, Almond was already preparing to attack. The guy jumped off the roof holding a bow that was ready for the decisive shot. Diamond was right above the enemy's head and made an extremely powerful and unexpected operation. After such actions, the guy of course fell to the ground from a great height and was also injured, but he was lucky that the enemy's bag contained medicines that could help him improve his health. The young man took out one of the bottles and drank it to be able to continue moving at the same pace. Almond was already feeling better, and while he was resting, he calculated that he had 26 more opponents left, so he decided to hurry up. The gossip about the fact that he was facing a professional in the new game quickly spread online and everyone tried to figure out who Almond was. Some insisted that it was just the luck of the draw, while others said that he was really a professional who was able to destroy a whole team of high-class players on his own, and the attention and interest in the guy's personality grew at a tremendous rate. Before moving on, Almond decided to check everything inside the building in case there was any equipment or medicine left there. The viewers of the stream were surprised that the young man said that there was nothing in the building, because they saw a lot of weapons like pistols and rifles. But Almond was not interested in all these weapons, as his mission was to win with a bow in his hands. The guy noticed that the audience began to raise the amount for the victory, and he wondered how many viewers he had now, and when he saw the figure of 1,900 people, he could hardly contain the smile on his face. The young man thought that when he changed the game, the number of viewers had dropped sharply, but now, for reasons he did not know, the number of people interested in him began to grow again. Almond began to think that the atmosphere in his chat room was strange because some of the viewers did not believe that he was a newbie and wrote that he had just lowered his rank on purpose. The young man quickly realized why the number of viewers increased so quickly, because they came from the forum. And this time, not only were there Almond's supporters on the stream, but also haters. Suddenly, a notification appeared again about the decrease in the blue zone, and Almond heard the sounds of shooting from the street. The more the blue zone shrank, the more frequent the clashes between the enemies were, and the young man realized that he needed to move faster to avoid being trapped. The young man tried to figure out how many teams were left, and after thinking about it for a while, he decided that it didn't matter, because they all had to be destroyed anyway. Suddenly, Almond turned the corner of the wall and collided with one of his opponents. The collision was quite serious, and the guy felt an unexpectedly sharp pain. He opened his eyes and tried to understand what or who he had bumped into, and looked closely and saw a weapon pointed at him. The decision to dodge was made instantly, and the young man fell to the ground and rolled backwards. Realizing that the threat was a few meters away, Almond immediately prepared to shoot. He was waiting for the right moment to get rid of another enemy on his way. Almond waited until the enemy was close enough and fired a shot that hit him in the head. One of the deceased's allies did not understand where his comrade was shot from, as there were no snipers around. Not realizing where their friend was being shot from, two members of the guy's enemy team started shooting in a random direction. Almond watched this closely and took a comfortable position to make the next series of shots. The young man noted that one was not so bad. The first arrow he fired hit the enemy's head, but he was wearing a helmet that protected him. But this helmet could no longer fulfill its function because Almond's arrow had damaged it badly. And because of this, the guy had to take medicine to restore his health. The guys discussed that they thought there were only a few teams left, but they did not understand where the archer came from. Almond did not hesitate and continued to attack the enemy, and this time, an arrow pierced the boy's helmet, preventing him from recovering. The other young man was frantically scared because the trajectory of the arrows seemed impossible. After the surprise attack, Almond made sure that another enemy team was destroyed. He received a notification that he had only 4 enemies left. The blue zone was shrinking again, and now all the remaining players were even closer to each other. Almond realized that he needed to move as fast as possible because there was no time to relax. He carefully studied the map to understand where the safest place would be, because the threat still remained, as the sniper had a place to hide. The young man moved forward and hoped that the 3 remaining enemies would be as dispersed as possible. Suddenly, Almond heard voices coming from near him. It was 3 members of the same team whom the boy was supposed to defeat. At one point, Almond was almost spotted, but the guys managed to hide behind a wall in time. The guy's opponents determined the exact place where he had to go to avoid harm to his health when the blue zone decreased. They studied the map and were sure they had a good position because the blue zone was on their side. Almond was very worried and thought that he had very little time left to get the first place, but he still needed to make an effort. Now the question was whether the boy would finish first or fourth because there were no other options. The young man wanted more than ever to prove to everyone that he was a master of his craft. Despite the fact that he was new to the game, Almond thought that his opponent let his guard down because he thought he had an advantage. And when the opponent lets his guard down, it's time to attack. So the young man took out a pill to improve his health. And he took it to be able to compete for the championship in this difficult fight. The opponents of the young man were carefully watching the place where the boy was supposed to pass and were ready to strike him. They could not understand why he was gone for so long as the blue zone was shrinking very quickly. Almond realized that he had no other choice as there was no other way to pass. And in a few minutes, he was outside the blue zone and his health began to decline. Almond's opponents could not understand why the boy was still not there and began to assume that they could have simply missed him, after which they looked around, expecting him to give him a gift. They missed the fact that the boy could have passed by unnoticed and ended up behind their backs. Almond stood on the edge of the blue zone and waited for the right time to launch a powerful attack. As soon as both enemies turned away, Almond immediately shot an arrow and hit one of them. The second guy did not understand where Almond was shooting from and was extremely confused. He started shooting in the direction where the guy was supposed to be, but it did not work. The enemy did not stop shooting in Almond's direction, but he still did not leave the blue zone. Almond waited until the enemy's panic was at its peak and prepared an arrow. With one shot of the arrow in his head, the enemy was no longer a threat. Almond was holding on with his last strength because outside the blue zone, his health level was decreasing, and the pain was severe. When 2 enemies were destroyed, he was finally able to leave the blue zone. He could barely stand on his feet because his health level had dropped to 10%, but he was happy that he had only 1 enemy left. He thought only about one thing. His last opponent was a very professional player because even when he was down to 2 comrades, he didn't make a sound. Almond hoped that the enemy did not see him because otherwise he would have shot him. The young man roughly estimated the distance of the remaining sniper's blind spot and hoped that he would stay in his place. Suddenly, one of Almond's enemies whom he had shot started crawling somewhere. He assumed that he might be moving toward his comrade to help him recover, so he decided to follow him to find out the location of the last player on the team. Suddenly, Almond realized that treatment could take a very long time, and in a situation where victory is at stake, anyone would be cautious. Given the fact that the blue zone was shrinking and the opponent still had the advantage, the young man decided not to take unnecessary risks, as it could be a trap from the enemy. Almond realized that his opponents were just trying to lure him into the line of sight of their sniper. This meant only one thing. The enemy was hiding where the root of the wounded enemy was well visible, so the guy had to find out the sniper's location based on this information. He quickly looked around, but it was quite difficult to find out the exact location of the last player, and the blue zone was shrinking rapidly, and suddenly Almond noticed his enemy and everything indicated that he did not notice the guy. The young man realized that right now was his last chance to win the battle. But he didn't know how to do it without getting up from the grass because otherwise the sniper would notice him before he could pull the string. So Almond decided to try to pull the string and shoot from a prone position, even though he had never done it before. The guy held the bow with his feet trying to aim at the enemy. This shot was quite difficult, and the stream viewers did not understand how the guy wanted to realize this attack because it seemed like a trick from a science fiction movie. In fact, Almond himself did not know whether it was possible or not, but there was no point in inventing something else because, in any case, there was only one attempt to shoot. The guy pulled the bowstring tightly, aimed at his opponent, and fired an arrow in the hope that it would hit the target. At the last moment, the sniper saw an arrow approaching him, which came from nowhere. But he had no time to dodge it, and Almond's powerful attack succeeded, and the arrow found its target. Almond immediately decided to improve his health to be able to complete the test to the end. And since the enemy was in a fairy tale, it was necessary to strike again to be sure to emerge victorious. Almond got to his feet and fired a second shot at the sniper. And this time his hit was decisive and the last player of the opposing team was destroyed. Few spectators believed that Almond would be able to win in a 3-on-1 situation, but he managed to become the winner. This result was unexpected for many, and donations began to pour in on the young man's stream because such skill impressed many people. The guy thanked his viewers and was surprised because even famous streamers began to donate to him. Almond was immediately offered to join various teams, but he did not expect this because he played this game for the first time. Judging by the reaction of the audience, not everyone was offered such a place. But the guy said that he was still a beginner, so he needed to train more. After that, the guy said goodbye to everyone and said that he was finishing the stream today. As soon as Yoo Sung-hyun got out of the capsule, he was approached by Kim Joo-hyuk, who was also very surprised because he was being donated by one of the most popular streamers named Miho. This girl was a popular model and celebrity and also very beautiful, but Yoo Sung-hyun thought that he did the right thing when he did not agree to join her team because he did not want to compete with professionals. The guy immediately asked his friend how the reaction to his new stream was. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that it was generally very positive, but the general forum was mostly players from the guy's old game, and the new forum was somewhat ambiguous. Most users did not believe that the young man was a beginner and was able to win a fair game in a solo game, and Almond did not like him at all. Kim Joo-hyuk started to get nervous because Yoo Sung-hyun didn't want to respond to the hateful comments, and he realized that it could be because his profile was closed. The boy suggested that his friend make his profile open again, but Kim Joo-hyuk didn't like the idea because then he would have to share his income with the hackers. Yoo Sung-hyun said that they would leave it at that because hackers are also viewers. Kim Joo-hyuk was also convinced that if you use hackers correctly, you can increase your popularity. In other words, turn a crisis into growth. But suddenly, Almond's profile was blocked. The guys could not believe that it happened right now because it seemed that this day was just unlucky and other problems were added to the haters. After a while, Yoo Sung-hyun didn't understand what had happened because he hadn't done anything wrong. So he thought that if he explained everything, he would be banned. But he hadn't received a reply to his letter for several hours. Kim Joo-hyuk shouted that the administrators were just idiots who had no reason to explain anything at all, after which he exhaled and said that maybe it was all for the best. Kim Joo-hyuk said that since they were already in this situation, they needed to make themselves famous. He looked at the boy and told him to get ready to make a statement. After a while, Almond was ready to speak, and he started his statement by saying that he had bad news and that he had received many complaints during the stream, and as a result, his account was blocked. While Yoo Sung-hyun was addressing the audience, Kim Joo-hyuk was searching for and monitoring all the reactions to Almond's address. As Kim Joo-hyuk assumed, Almond's viewers from the previous game immediately stood up for him, and the appeal was going to go viral very quickly. And now the guys could only wait for the reaction of the administrators who decided that Almond was a liar without even watching the video. The next day, everyone was talking about the situation with Almond. People couldn't understand why the guy was banned and were in a hurry to watch the video of the young man from the game. Kim Joo-hyuk was very happy because many people watched the video of the game and left many positive comments about Almond. At first, most viewers were skeptical about the title of the video, but as they watched the game, skepticism changed to amazement. After all, no one could really repeat the skill that Almond showed. Viewers were amazed that the newcomer won the game solo against teams of experienced players. Some stream viewers also watched the edited video and left only positive feedback about Almond's skills. But when the administrators did not respond to the guy's request to restore his account, viewers began to attack other gaming forums, and eventually this situation got into the official news of the popular gaming portal. Upon learning about this incident, the manager of the guy's new game was furious, and he was scolding his subordinate because Almond was banned without even checking the history of the matches. The guy apologized and made excuses, saying that there were just too many complaints at that moment. But the manager didn't want to listen to anything and insisted that you can't ban everyone who has complaints. After that, he suggested that they also organize a vote to fire the young man and see how many complaints he would receive, regardless of how he worked. The manager started asking how many viewers Almond had. The boy quickly replied that he had about 1,000 people. The manager continued to ask what the administrators knew about a player named Almond, but the young man didn't know what to say because he knew almost nothing. The manager was not satisfied with this answer and demanded that the administrator study the history of Almond in detail. But the guy immediately replied that it was almost impossible to do so because Almond was a new player, and it was a stream of just one game. Suddenly, the man told him to call the community managers as soon as possible. He wanted the situation to be resolved quickly, and to do so, he needed to hide the administrator's negligence. After that, the man ordered his subordinate to organize a meeting, and the young man left the office. In the morning, Yoo Sung-hyun woke up and, as usual, cleaned himself up after sleep. He checked his account again and again, but still there was no response from the game administrators. He thought that the ban would be lifted in a day or two, but it didn't happen. And then Kim Joo-hyuk ran into the room. He screamed in fright that they were missing and pointed to his phone. Yoo Sang-hyun didn't understand what his friend was talking about and what exactly was missing. And Kim Joo-hyuk said that all the posts about Almond from yesterday had disappeared. The guy said that all information, news articles, comments, and everything disappeared from the communities. He was upset because the game administrators were trying to hide the situation. Kim Joo looked at the capsule and said that Almond's stream today was in doubt because the guy could not even return to the previous game. Yoo Sang-hyun got up from the table and said that in that case, he would take a break for one day. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't understand how his friend could talk about it so calmly, but Yoo Sang-hyun said that he had a meeting with the director of the game company. Kim Joo-hyuk was immediately interested in whether the director could help in this situation, and Yoo Sang-hyun replied that he would find out when he met him in person. Yoo Sang-hyun recalled his first day of archery training, and his grandmother asked the coach if he had any talent, and the coach replied that he was really talented. The man said that although Yoo Sang-hyun was young and not very strong, his resilience and spirit were exhaustive, and this is the most important quality for an archer. The boy's grandmother smiled and said that she didn't understand it at all, but the coach immediately replied that he told her what he saw in the boy. The man said that talent does not appear out of nowhere and that only if you practice your skills, you can become great. It was at this moment that Yoo Sang-hyun took aim and shot his first arrow in his life, which hit the center of the target. The coach did not expect that the boy would be able to demonstrate such a result in the first lesson. He approached Yoo Sang-hyun to talk to him about his future training. The coach began to applaud the young man and said that such a shot was really impressive, and the boy's hand did not even flinch. Yoo Sang-hyun could not believe that the coach was saying these words to him. The man put his hand on the boy's shoulder and advised him to try to keep up the good work. He added that even if the boy is at the end of his rope and feels that he can't take it anymore, he needs to keep concentration and faith that he can always try again, and then all the arrows will reach the center of the target. Yoo Sang-hyun remembered these words of the coach and replied that he understood everything. The coach looked at the young man and said that it would be great if the guy started to do archery professionally. And now as an adult, Yoo Sang-hyun remembered his coach's words every time in a difficult situation, that he needed to stay calm and concentrate. The young man was convinced that these qualities made him an archery genius, but at one point they became completely unnecessary skills that you can't even put on a resume. He was once again convinced that life and his brother were unpredictable. Yoo Sang-hyun met the manager of a gaming company who approached him and thanked him for taking the time to visit them. They walked together to the meeting they had invited him to. The manager of the game company immediately noticed that Yoo Sang-hyun was upset about something. The man stopped and decided to ask the young man how he was feeling after everything that had happened to him in recent days. Yoo Sang-hyun immediately replied that he was fine, and the man said that he seemed to be one of those people who always kept calm. Yoo Sang-hyun was surprised to hear these words because he had just remembered his coach saying the same thing. After that, the man smiled and said that usually even the most popular streamers are nervous when they go to lunch with the director. Yoo Sang-hyun hesitantly replied that he was just quite reserved in life. The manager laughed and said that when the guy is playing, he is usually very bold. Yoo Sang-hyun was surprised because he did not expect the man to watch his broadcasts. After that, they walked to the restaurant for a while and had a friendly conversation on the way. Soon they arrived at the Japanese restaurant where the director of the gaming company was to meet with Yoo Sang-hyun. The manager told Yoo Sang-hyun that the director had already arrived and he would come out to meet him. After that, he turned to the boy and told him not to deny himself anything and to order whatever he wanted because he deserved it for his achievements. Yu Sung-hyun was shocked because he did not understand what achievements the manager was talking about. Soon, the director of the gaming company entered the restaurant and the boy immediately greeted him and introduced himself. Yu Sung-hyun could never in his life believe that he would have the opportunity to meet such successful people, such as the director of one of the most popular gaming companies named Han Tae-ho. When Yu Sung-hyun met him, he immediately began to say that he was honored to meet him. The director thought that the guy was quite positive and much different from most streamers he knew. When Han Tae-ho shook the boy's hand, he noticed that his hand was trembling and thought that he was nervous. After getting acquainted, the two men sat down at a table and started eating lunch. Han Tae-ho immediately began to talk about how the urchin fish tasted quite good at this restaurant. Then he said that this place was known for its sushi, but he liked the appetizers more, especially if they were on the company's account, and the men started laughing. Yu Sung-hyun felt a little uncomfortable because he hadn't been to such a high-class restaurant very often. In order not to stay in silence for a long time, the director immediately asked him how he liked the food, because he knew that the chef in this restaurant was very talented, and Yu Sung-hyun smiled and said that the food was really good. After that, Han Tae-ho immediately asked the boy if he often went to such restaurants, and Yu Sung-hyun replied that he had been to such places several times. Suddenly, the manager started whispering to Han Tae-ho that Yu Sung-hyun used to work for one of the largest companies in the city. The man was amazed and once again said that Yu Sung-hyun was very talented because not everyone is hired to work in that company, but the young man knew that he got there by a blessing. Han Tae-ho immediately began to say that the director of the company where Lee Chil-sung used to work often comes to this school and that they had studied together. Yu Sung-hyun was really surprised because he had never known that his former director and the director of the gaming company had previously studied at the same institution, although he guessed it was because the directors were recruited from the elite ranks, and so it was nothing special that they knew each other. The young man also thought that judging by Han Tae-ho's reaction, he and Lee Chil-sung were friends. Yu Sung-hyun smiled and told the principal that he and Lee Chil-sung were even similar in some ways. Han Tae-ho smiled and Yu Sung-hyun realized that he and Lee Chil-sung really got along well, because Han Tae-ho was proud of their friendship. The man immediately began to say that Lee Chil-sung was more talented than him because his company was known even abroad, but the game company was inferior to foreign companies. He immediately began to say that Yu Sung-hyun was quite active on the world stage, but he was still confused about why the boy had quit his former job. Yu Sung-hyun thought that such a question was too personal, but the fact that Han Tae-ho asked about it meant that he cared about the boy's future, and if he could answer properly, he would get closer to the man. Yu Sung-hyun realized that if this person liked him, he would not only help him settle the issue with the new game, but also help with his streamer's career in general. So he decided to be frank and tell a stranger about himself for the first time. Yu Sung-hyun started talking about how he was a professional archer from the very beginning and quite successful. This information surprised director Han Tae-ho and the manager of the game company. Luckily for the young man, director Han Tae-ho was also fond of archery, so he immediately began to ask Yu Sung-hyun what was the reason why he had dropped out. The boy tilted his head and said that it was because of an injury, and the director immediately remembered the tremors in his right hand. Han Tae-ho asked how it happened, and the boy said it was an accident when he was returning from the national championship, where he won a gold medal. The men wondered at what age the young man had won the archery championship. Yu Sung-hyun replied that he was about 19 or 17 years old, and this shocked the men. Yu Sung-hyun continued to say that for 3 years after the injury he kept it a secret, but he was unable to recover, and then, with the help of his coach's recommendations, he got a job in the company. The guy honestly said that he got there not because of his skills, so he did not cope with his duties very well. And because of this, the manager was forced to fire him because there were no more candidates to be laid off. And that's when Yu Sung-hyun became interested in virtual reality games. Han Tae-ho was surprised because he couldn't believe that a guy in the game world could control his arm normally. Yu Sung-hyun said that it was true, but in addition to games, he needed to earn a living, so he decided to stream. The young man said that while his grandmother was alive, he worked to get rid of the regret of losing his career. And at that time, he did not even think that his arm could move normally in virtual reality. Director Han Tae-ho was impressed by the boy's story because he felt all his heartache. The man wanted to support Yu Sung-hyun and said that in life, things often don't go as you want, but that makes it more interesting. He said that there is no guarantee that life will be better when everything goes according to plan, because he was also an ordinary, unemployed boy with a dream, but now he is happy with how things turned out for him. Han Tae-ho said that he liked what he had become because now he could sit here and eat sushi, which meant that Yu Sung-hyun would be fine. The boy listened to director Han Tae-ho and thanked him for his words of support. The manager was also worried about the boy and said that he was sure that he would succeed. The man immediately said that he had heard that the boy had started playing a new game. Yu Sung-hyun smiled and said that it was true, but there was one problem. Suddenly, the manager interrupted him and reached into his bag. The man pulled out a folder with a chart and asked Yu Sung-hyun if he knew what it was, and the boy immediately assumed that it could be a stock. The man continued to say that it was a reflection of the sales of the game after the boy played it, and thus attracted many people. The manager noted that Almond's name was mentioned in most of the reviews of this particular game. The man said that the boy had done a great service to the manufacturer because their sales were too low, and that's why the graph had grown so much. Yu Sung-hyun couldn't believe that his level of play could have such an impact on the game's sales. Director Han Tae-ho was also surprised and said that Almond's charm was much different from others. Han Tae-ho told the boy that he was really a great guy and that it wasn't just words, he was really good at it. The man immediately asked if the boy had plans for any other games, and the boy replied that he had already started a new one. Han Tae-ho's director and manager immediately began to analyze that the audience of the game the young man had started playing was mostly 20 to 30 years old. Han Tae-ho often watched his son play it. He was confident that this time Almond would be able to demonstrate an extraordinary level of skill and attract the attention of more people. But Yu Sung-hyun hastened to stop the director and said that there was one problem. The next day, in the office of the game Almond started playing, one of the administrators was called in by the general manager. The man was in a hurry to get to the meeting, hoping that he was being called in for a promotion. He looked into the office and asked if he could come in. The general manager immediately told the administrator to come in and take a seat on the chair. The man was a little surprised because the assistant administrator was also present, and the general manager began to tell him the reason why he had called the two of them. He immediately asked if his subordinates remembered where he went in the morning, and the men immediately replied that they did not know. The general manager smiled and pointed up, hinting that he had been to the director's office. The administrator was surprised because he didn't know why the manager was called to the head office so unexpectedly. The manager immediately began to say that the director told him something strange and asked if his employees knew who Almond was. Hearing this name, the administrator was confused and scared because he knew exactly who he was talking about. The manager, not hearing an answer from his subordinates, started shouting again, asking if they knew anything about this guy, and they answered uncertainly that they did. The men hoped that the director would not hear the story about Almond, but the manager said that he did not want to waste time because his employees would soon be gone from the company anyway. They immediately began to say that they hadn't done anything wrong, and the manager laughed in response. He said that he could see by the men's reaction that they still didn't understand how the director had found out about everything. He added that he also didn't understand how they could immediately start hiding the information without even trying to search for Almond's nickname online. After all, then the administrators would have known that the guy was a partner of the largest gaming company. And besides, he popularized one of the games so much that its sales increased fivefold, so it was not surprising that the director was so nervous about this young man. The manager said that even if their game was popular, it was too difficult to get promotion from the largest company, and they just banned their partner without clarifying the circumstances. The administrator was really upset that they were in this situation because their team did not fully understand the complaints. The manager said that it was not unusual to cover their tracks, and one of the administrators started to say that he had always insisted that such actions should be done properly. But the manager said that from what he saw, his employees didn't use their heads at all and wished them luck in finding a new job. The man immediately started begging for at least one more chance, but the general manager would not listen. He told the administrators to write an official letter of apology and prepare for a disciplinary conversation, and he would transfer Almond's case to another team. After that, he no longer wanted to talk to his subordinates and asked why they were still sitting in his office. The men said that they were leaving, but the manager ignored them and continued to search for something online. Then he called the second team and asked if they had already lifted the ban on Almond. The administrators went out into the hallway and one of them started to swear at the junior assistant. He was very angry because he had asked about Almond, whether they had found out the exact information about his violation. The man continued to blame the young man for the fact that now the two of them were out of work. Yu Sung-hyun woke up in the morning and his friend Kim Joo-hyuk wanted to know how his meeting with the director of the gaming company went. After all, he didn't wait for his friend and went to rest earlier than usual. Yu Sung-hyun didn't tell the details of the meeting and just said that everything went well. But Kim Joo-hyuk still wanted to know what exactly happened during lunch, and Yu Sung-hyun said that he thought they liked him. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked how the boy understood this, and the young man replied that the director asked him to teach him archery if he could, and promised that he would contact him. Kim Joo-hyuk was delighted to hear this and was already imagining how wonderful it would be if his friend would give Han Tae-ho individual archery lessons. After that, Kim Joo-hyuk said that he was actually a little afraid that Yu Sung-hyun might mess up, but everything went even better than he expected. Then he asked his friend if he knew anything about his account in the new game. Yu Sung-hyun said that the director promised to contact the people in charge at the game's headquarters. Suddenly, the guy's phone rang and the friends were forced to stop their conversation. It was a message from the game's administration who apologized to Almond and promised to restore his account. Kim Joo-hyuk was really surprised because the director of the largest gaming company had taken care of Yu Sung-hyun's issue in the morning and contacted the authorized people. Kim Joo-hyuk rejoiced like a little child and said that now Yu Sung-hyun is obliged to make Han Tae-ho a master archer. After that, the boy was full of energy and decided to have a good breakfast. And Yu Sung-hyun, as always, decided to go for a morning jog in order not to lose his fitness. The young man went outside and immediately decided that he needed to write to his subscribers about being unblocked. He picked up his phone and started writing that he would be streaming at 7 in the evening and would definitely tell them everything. Seoji Ah was happy that finally Almond's innocence was proven and he could continue his work. All the articles and comments about Almond returned to the game forums. Suddenly, the girl came across a video with Almond's participation and hurried to watch it. The video starred a character dressed in a bear costume and called himself Small Long. He said that Almond's account was unlocked because the management of the largest gaming company contacted the game's representatives. This video gained more than 100,000 views in just 3 hours, and its author was extremely happy about it. His video was very popular because everyone wanted to know more about Almond. But after that, viewers immediately started writing comments that the author just wanted to promote Almond's story. Later, Yoo Sung-hyun came home from jogging and was checking the web while having lunch. Suddenly, the boy's face changed and Kim Joo-hyuk began to worry that he had cooked something tasteless, but the reason was completely different. Yoo Sung-hyun started asking how many views they usually have on OlTube, and Kim Joo-hyuk replied that it was about 40,000, 50 at most. After that, the guy went to check and saw that the video had 400,000 views, and he immediately thought that it was just some kind of system failure. Then Yoo Sung-hyun began to say that it was probably not a glitch because other authors also have viral videos. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to say that there was probably some reason for such a large number of views. Yoo Sung-hyun suggested that it might be because his account was blocked. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately began to rejoice because he had told Yoo Sung-hyun that a crisis can be turned into growth, and it happened. Yoo Sung-hyun told his friend not to be so happy because he believes that views on OlTube will not give them a strong influx of broadcasts, so they just need to keep working. Kim Joo-hyuk couldn't understand how his friend could remain so calm and decided not to talk about it anymore. He silently got up from the table and went about his business so as not to disturb Yoo Sung-hyun. Yoo Sung-hyun sat at the table and thought that he was actually hoping that his streams would become more popular, although he realized that one video was nothing more than a candle in the wind, and he couldn't put too much hope in it. Before climbing back into the capsule, the guy closed his eyes and repeated to himself that he needed to control himself and concentrate, because composure is the main weapon of an archer. As soon as he started streaming, he noticed that this time the chat was moving very fast, and he didn't have time to read even half of what people wrote because there were too many of them. But something went wrong and the capsule opened, and Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked what was wrong. And Yoo Sung-hyun answered that nothing happened, he just accidentally hit the capsule when he was moving. Kim Joo-hyuk realized that his friend was lying and that the capsule could not open from simple movements. Yoo Sung-hyun closed the capsule again and returned to the stream and made sure he wasn't imagining things because this time, there were more than 2,000 viewers on the stream. Kim Joo-hyuk watched the start of the stream closely because it was important for him as a manager to know all the details. Yoo Sung-hyun knew that usually views on OTT don't really affect the number of viewers on the live stream, but what was happening on the stream showed how much the audience liked Almond, and now he had to take advantage of this opportunity. Yoo Sung-hyun felt the curiosity and affection of the audience again, just like he had when he was a professional athlete, but now it was just in a different dimension, in the dimension of a virtual game. Yoo Sung-hyun smiled and greeted all the viewers who were eagerly waiting for Almond to return. The guy started joking and said that the chat was just bursting with messages and asked if it was definitely Al-Tubi traffic. The young man was immediately supported by commenters and donors, and the guy thanked them and said that fortunately his partners from the game company contacted the game administrators and the issue was quickly resolved. Yoo Sung-hyun was suddenly silent for a second as he turned his attention to the number of viewers, which was already almost 4,000. After that, the young man smiled and said that it was time to start the game because he needed to show everyone that he was playing fair. In a matter of seconds, Almond found himself in a virtual game where he had to stay alive again. Viewers immediately started asking if Almond had chosen the right mode this time to avoid playing against teams. The guy realized that it would be difficult to win for the second time because even the top players did not win every time. But Almond had to do everything to win and prove that he was the best of the best, and his task was to win again. This was the first solo game for the young man, and a lot of people were watching him, so he had to win, otherwise he would remain a mere streamer. Now everything depended on his skills and abilities. The game was started and Almond, like last time, found himself in a helicopter, from which he had to jump. This time he wasn't so scared, but he remembered that the last time the fight didn't start in the most favorable position for him. So Almond decided that this time he needed to choose a better landing place where there would be no competition. The guy quickly went down and landed successfully, taking into account all his mistakes from the last time. The audience immediately began to support the young man and donate to him when they saw his progress. Almond stood in the middle of the desert and headed to the place where he was lucky enough to find a weapon last time. He quickly reached the building and went inside, and fortunately for him, no one was there yet. The guy looked around to find a weapon with which he could continue the fight. And this time he noticed a bow and arrow on the table, although the audience insisted that Almond look for something else because it would be uninteresting to watch. But suddenly the young man heard some sounds from the street and realized that he had to act faster. Other players who landed later than him were already approaching the building. Without hesitation, he grabbed his bow and hurried to destroy his first competitor. Almond abruptly opened the door, which the opponent did not expect. The man was looking closely at the building and did not know what he was preparing for. Almond was ready to attack, and this time he was determined to win. He went out into the yard and immediately shot an arrow in the direction of his competitor. In a matter of seconds, the enemy was destroyed as the arrow hit the man's head. After that, the guy smiled and said that he had found a great bow. All the spectators were shocked because Almond's skill seemed to have become even more perfect. The first time he played, he seemed clumsy trying to get used to the game, but now he was more confident. On the horizon, Almond noticed a second opponent who tried to run away from the boy, saying that he had not even had time to take the weapon yet. But the young man was not interested and prepared to make his second shot in this game. The arrow moved rapidly towards the enemy and Almond destroyed the second enemy. After that, the guy quickly read the comments in the chat and thanked for the donations. Almond decided to check when the blue zone would decrease and he had only 30 seconds left. But he was in no hurry to move on and return to the building, saying that he remembered from the last time that the medicine was very important at the end of the game. He immediately managed to find several bottles of energy drinks. He decided to check other lockers and found an emergency medical kit that restored about 30% of his health. The audience began to ask why the young man did not want to take the gun that was lying on the floor, but Almond smiled and pretended not to notice. The boy knew that now was not the best time to experiment with weapons. Therefore, he continued to pretend that he did not notice the weapon that the audience was talking about. After that, Almond smiled and said that he had to move on. The guy was a bit upset because he checked everything well and found only a few medicines, but neither a bulletproof vest nor a helmet could be found. The young man had no more time and had to move forward to avoid getting into the blue zone. The guy ran very fast and thought that next time he would do better without medication. The blue zone was expanding very quickly and Almond barely had time to escape. He thought that running for 4 kilometers against the blue zone was too much, but he had no other choice and needed to get out of it as soon as possible because when he was under the influence of the blue zone, his health decreased by 1% for every 5 seconds. In order to last longer, Almond took out a bottle of energy drink and decided to use it. He could see where the blue zone border ended and realized that he had very little time left. The barrier made it hard to see what was outside the blue zone, so staying outside might be even safer. Suddenly, the enemy passed by on a motorcycle in a hurry to cross the border. Almond wondered how the guy could go so fast and not crash into anything. But this young man simply could not control the speed of the motorcycle because of the effect of the blue zone on everything around him. And very quickly he drove into a giant stone in front of him, flew out of his vehicle. Last time Almond competed with experienced teams, and this time in the solo game he was with beginners, and with players who were just terrible and couldn't hit the opponent even at a short distance. Almond was really surprised because he expected it to be difficult, but did not expect his opponents to be like that. All players tried to leave the blue zone as soon as possible and continue the fight. The guy who was on the motorcycle was the first to get out of it, but he immediately realized that as soon as the other players crossed the line, he would be in danger. The young man started shooting at the competitors and almost hit Almond, so Almond decided to attack back, as he needed to get through the game unscathed. One of the players saw Almond's shot and was surprised because it was the first time he had seen someone shoot a bow on the move and hit the target. He thought that the bow was not the best weapon, but Almond's archery was simply amazing. The other players immediately realized that Almond was a very strong opponent and talked about how he should be the first to be destroyed. All the players who were in the place surrounded the guy, but Almond was only amused. He was ready to confront the crowd and was confident that he would be able to defeat them. Yu Sang-hyun recalled that when he was younger, he lived in a sports camp for some time and was very sociable in those days. That's why some of the older boys found him quite a nice boy. They often invited him to join them in various games. The guys who were members of the national football team invited him to join their team. The players of the national basketball team also did not pass him by. It was very difficult for Yu Sang-hyun to find a common language with them because his physical form was much weaker than the others. Therefore, the older boys often made fun of him and mocked him. It got to the point where the coach even forbade him to play sports in his free time because he could get injured by accident. The older boys forced Yu Sang-hyun to make extra efforts to achieve even a small result. And it was then that Yu Sang-hyun first learned various deceptive turns and feints. It was an unfamiliar concentration for a young man who was only practicing archery at that time. But the older boys did not give up and wanted to teach him. They kept telling him a simple rule. When there are no players to cover you, break through to your target by yourself. Yu Sang-hyun tried desperately to memorize everything he had been taught in school. He still managed to achieve some results, though not immediately. Yu Sang-hyun surprised his older friends with his skills because no one could imagine that the young man would succeed. The guy said that it was not necessary to completely outplay the opponent, and just to make him think that you would do it, you need to break the opponent's brain. But Yu Sang-hyun knew that simple maneuvers would not work for him because his opponents were professionals. Every time the guys invited him to play together, they began to get used to the fact that he was incapable of anything. But at some point, Yu Sang-hyun believed in himself and started using his brain. He really managed to deceive his opponents and achieve his goals. When it started to work, Yu Sang-hyun was incredibly happy because he didn't believe at first that the maneuvers worked at all. But his opponents were still stronger and more experienced players. His older friends supported him and kept telling him that he had learned how to make perfect feints. These lessons didn't help Yu Sang-hyun's archery skills much, but today in the game this skill came in handy. At one point, Almond fell to the ground to dodge bullets and the opponents were killing each other. The guy was happy because his maneuver worked, and now there were fewer competitors. Without thinking twice, Almond got up from the ground and shot an arrow at the last opponent in the area. All competitors were destroyed, and now he could breathe out for a minute and think about how to proceed. After a long period of time spent in the blue zone, Almond was having a hard time as his health was decreasing. He tried to catch his breath and move away from the blue zone. Almond realized that there was no point in going any further until he used the first aid kit, and that what he had gathered beforehand would not last until the end of the game. Even with the first aid kit, his health was not fully restored, but Almond could not give up. His friend Kim Joo-hyuk watched the guy's actions closely and could not believe his eyes because what Almond was demonstrating seemed simply incredible. At some point, the number of viewers on the stream was more than 5,000, and Kim Joo-hyuk thought that if he could keep this number of viewers, he could make good money. The guy thought that he had listened to the advice from the marketing department at his previous job for a reason. He was told that the best strategy is to make a lot of noise so that people talk about you everywhere. So Kim Joo-hyuk decided that he should take this advice and make sure that Almond was talked about everywhere. The analysis showed that most of the viewers were new to the stream and came through a certain link, and now it was up to Yoo Sung-hyun to keep the audience. Kim Joo-hyuk believed that his friend Yoo Sung-hyun would be able to do the same as always. Almond continued to destroy his opponents on his way to victory. He decided that he needed to take the medicine from his opponents, but he could only find a basic set. Almond was upset that he couldn't find the helmet because then he would have collected the full set. The guy said that he only got unnecessary things, so he would just take other people's things. Suddenly, another player ran past Almond and did not notice the young man. So Almond managed to destroy him very quickly without risking his life. The young man decided that in the future he would only kill those who had a helmet to get this trophy for himself. Although Almond's last target was not wearing a helmet, he was too noisy, so he had to get rid of him. Almond stopped and watched the stream chat and noticed that there were a lot of donations this time. The young man realized that if there were so many donations, there must be more viewers. So he decided to see how many there were and saw the number 5,500, which confused him. He immediately remembered that his friend Kim Joo-hyuk said that if you get 5,000 viewers, you can make a steady income only from streams. Yoo Sung-hyun then asked how much he could earn with so many viewers, and Kim Joo-hyuk said that he should be able to make about 700,000 and 800,000 a month. Almond saw how many viewers he managed to gather around him and was overjoyed. The guy immediately thought that he had wasted his time watching the number of viewers and would no longer check it during the stream. In games of this kind, there were so-called stream snipers, players who deliberately tracked the streamer in the game to lower the player's rating. One of these stream snipers spotted Almond taking a first aid kit from a downed enemy. This guy immediately recognized Almond because he has become very popular and recognizable in recent days. This stream sniper's name was Punchy, and he was destroying the enemies of a streamer named Chewing Gum in order to destroy his target. The guy was analyzing Almond's equipment, which included a compound bow and a bulletproof vest, but no helmet. Therefore, Punsta decided that one grenade should be enough to get rid of the guy. The young man used a grenade that was supposed to explode within 10 seconds and threw it in Almond's direction in the last seconds. Usually in such situations, the enemy does not have time to react because there were only 2 seconds left before the explosion. Almond was very attentive and managed to notice the danger in time. Punsna was sure that nothing could save the streamer under the nickname Almond and went to his friend Chewing Gum. Almond was a tough guy and he used an arrow to throw the grenade away from him. Punchy could not understand where the grenade he threw at the young man's feet had gone. He noticed it only when it was too late, when it exploded over his head and the boy was thrown by the blast wave. Punsna was wounded, but he still had hope that he would survive. The guy did not understand why his grenade had come back, and suddenly he saw his opponent in front of him. Almond had finally found a competitor who had a helmet, and he was eager to take it. Punchna started to beg Almond not to destroy it, but Almond had his own plans. The guy took the helmet and was glad that he managed to find a very rare piece of equipment. The stream viewers were very interested in how Almond managed to deflect the grenade, and the guy explained that when he noticed it, it was still far enough away to push it away with his foot. And there was not enough time to dodge the explosion, so the guy just deflected it with an arrow. Almond said that he did not hit the grenade directly, but deflected it at a 45-degree angle from below, so he was able to simply send the grenade back to where it came from. The blue zone was shrinking again, and since Almond was far enough away from it, he decided that he just needed to move on at a normal pace. He set off and thought that the shooting had decreased considerably and suddenly noticed someone hiding behind a small fence. Almond realized that it could be dangerous for him, so he turned around and fired an arrow in the direction of the enemy. The guy moved very quickly and destroyed everyone who got in his way. In the end, there were 5 players left and Almond only needed to successfully destroy them. But the remaining players were very sneaky and disguised themselves as bushes and trees and waited for the players approaching from the blue zone. One of these players was the streamer Zuika, and the viewers of his stream did not really like the methods by which the guy tried to win. The young man's viewers said that Zuika had almost no chance of winning, but the guy wanted to prove them wrong. Zuika thought that he was in the center of the blue zone and took a good position, and because of this, he had a good feeling about the final game. Soon, the remaining players started running out of the blue zone. Chewing Gum was ready to launch an attack on his competitors. The first guy who tried to go further was in his crosshairs, and in a few seconds, Zuika had one less enemy. After this shot, the guy was shocked because he did not expect to hit. The young man immediately gathered his thoughts and shot the second victim who was approaching him. And again, the young man managed to hit, even though almost no one believed in him, including himself. The streamer smiled at his audience and said that he could do anything whenever he wanted, but suddenly he received a notification that the second young man was not killed by him, but by a player named Almond. Bubblegum immediately found the guy in his sights and could not believe that Almond was destroying his competitors with a bow. The guy was surprised because Almond was hiding all the time, and also took possession of his friend's helmet and decided to take revenge on the young man. Suddenly, Chewing Gum realized that he had just made eye contact with Almond, and was very scared because the boy could see him from a great distance. The young man noticed that Almond was aiming at him, and did not understand how he was going to hit him from such a long distance. Chewing Gum started laughing, saying that Almond did not understand anything about distances because he was sure that the arrow would not reach him. Chewing Gum fired at Almond, saying that the rifle would clearly defeat the bow, but Almond managed to deflect the bullet that was heading towards him with an arrow. Chewing Gum did not understand what was happening, and where the bullet that was supposed to hit Almond had gone. The young man pretended that he had just missed so that his audience would not be disappointed in him. He watched Almond closely, who was rapidly approaching him, and realized that he had to act faster. He fired a second bullet and saw it shattered by an arrow fired by Almond. He could not believe his eyes because it seemed that what happened was absolutely impossible and fantastic. The audience also saw this moment and marveled at Almond's skill because it was almost impossible to hit the ball. Chewing Gum tried to hit Almond again and again, but each time his bullets were deflected by arrows. Suddenly, Chewing Gum lost sight of Almond and in a moment saw him very close to him. He tried his best to defeat the young man, but it was all in vain. Finally, Almond found a moment and fired an arrow in Zuika's direction, and it passed through the boy's rifle sight, and thus Almond destroyed another of his enemies. Chewing Gum was thrown out of the game and became the owner of the third place because there were 2 more players left in the game. He immediately began to tell his viewers that third place was also good and suddenly noticed a comment saying that they had found out who his last opponent was. Chewing Gum was very interested and wanted to find out who this archer was, and decided to watch Almond's game with his viewers. Almond said that for the first time in his life he decided to try to defeat his opponent, who owned a rifle as the rate of fire of a sniper rifle and a bow are very similar, and it worked. The guy's audience said that it would be better if he just dodged the bullets, but Almond replied that with this approach your life will depend not so much on your skill as on the skill of the enemy. Then he smiled and said that such an approach is not cool at all, and he chooses to take risks. Almond had only one opponent to defeat, but the difficulty was that he had yet to find him. During the last fights, the remaining player was completely inaudible, so Almond lay down on the ground to listen for any vibrations. He concentrated and felt that the enemy was obviously somewhere near B, as there were not many places to hide. Suddenly, the young man noticed small buildings nearby and footsteps coming from them. Almond immediately decided to shoot in that direction to see if he was right. And the guy was right. The last player was hiding behind the buildings he had spotted. The guy realized that his competitor had a pretty good hiding place, and it would not be so easy to get him. But Almond's opponent did not have as much endurance as the guy, and he started shooting back. Almond had to run away because this time the enemy was obviously stronger than the previous ones. Almond noticed that he had a legendary helmet, which meant that he had never been killed by a headshot. Almond knew that the legendary helmet could not be penetrated, but in any case it was a small obstacle for him. The young man fired an arrow at his opponent, which hit him in the shoulder. Almond knew that he would definitely win and the enemy had to be destroyed in an unusual way. The guy continued to shoot arrows in the hope that he could reduce the percentage of the enemy's health. But suddenly the enemy used a smoke screen and Almond could not see him. After that, a large number of grenades and explosives flew at the guy and it was not easy to hide from them. Almond realized that his opponent was trying to buy time to heal. But this did not stop the young man and he figured out where the enemy was. The undeniable advantage of the bow was that it was quiet, unlike firearms, which is why Almond liked it so much. The young man's enemy was sitting in the smoke screen and trying to heal as quickly as possible to rejoin the battle. But he didn't even notice when Almond shot another arrow that injured his other shoulder. He could no longer shoot with his sniper rifle and so decided to use grenades. But Almond immediately fired another shot and hit the enemy's hand that was reaching for the grenade. He did not understand how the guy managed to do it because he could not see anything in the smoke screen. Almond fired arrows at his enemy again and finally destroyed him, winning the battle. The guy proved to all the viewers of his stream that he really plays fair and does not break the rules. Almond was very happy about his victory and the audience was surprised by the young man's skills and supported him again and again. After leaving the game, Almond apologized for not being able to answer properly during the game, and thanked everyone for their donations. He was also very pleased that he was supported by such a large number of viewers, but suddenly he received a notification that shocked him, because one of the viewers donated 1.5 million. Kim Joo-hyuk's reaction was the same as Yoo Sung-hyun's, because they did not expect that today they would receive the largest donation in the history of Almond streams. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately thought that he had already heard the nickname of this viewer somewhere, This donor was one of the most popular streamers on the network, and Kim Joo-hyuk couldn't believe his eyes that such people had come to Almond. The guy was happy as a little child because, in addition to clearing his name, Almond also made a lot of money. Almond came to his senses in a moment and thanked the last donor from the bottom of his heart. The audience insisted that he thank the donor as he used to do in the old game, and Almond was back on the field. The audience asked him to do 5 backflips like he used to do. But Almond had other plans and found his bow and arrows. The boy took the weapon and shot an arrow upwards, even though the audience tried to persuade him not to. After that, Almond did the promised backflip that everyone was waiting for, and smilingly waited for his arrow to return to him. As usual, it hit him right in the head, and Kim Joo-hyuk was supposed to end the broadcast, but he just forgot. And Almond had to get out of this situation himself. He began to tell the audience that for the next such trick, he would need to make a larger donation. The stream was over and Yoo Sung-hyun opened the capsule, but his head started to hurt incredibly. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately went to his friend and apologized, saying that he got confused when it came to the climax and forgot how to turn everything off. He decided to turn off the entire capsule so that the stream would end. Yoo Sung-hyun went to take a bath and thought that this time he probably overdid it and was also very tired. The singles matches seemed easier than the team matches, but in fact there was a big difference, especially in the grenade moment, which was really dangerous. He thought that even in the lowest rank he could not afford to relax, and if he managed to get to the highest rank, it would be even harder. Yoo Sung-hyun looked at his reflection in the mirror and said that he just had to work hard because failure was simply unacceptable to him. The young man came out of the bathroom and Kim Joo-hyuk asked about a streamer named Bubblegum. Yoo Sang-hyun replied that he had watched his streams before. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately said that the sniper who shot Almond when there were 3 players left was the same chewing gum. Kim Joo-hyuk added that he even managed to immediately make a video of his game and how he watched Almond's stream. In this video, the guy was surprised by Almond's skills in the game he showed. Yoo Sung-hyun couldn't believe that his stream was watched by Bubblegum himself, and Kim Joo-hyuk smiled and added that there were 50,000 viewers besides him. All Yoo Sung-hyun could think about was the fact that the chewing gum streamer, who was his comfort during his hard work days, was watching his game. For Yoo Sung-hyun, chewing gum was the person who made him who he is today. Suddenly, the guy stood up and was about to leave, but Kim Joo-hyuk didn't understand where his friend was going and asked why he was leaving, because they hadn't even read the comments yet. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that he was just tired and wanted to lie down. Kim Joo-hyuk was very surprised and didn't say anything else. Yoo Sung-hyun was very tired and mentally exhausted, but he still hoped that the famous streamers would recognize him soon. Before he went to rest, he decided to look at the trending posts and found that posts about him were on the first place in the ratings. At the same time, Seo Ji-ah was at home watching various videos. The girl was very attentive and did not take her eyes off the screen. She didn't know how to tear herself away from the videos of Almond's game. Suddenly, Seo Ji-ah realized that she had stayed too long at the computer. It was already very late and she had even forgotten to eat properly. But it was normal for her and she thought that the feeling of hunger would soon disappear, like all the pain in this world. Because when she watched the guy's streams, everything around her disappeared. And even those who made her life a living hell disappeared in her mind. Seo Ji-ah carefully studied Almond's every move and how he played the last time. She wrote down in her notebook all the moments she could use to create a new video and thought about where to put the effects and music. Suddenly, she noticed a sound that signaled donations from the audience. She decided to check it out and found that there were a lot of them on the last stream. When she saw that Almond had been donated 1.5 million, she was surprised and shocked at the same time. After all, now she was in second place among Almond's donors and she didn't like it very much. She only thought about the fact that she needed to donate something urgently to be the first again. But she stopped her thoughts in time and decided to continue working. Seo Ji-ah spent a lot of time watching the entire stream and writing down all the points that she would need for her work. She really wanted to be useful to Almond, but she didn't know how to do it. After a few minutes, Seo Ji-ah pulled herself together and put her thoughts together. She realized that if she wants to be useful, she just needs to do what she does best. To make a video that would make everyone's jaw drop, she decided that this video would have a special vibe. She thought that even without editing it has many impressive moments, and if you add editing, it will be just an explosion. The girl wanted the video to be so impressive that even those who watched the stream would be delighted. Seo Ji-ah worked all night and eventually finished the job. When Yoo Sang-hyun and Kim Joo-hyun saw the video, they were amazed because there were so many comments very quickly. In the first few minutes of the video, the number of viewers went through the roof and the boys were very happy about it. Yoo Sang-hyun couldn't believe that he could get so many people interested. Kim Joo-hyuk asked Yoo Sang-hyun if he liked the video, but he said he hadn't seen it yet. So the boys decided to watch it together. When they heard the first music background, they weren't sure if it was suitable for this game. But the track was surprisingly harmonious with Almond's movements and emphasized everything that was happening in the game. The guy said that the video turned out to be even more exciting than the game itself in the stream. After all, the music and editing perfectly regulated the tension, and even Yoo Sang-hyun, who did not understand anything about editing, felt the level of Seo Ji-ah's skill. The guys watched the video with enthusiasm and said that the chat atmosphere was completely different compared to the live broadcast. The video contained all the key moments of the stream and the one when the famous streamer Punzna fought with Almond. People were simply delighted with Almond's bow skills and even managed to redirect a grenade with an arrow. Yoo Sung-hyun watched the video carefully and realized that very soon there would be a moment he was waiting for, namely a fight with his favorite streamer Chewing Gum, whom he never dreamed of meeting. The guy said that the meeting with Juika did not cause much excitement in the community during the live broadcast and wondered if anything would change now. Indeed, the viewers noticed this moment and there were even more comments. Kim Joo-hyuk went to the website of the Gum streamer and saw that there were a lot of headlines about Almond. The manager of the Gum streamer sat and watched the video of Almond's game and couldn't put his face on it. Then he wondered who this young archer was that the whole gaming world was talking about. Park San-tae thought that the streamer Chewing Gum hadn't missed a stream in 10 years and had been playing for a very long time, so he often met other streamers, and usually such meetings had no consequences for anyone. But when he met Almond, everything was completely different. The man said that this is probably the beauty of this job, because you never know what content will work. The man decided to look for information about Almond on the internet, and noted that the guy was very handsome and strong. But when he found out that Almond had been playing virtual games for only 3 weeks, he was shocked, and it was only the second match in a new game for the guy. Park San-tae couldn't imagine how Almond managed to deflect bullets with arrows and decided to rewatch this moment. The man said that there was an editing on the video, but no one would make fake inserts if the original was still freely available. He was surprised that Chewing Gum was accused of the ruling because he did not understand why a streamer who has been successfully operating for 10 years would need to do that. Park Sang-tae realized that the difference in skill between Almond and Chewing Gum was extremely large, but in general, it could be used to make interesting content, starting with the question of who the guy with the bow was. Yoo Sung-hyun looked through the viewers' comments and said that the resonance affected not only fan sites, but also other resources. He was glad that he was mentioned on the same level as the streamer Bubblegum. Kim Joo-hyuk said that Chewing Gum is a really popular streamer, because 50 viewers who regularly followed him did not just gather. The guy said that he even envied Chewing Gum a little bit because at this level you can afford anything. Yoo Sung-hyun immediately said that in fact, Zuika lives quite modestly. And besides, he has 2 children in whom he invested a lot of money at this point. Kim Joo-hyuk realized that Yoo Sung-hyun was a fan of this streamer. Yoo Sung-hyun thought that Bubblegum might be a top streamer, but he didn't find everything easy, but rather the opposite. His humor was on the average level and the guy himself had a friendly enough image. But his skills in games were not very good, to put it mildly. He did not have any outstanding qualities that distinguished him from others. But Zuika never gave up and had extraordinary stubbornness, determination, and responsibility. And that's why the guy with the nickname Chewing Gum managed to survive in the streaming industry. When Yoo Sung-hyun watched Chewing Gum's streams, he felt a strange sense of nostalgia. It was as if he was remembering a strong but silly older brother from his childhood. The one who always met you on the playground after school. The guy closed his eyes and thought that he really respects the Gum streamer. But not for his skill, of course, but for his human qualities. Yoo Sung-hyun started to tell Kim Joo-hyuk that it was thanks to him that his meeting with Chewing Gum attracted the attention of the audience, and Kim Joo-hyuk replied that he should only thank his own abilities. He added that his video had gained more than 8,000 to 10,000 views in just 5 hours after it was posted. Yoo Sung-hyun picked up his phone to check it out and was upset. Because there were a lot of hateful comments, Kim Joo-hyuk tried to take the phone away from his friend, saying that he didn't have to read all of it because the commenters just wanted to humiliate him. Yoo Sung-hyun took the phone back and said that he knew all about it, but Kim Joo-hyuk didn't understand why he wanted to see it. Yoo Sung-hyun smiled and said that this was also part of his morale training. He added that in any case, he had no family, so he didn't care what people said about him. Kim Joo-hyuk looked at his friend and thought that now he finally understood why the manager at his previous job didn't like him so much. He was just annoyed that his teasing and ridicule could not hurt Yoo Sung-hyun. Yoo Sung-hyun said that there was still a problem that the capsule was not calibrated, so he needed to play more. But Kim Joo-hyuk knew that virtual reality games required a lot of physical strength, and his friend already took them quite hard. He even looked for a hospital nearby, but Yoo Sung-hyun insisted that it was important to do so because people still thought that the newcomer was just making up that he was a genius. Yoo Sung-hyun said that he just needed to play until he got a decent rank, and he decided to go watch some strategy videos to be able to reach a higher level faster. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately noticed that after watching the hateful comments, Yoo Sung-hyun's eyes even lit up and he wanted to prove them wrong, and the guy realized what kind of fighting spirit his friend was talking about. Kim Joo-hyuk smiled and said that in that case he didn't want to lag behind Yoo Sung-hyun and would also get to work and started by checking the mail. Suddenly he ran to Yoo Sung-hyun very quickly and told him that a letter had arrived in the mail. Yoo Sang-hyun asked who it was from, and Kim Joo-hyuk replied that it was from the manager of the Gum streamer. Park Sang-tae wrote that he wanted to invite Almond to pull up Gum's skill set, and Yoo Sang-hyun couldn't even believe his luck. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately stopped his friend's joy and said that the letter stated that there was one condition. The boy had to reach the highest level first. Yoo Sang-hyun really wanted to work with the streamer Gum, but reaching the highest level in the game was not so easy, and the guy doubted whether he would succeed. The young man immediately began to say that he agreed, because in any case he was going to raise his rank, so there was no reason to refuse. Kim Joo-hyuk listened to his friend and said that he would accept Park Sung-tae's offer. Yoo Sung-hyun decided not to waste time and immediately started a new stream to achieve good results as soon as possible. The viewers were surprised that Almond started his stream so early, and the young man immediately told everyone that today he was starting his way to the highest rank in the game. At some point, the guy wondered whether he should say how long he wanted to achieve this. And suddenly, Almond announced to his audience that he was going to reach the highest level in the game in just 2 weeks. Almond's statement caused a furious discussion in the comments. Some even thought that the guy had confused 2 months and 2 weeks, but the young man replied that he had calculated everything and that this time should be enough for him. Yoo Sung-hyun understood how crazy this statement sounded, but unlike everyone else, he understood his capabilities very well. He thought that even the statistics were on his side. The young man was convinced that people should admire his records, but in his case, everything was different. For Yoo Sung-hyun, breaking someone's records was a common thing, and he was very grateful that he again had such an opportunity to test himself and remember the feelings that grip him every time he accepts the challenge. And the tension associated with it did not give him peace of mind, because in real life he could not feel it as he used to in competition. Yoo Sung-hyun wanted with all his heart to regain people's admiration and prove himself the best once again. Kim Joo-hyuk also watched the stream that his friend started, and at some point he thought that he was just crazy. After all, it was theoretically possible that he could achieve such results in just 2 weeks, but it was still risky. Kim Joo-hyuk would never have been able to take such a risk in his life, even if the reward was appropriate. He could not imagine that his friend was so desperate and risky. The young man recalled that Yoo Sung-hyun used to always know the right amount of caution, and it seemed that a comfortable shell was more important to him, although he always looked a bit depressed and upset in his previous job. But there was a feeling that Yoo Sung-hyun didn't care if tomorrow ever came. But now Kim Joo-hyuk was seeing a completely different Yoo Sang-hyun, the one he could never have imagined before when he was working at a job he didn't like. Kim Joo-hyuk was glad that his friend had found his calling again and decided to follow him, because whoever doesn't take risks doesn't drink champagne. The guy realized that if he had stayed at his previous job, he would never have dared to do this, but once you see Yoo Sung-hyun's eyes, you realize that he will definitely do it. Kim Joo-hyuk sincerely believed in Yoo Sung-hyun's abilities and perseverance like no one else. When Almond started playing, the audience immediately asked if he had a strategy for winning. The guy answered that first he was going to go to the warehouse to choose a new bow for himself. When he got there were quite a few players there, but they were so busy with each other that they didn't pay attention to Almond. The guy immediately noticed that there was a metal knife on the table that could be useful to him in the future. As soon as he reached out to take it, he was stopped by one of the players. He said that he was the first to arrive at the warehouse and would take the weapon for himself. Almond was not going to give in and, being a good martial artist, struck the opponent. After Almond's attack, the guy was confused because he did not expect such resistance from his opponent. But the guy still hoped that he would be able to take away Almond's knife that was on the table. But Almond continued to attack the opponent, throwing a metal knife at him, which he managed to take away. And in a matter of seconds, one of the players was eliminated by Almond. The audience did not expect that the guy would be so good not only at archery but also at other weapons, and began to ask where he got such skills. Almond immediately replied that in the camp he had to train with baseball players and finally practiced his throws. The guy recalled those times with warmth in his heart because, despite being an archer, he was also involved in other sports. Almond told his viewers that he came to the warehouse realizing that there would be many players, and his plan was to destroy as many opponents as possible before they had weapons. While the guy was talking to the stream viewers, another player noticed him. The young man was about to shoot Almond with a rifle, but the guy reacted in time and rushed to the enemy. Almond's opponent did not expect the boy to get to him so quickly and was confused. Almond was determined to raise his level in the game very quickly and was not going to stop there, so he destroyed all the players who were in the warehouse. And having gathered all the weapons that were in the pile, the guy chose for himself, as always, a bow and arrows. The young man did not want anyone to get the remaining weapons and decided to fill them with fuel for cars. After that, he made a fire cocktail and threw it to make everything burn to the ground. In addition to the weapons in the warehouse, the guy also found a motorcycle and decided that this time he would use it to get around. Almond quickly gathered everything he needed and went forward, after which the guy easily took the first place, destroying absolutely all opponents. After the first game before his level up, Almond thanked all his donors but was not going to say goodbye. He wanted to move on to the next game right away in order to achieve the level increase as soon as possible and not lose concentration. Meanwhile, Kim Joo-hyuk stirred up interest in Almond and posted clickbait articles about him. At first, people were very skeptical, but when people watched Almond's game, many were impressed. Kim Joo-hyuk still doubted whether Almond would be able to cope with the task, but if he did, it would be a complete victory. But the comments that viewers began to write confused Kim Joo-hyuk because viewers continued to say that Almond was competing with beginners and was worthless. And now Kim Joo-hyuk set himself the task of changing public opinion about Almond. He hoped that Yoo Sung-hyun would be able to prove to everyone that he could beat the best players. Almond started his second game on the way to the next level, and each time his tactics changed because many factors that influenced the result changed. The guy carefully studied the strategy of other players who were next to him, And as Almond expected, all the players immediately began to run down the stairs instead of entering the battle at once. Almond realized that no one would benefit from a fight immediately after landing from the helicopter because his opponents were already equipped and most likely they were interested in high-ranking weapons. All the players were rushing to the warehouse to find what they needed, but when they got to the door, one of the competitors could not open the door immediately. And at that moment, Almond was able to get to the enemy very quickly and strike him. The guy was not going to wait until everyone found the coveted weapon and could threaten him, so he decided to attack and destroy the enemies in advance. The players who managed to escape began to run away, saying that they didn't understand the point of fighting right in the warehouse. They shouted that Almond was a crazy psycho who was killing everyone he saw. Almond was not interested in their opinion and continued to stubbornly go to his goal. His opponents quickly became fewer and the guy stopped at nothing. The viewers of the stream supported Almond and admired the persistence with which the guy went to his goal. The opponents still tried to defeat the young man, but these attempts failed. Almond continued to attack the enemies who wanted to escape. He wanted to finish the game as soon as possible and continue on his way. Almond said that he just needed to get to the top of the best as soon as possible. For a moment, the young man stopped and counted how many enemies he had managed to destroy. And after counting, he found that there was one more enemy left. Almond noticed a guy who was defending himself with a knife and asked Almond not to approach him. Almond was a concentrated, cold-blooded man and could not stop halfway. The enemy's fear was overwhelming because Almond looked so confident. Unable to withstand the tension, the enemy jumped out of the building in an attempt to escape. He landed on the ground and was in great pain because he had jumped from a great height. The guy was glad that he was alive, but it was only a matter of time because Almond was already very close. He caught up with his enemy and was ready to strike the decisive blow. Almond was glad that he managed to avoid great harm to his health after falling from a great height because he landed directly on his enemy. And suddenly he saw a motorcycle parked near the building, which he needed more than ever. Almond took the vehicle and went to the warehouse where the other players were supposed to be. In the warehouse, there were players who said that they had only a little time left to survive, and one of them suggested hiding in the basement to make it easier to destroy other competitors. These players, who had formed a kind of team, were trying to guard the warehouse to prevent any enemy from entering. Suddenly, they heard a sound coming from the street and turned around to see what it was. Almond was approaching them, and almost everyone who had just started playing the game knew about him. His opponents were obviously not expecting to meet him and were quite scared. One of Almond's enemies did not even have time to understand what to expect from the young man, and Almond drove into him at full speed on a motorcycle, depriving him of the opportunity to escape. After that, he immediately stabbed and killed another of his enemies. After such an epic, fiery appearance, the viewers on the stream went crazy and were amazed at the guy's skills every time. Almond got off his motorcycle and decided to explore the area around the warehouse to find something he needed, and very quickly he found a bow and a grenade with which he could win. At this time, the remaining players were in the basement of the warehouse, and they were extremely happy that they had found a large number of weapons. They were talking about getting equipped and going outside to finish the game, but suddenly there was an explosion at the entrance to the basement. They couldn't understand what was happening and what caused the fire, and the players immediately began to suffer severe health damage from the smoke. They had to get out of the basement as soon as possible to save their lives. There was only one exit in the basement, and they ran very fast trying to get out. But there was a surprise waiting for them. Almond was already ready to attack the enemies with his bow and arrows. After Almond destroyed one of the enemies, the other one started shooting back. Another player could not understand from which side the guy was shooting because he was not visible at all. Almond took a very favorable position and destroyed all the remaining players one by one. The players were shocked because Almond hit the targets accurately. His opponents could only see the arrows flying in their direction. Very soon, all the players who were in the basement of the warehouse were killed by Almond's arrows. But still there was one more player. He thought that most likely Almond knew where he was, and there was little chance of survival. Almond hadn't seen the last opponent, so he decided to throw a grenade into the basement, just in case to make sure no one was left. Kim Joo-hyuk was glad that everyone was talking about Almond again. But as his popularity grew, more haters began to appear. But the young man thought that the more people, the more attention, and this meant more profit. If Yoo Sung-hyun managed to prove that he was the best, the haters would have no choice but to admit that Almond was a genius. And then he and Yoo Sung-hyun will be able to get even more profit from the audience. Kim Joo-hyuk was very happy because each time Almond won very quickly and moved up in the rankings. Almond really wanted to reach the highest level in this game in the shortest possible time, and therefore did not want to take any risks in important matches. That's why he decided to go straight to the warehouse, where clearing it would significantly increase his chances of winning. He wondered how many players would go there at once. When Ammon was in the air and heading to the warehouse, he noticed another player who was heading there. The guy immediately recognized this player. It was a stream sniper named Punsna. Kim Joo-hyuk saw that Almond's opponent was Punsna in the decisive match and was scared and very worried about the results. Almond realized that if he and Punsna both landed in the warehouse, he would be in for a fierce fight. If he suddenly lost, he could not even count on a quick career advancement. Kim Joo-hyuk was very worried about his friend because if he lost this time, he would have to go back to his previous job. He said that he could not believe that he had no choice but to watch everything that was happening through the screen. When Almond was on his way to the warehouse, Punchna decided to laugh at the young man and called him a nut, as almond meant almond. He immediately began to tell the boy that they would have to fight as soon as they landed. But Almond was not afraid of this fight and was confident that he would be able to defeat the stream sniper for the second time. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't expect Yoo Sung-hyun to be so confident and cocky. The commentators also really liked Almond's behavior, and Kim Joo-hyuk exhaled and said that Almond could not lose. He realized that his task was only to make Almond's victory even more spectacular, and for this he decided to use the Bubblegum fan club because Bubblegum's viewers did not like Punchy. At one point, Kim Joo-hyuk thought that this act might not turn out well if it attracted a lot of attention, and Almond did not win. But again, he was inspired by Almond's confidence and decided to take the risk. After Kim Joo-hyuk's actions, the viewers on Almond's stream were getting more and more annoyed, and were expecting a fight between Almond and Punsna because they wanted to see the defeat of the stream sniper. Kim Joo-hyuk used all the resources he could to attract as many people as possible to watch, and it worked. The number of viewers was growing every second. Almond understood that this was a very important moment because his further determination of his skill level depended on this match. If something went wrong, he would not be able to achieve his goal in 2 weeks. He realized that Punsna was probably also counting on something to prevent him from keeping his promise to his audience. This made Almond even more nervous because the most important thing was to prove to everyone that he was the best. Almond realized that his opponent was quite strong, but he often used the same tactics. That's why he had to be extremely careful and rely only on his skills and abilities. The guy thought that Punsna's level of real skills was really high, namely 3 ranks higher than Almond's goal. If Punsna loses now, he will also lose a lot. And most likely he has planned everything well, including the analysis of Almond's behavior. And Almond decided to act differently than usual and confuse his opponent. Punsna immediately started accusing Almond of playing dirty because he couldn't win honestly. But Almond replied that he considered his actions to be honest because Punsna's level of ability was much higher. Punsna was offended by such statements, but he still wanted to win this fight. The guys were quickly approaching the ground and were very close to landing. They did not manage to land properly as Almond specifically did everything to prevent his opponent from quickly recovering on the ground. Almond was prepared for the fact that he would also be in trouble, but still took this step. After landing, he managed to get up faster than Punchin, and therefore had a chance to win. The guys were quickly approaching the warehouse to find weapons and destroy each other. Almond realized that he was at a disadvantage if he had to fight without weapons, and thought that if he couldn't find a bow, he needed to find at least a knife. And suddenly he noticed a shining blade under the bushes, a chance to win. Almond quickly approached the weapon in order to be faster than the stream sniper. He simply could not let his opponent get to the warehouse before him. The guy threw a knife at his opponent, hoping to hold him back. However, Punsna's level of sniper skills was really high and he managed to dodge Almond's attack. Punsna intercepted the knife and now the threat to Almond was more serious than before. The boy threw the knife at Almond and was confident that he would defeat the young man. Almond fell into a stupor for a moment and seemed to have already said goodbye to his life and his dream of rising in the rankings. But at the last moment, he gathered his thoughts and dodged a powerful attack from his opponent. Almond thought that as long as there was another knife next to Pouncy, dodging would do nothing. So he had to act differently to intercept it and increase his chances of winning. The guy realized that this time he had to make every effort in the fight. He intercepted the knife and quickly approached his opponent to strike. Punsna clearly did not expect Almond to pull this off, and now he did not know what to do next. But he also managed to grab a knife and wanted to fight with Almond, hoping that he would win because his level of ability was higher than the young man's. Almond struck first, and his attack was more powerful than Punsna expected. Almond managed to knock the knife out of the enemy's hands, and Punsna was left without a weapon. It was thanks to this that Almond was able to launch a second attack and destroy his enemy. Kim Joo-hyuk was very happy that Yoo Sung-hyun managed to defeat such a strong opponent. He tried to control his emotions, but it was simply impossible. Kim Joo-hyuk started screaming and rejoicing like a little child, because the fight between Almond and Punsna was the hardest fight he had ever participated in. The news of Almond and Punsna's fight quickly spread across all platforms and forums, and viewers wrote that Almond had star potential. There were many factors that determined star potential, but in areas such as sports and games, the true sign of a star is determination and the ability to prove themselves in critical moments. And despite the huge burden of responsibility, Almond managed to convince the viewer that he possesses these qualities. The guy was very happy that he managed to win and move on to his goal. Almond decided to talk to his viewers while he was waiting for the results, which would help him improve his level in the game. The young man thanked for the donations he received during the stream, and there were a lot of them. Very quickly, the results were summed up, and Almond managed to get a new rank. His skill level was now higher than before. After this great news, Almond offered the viewers a revised result of the game and ended the stream. Everyone was wondering what kind of medal Almond would get, and the guy asked if this rank was awarded with platinum, but without getting an answer, he proceeded to view the results. The young man opened the table and saw the coveted Platinum 3 award. But when the viewers found out about it, they couldn't believe it because it seemed like a system failure because no one had ever received Platinum after leveling up. Almond smiled and told everyone that he must have gotten a Platinum reward for the mission. When commentators continued to say that this was impossible, Almond replied that he had received his reward deservedly. After that, he thanked everyone for their donations and wanted to finish the stream. But the guy stayed for a minute and received very good news. A female streamer with the nickname Miho gave him 500,000 to continue the stream for a while longer. Almond was very surprised because he didn't expect such a famous streamer to follow him and donate such amounts. He thought that it was impossible to attract the attention of so many famous people, being practically a beginner in virtual games. Commenters started joking that Almond and Miho must be dating because the girl had never shown such attention to anyone before. But Almond thought only about one thing. He was just a beginner streamer and already received such huge amounts of money, and he was sure that he had started this business for a reason. All the viewers begged Almond not to leave yet, but the guy did not know how to behave further. After that, he smiled and told everyone that he could play a little more because he wanted to fulfill his promise and reach the highest level. Kim Joo-hyuk was happy that his friend had managed to pass the first stage of the ability leveling and decided to relax a bit and see what was written on the internet. He was reading all the news stories about Almond's new achievement and suddenly came across some not-so-nice comments. Some viewers wrote that Almond was deceiving everyone again and were going to write complaints. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately intervened in this correspondence and found out that there were other streamers who managed to get Platinum 3 after the first level increase, so the guy wanted to know what algorithm is used to determine the rank. The young man immediately found information that despite the same number of victories, everyone gets different ranks, and most players get from Gold 4 to Gold 1. This meant that Platinum 3 was a very real award, and Kim Joo-hyuk was confused why some viewers were so negative about Almond. The guy realized that balance in online games is a very sensitive issue, and if it is violated, players start arguing. Kim Joo-hyuk continued to study this issue in more detail because he was concerned about what people thought of Almond. Kim Joo-hyuk made an official request for an explanation about the boy's reward. The game's office started laughing at Almond's manager because it was the first time they had received such a request. One of the administrators came to the general manager with this request because the management demanded to be more careful with streamers, and he did not know what to do and how to respond to this message. The general manager immediately replied that this could be solved by publishing a standard explanatory template. But this time it wasn't so simple, and the administrator was getting uncomfortable with this ambiguity. The manager started talking about how the commenters complained that the rating was too high, but the rank was distributed by artificial intelligence and there was no chance of a mistake. And the administrator replied that there had been cases before when a player had received a Platinum 4. The manager smiled and said that this meant that there were precedents before and ordered the administrator to write a letter according to his instructions. Meanwhile, Almond continued to play and got 9 wins in a row. The guy was happy that his viewers gave him missions to complete the game with only a bow, and he was doing great. Suddenly, Almond stopped and found out that he only had one more game to play to reach the Platinum 2 reward, so he decided to end the stream. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately approached Yoo Sung-hyun and said that it was really time to finish because he had already done so much work. When the capsule opened, Kim Joo-hyuk saw his friend, who looked not very good, to put it mildly. Yoo Sung-hyun was wet because he had been concentrating for a very long time, and it was the first time his friend had seen him so tired. Yoo Sung-hyun said that he was fine and asked Kim Joo-hyuk to bring him an energy drink from the fridge to help him recover a little. Kim Joo-hyuk approached the refrigerator and told his friend that there were no energy drinks in it. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that they were in another refrigerator for drinks. But Kim Joo-hyuk didn't even notice when Yoo Sung-hyun had bought it and made a huge supply of energy drinks. Kim Joo-hyuk took one bottle and brought it to his friend who was still sitting in the capsule. Yoo Sung-hyun took the drink and started drinking very quickly to restore his water balance and gain energy. Kim Joo-hyuk was very confused by Yoo Sung-hyun's condition because he had never worked so hard before. Kim Joo-hyuk decided to examine the capsule and understand what was the reason for Yoo Sung-hyun's condition, but the temperature in the capsule was adequate. The guy realized that it would not be possible to detect the problem by eye, and he had to figure out what the real problem was. He decided to check the capsule and suddenly received a notification from the gaming company in response to his request. This letter said that Almond's rating was determined by artificial intelligence, which takes into account not only the place in the match results table, but also the number of wins and losses. The letter also said that an official announcement would be made with explanations, but Kim Joo-hyuk was worried that viewers might take it wrong, so he decided to suggest that Almond undergo some tests so that no one would have any questions. After that, Kim Joo-hyuk approached Yoo Sung-hyun and told him that they had received an advertising proposal. The guy immediately said that this was an official response from the game's office in the company with which Yoo Sung-hyun worked, and if he agreed, they could start. Yoo Sung-hyun was surprised that he was offered to film the process in virtual reality. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately asked why the guy had such a face or if he just didn't want to participate. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that he didn't mind, But he was a little worried about the medical examination because he thought that after that everyone would start talking about his right hand. Kim Joo-hyuk didn't understand why his friend didn't want to talk about it, because the director already knew this fact about him, and Yoo Sung-hyun said that the director was trustworthy and that this story was a necessity. But the guy wasn't ready to tell the whole world about it. Kim Joo-hyuk immediately said that they could put a condition of non-disclosure, but Yoo Sung-hyun didn't want anyone else to know about it. Kim Joo-hyuk insisted that the guy had to agree because he would still have to undergo a medical examination, as his condition after each stream was not very good. Yoo Sung-hyun replied that he could do it in the hospital, but Kim Joo-hyuk insisted that there are not many doctors who can analyze neurosignals in connection with the virtual reality capsule. And the medical examination offered by the game's office was much more qualified than ordinary doctors. Yoo Sung-hyun began to be annoyed by these conversations and snapped at his friend Kim Joo-hyuk, who immediately turned around and left the apartment so as not to annoy the young man even more. The boy was left alone in the apartment and had a chance to think things over. He didn't know what to do because then the whole world would know about his accident and injury. Kim Joo-hyuk was going down the stairs and met Seo Ji-ah, who was taking out the trash. He approached the girl and offered to help her. Seo Ji-ah didn't know that Kim Joo-hyuk lived with Yoo Sung-hyun, so he decided to tell her that he was visiting a friend on business. The girl immediately asked how Yoo Sung-hyun was feeling, and Kim Joo-hyuk replied that he was still sleeping. She knew that Yoo Sung-hyun was a lark and woke up quite early, so she wondered what could have happened between the friends. Kim Joo-hyuk decided to invite the girl to a cafe to have lunch together, which surprised Seo Ji-ah, but she agreed. The girl and the boy came to the cafe and ordered and waited for the food to be delivered. Seo Ji-ah also asked for a bottle of liquor, which surprised Kim Joo-hyuk. She offered to pour it for the young man, who also looked upset and depressed. But he refused and eventually agreed to have one drink with her. Seo Ji-ah immediately started pouring for herself and Kim Joo-hyuk, who clearly didn't like the idea. He didn't think it was normal to drink in the morning, but he couldn't refuse the girl. Kim Joo-hyuk knocked over the glass and drank its contents, thinking that he didn't have to go to work in the office anyway. Seo Ji-ah immediately started pouring a second glass and asked if Kim Joo-hyuk would join her again, adding that they say alcohol is better than doctors. Kim Joo-hyuk asked the girl if she always drank in the morning because it could ruin her day and get her into trouble. The girl did not answer the question directly and said that apparently Kim Joo-hyuk's day was already ruined without it. After that, she raised the glass again and drank it, and it seemed that something serious had happened to Jia. The girl said that if you keep everything in silence, you can break down, and then added that Almond said so. Kim Joo-hyuk was surprised that Seo Ji-ah and Yoo Sung-hyun were talking about such topics. The girl and the boy continued to drink the bottle together, and when they were no longer in a good state, Seo Ji-ah asked why. If Almond didn't want to talk about his injury, they shouldn't leave him alone. Kim Joo-hyuk replied that it was about a big publicity stunt and was upset that Yoo Sung-hyun didn't understand. Seo Ji-ah immediately said that he understood everything and that's why he was making excuses for his injury. Kim Joo-hyuk thought about it and said that maybe the girl was right. After all, Yoo Sung-hyun could not help but realize what this threatened him and still reacted in such a way. Due to the large amount of alcohol she had drunk, Seo Ji-ah began to fall off her chair. Kim Joo-hyuk tried to save the girl and catch her so that she wouldn't hit herself. The guy managed to put his hand in front of her to prevent her from hitting her head on the table and asked if she was okay. After Seo Ji-ah and Kim Joo-hyuk had lunch, the boy went home. He entered the apartment and shouted loudly to Yoo Sung-hyun that he was back. Yoo Sung-hyun saw his friend and was surprised that he had managed to get drunk so quickly. Kim Joo-hyuk began to say that he had every right to drink whenever he wanted, and added that he felt so much better. Yoo Sung-hyun said that the manager of the game company he was working with had already set a date for the shoot. But Kim Joo-hyuk was so drunk that he couldn't fully comprehend all the information Yoo Sung-hyun was giving him. Yoo Sung-hyun began to explain that he was talking about that challenging advertising proposal and that they would shoot tomorrow. He didn't expect Yoo Sung-hyun to agree to it, but he said that he had thought about it and realized that there was no way out of it. Kim Joo-hyuk asked if his friend was sure of his decision. Yoo Sung-hyun looked at Kim Joo-hyuk and said that it was the job of a streamer to open up to people. Kim Joo-hyuk was touched by the young man's words, and the degree of alcohol he had drunk was having its effect. He began to apologize to Yoo Sung-hyun for not paying attention to his feelings and just being afraid for his health. Yoo Sung-hyun looked at him and asked if that was the reason why he decided to get drunk in the morning, and Kim Joo-hyuk was silent for a second and said that it was not the case. He said that he had just met Seo Ji-ah on the street and invited her to have lunch with him. Yoo Sung-hyun lowered his head and said that it seemed like the girl liked to drink. Kim Joo-hyuk added that he thought Seo Ji-ah had a very unpleasant history. Yoo Sung-hyun didn't say anything, but the fact that she allowed herself to get drunk in the morning meant that she was really in trouble. Suddenly, Kim Joo-hyuk began to smile and ask his friend if he was interested in the girl, hinting at a romantic relationship. The next day, the guys arrived at the filming location, and during this time, there were a lot of hateful comments on the network. Kim Joo-hyuk talked to the general manager of the game company, who asked to pass these statements to the legal department. Kim Joo-hyuk thanked Yoo Sung-hyun for his quick response to the situation and asked if it was really that bad. The manager immediately began to say that nothing bad was happening, but the gaming community always exaggerates. He added that for most people it was just a news story and a normal reaction. Yoo Sang-hyun told Kim Joo-hyuk that he now understood why the chewing gum streamer advised everyone to look for hype. The makeup girls admired Almond and said how good his skin and hair were, but Kim Joo-hyuk was more concerned about the positive reaction and popularity of the audience. When Yoo Sang-hyun was ready for the shoot, Kim Joo-hyuk came up to him and said with a smile on his face that today they would finally find out if Almond was really that good. When he saw himself in the mirror, he was surprised because he did not expect to look like this during the shooting, but he liked the image that was made for him. On the set, everything was ready for recording, and the host invited Yoo Sang-hyun to sit next to her. She told him that there were 30 seconds left before the broadcast and added that Yoo Sang-hyun should act the way they had rehearsed. He read the script to himself and realized that the most important thing was the test, and was worried that there would be no problems with the capsule. The show started, and the host named Yoo Hyen greeted all the viewers. The format of the show was to analyze the invited streamer thoroughly. Unpopular streamers were not included. Yoo Hyen said that all the viewers were looking forward to this particular episode and was preparing to introduce the guest. The director showed Almond a sign that said he was about to be shown in close-up and that he should get ready. The host announced the name of the streamer who would be the star of the show, and it was Almond, whom everyone was really looking forward to. The chat of the show began to burst with compliments for the young man whom everyone adored. Yoo Hyun continued to say that she had no idea that Almond was so popular among today's youth, and said that she did not understand it because she was already in her 30s. When Yoo Sang-hyun heard that the girl was over 30, he was very surprised because she looked very young. Yi Hyun clearly didn't like the guy's reaction to the information he learned. The host asked how Almond felt and whether he was nervous, and the guy said that he did not even expect so many people to come. The girl smiled and said that Almond shouldn't be upset because his talent could attract 3 times as many people. Yoo Sang-hyun tried not to make any unnecessary movements because he didn't understand how to behave properly in the frame, and so he just did everything he was told. Yoo Hyun tried to bring Yoo Sang-hyun into conflict to add even more views, but the guy tried not to give in to these provocations and stay calm. Even though he was uncomfortable, he felt like a toy in the hands of a crowd of kids. When Yoo Hyun realized that nothing was coming out of this provocation, she suggested that Almond move on to a short interview. The general manager of the gaming company was pleased with how Yoo Sang-hyun was holding himself. He really liked the way the boy behaved and what he said, even though he sometimes looked strange. Kim Joo-hyuk said that Yoo Sang-hyun had always been a bit strange, and the manager said that if he became an esports player, he would make a splash because he had charisma. Kim Joo-hyuk was grateful to the manager for saying that about Almond. After that, the man asked the director if Almond was doing well and was told that he was doing great. But the director continued to ask if the interview was not too simple, because many questions about the past were crossed out, so that you couldn't even come up with any rumors. He added that such mystery had long gone out of fashion, and now, on the contrary, the more frankness the merrier. The manager threw up his hands and said that if Almond was against it, there was nothing he could do, and the interview was not the main thing. Then the director asked what the main thing was because he thought it was all nonsense, and the statistics confirmed it. The interview with the boy was already over, and the presenter said that it was time to move on to the most interesting Almond test. Yoo Sang-hyun looked at the guy and asked him how he was feeling a minute before the exposure. Yoo Sang-hyun didn't like the girl's tone of voice and sarcastically replied that he was very nervous. Yoo Sang-hyun and Almond got into the capsules, and the girl said that very soon they would find out what Almond was really capable of. After that, the capsules were closed, and the girl and the boy went to the virtual game. Almond felt a little strange, but the girl told him not to be surprised because they had prepared something special for him. Above the boy's head, sheets of paper began to fly like pieces of paper that made up another picture, and very soon he found himself in an arena with targets that were very similar to the atmosphere of the competition where the young man won the gold medal. The host said that Almond is known for his archery, and that's why they prepared an ultra-realistic virtual space. Yoo Sang-hyun didn't really like the test he had to pass because he was starting to get nervous. Everything around him looked very realistic, and it made him uncomfortable. But he pulled himself together and was ready to prove to everyone what he was worth. The first thing to do was to choose the bow Almond was going to shoot with. The young man took the bow in his hand, and the balance of the stabilizers and the feel of the handle were just like real ones. When the leader saw that he had taken the bow, she said that now he could finally start. Almond wondered if he could consider himself back in the ranks again, if his sensations were so similar to the real thing. The presenter began to ask if it was the first time the young man had ever held professional equipment in his hands. But seeing the way Almond held the bow and the stance he had, it was clear that he was more than a professional. The guy was extremely confident, focused, and determined. Almond shot the first arrow and hit the center of the target, which impressed the host, Yoo Hyun. She just froze for a while and came to her senses when Almond said he was done. He said that he had tried to shoot and everything went well enough. The young man said that the game was extremely realistic. Yoo Hyun was so surprised by the guy's abilities that she even forgot about the commercial. After that, she started saying that one hit was just a warm-up and it happens to everyone. She didn't like the fact that Almond was doing well and tried her best to keep her emotions to herself. She told Almond that he made a great shot, but in reality she wanted him to be embarrassed with all her heart. The commentators began to say that Almond was really amazing, but the girl insisted that they should wait for the final results. Almond continued to shoot at the targets in front of him. He fired arrow after arrow that hit the target as if in a competition. All of Almond's arrows hit the bullseye. The viewers of the stream said that the guy had an extraordinary talent, and he should not do streams but go to competitions. Some of the viewers began to suspect that Almond's success was also a setup, but Yu Haiyan began to say that they had not done anything like that. When the director saw Almond's results, he was very surprised because all the shots were in the top 10. The guy spent a little more than a second aiming and fired 10 shots in 12 seconds, which seemed unrealistic. The man did not understand how this young man had such abilities, because even professional athletes would have had a hard time with him. Almond didn't know what to do next and decided to ask Yu Haiyan whether he should wait for the next level or not. The girl said that this training could probably be completed, and the guy did a great job, so there was no point in continuing. After that, Almond was waiting for the next stage called Survival. Viewers began to write that other streamers had already passed similar tests, and it looked extremely cool. For a moment, Almond stopped and was in a slight stupor due to being moved to another virtual game. Yu Haiyan asked if he felt any difference with the super reality, and Almond replied that now he felt like he was in a game. The girl tried to emphasize that they could use augmented realism technologies that no one else had used. Almond didn't say anything, and the girl said that in that case it was time to start the next survival test. Yu Haiyan asked if the guy was ready for it, and Almond replied by asking if he could answer honestly. The host said that, of course, and Almond looked at the girl and said that he could handle this test without any problems. Yu Haiyan was surprised at his confidence and said that he could at least find out what the test was first, but Almond replied that he had already seen it. The girl began to say that in order to understand whether it was a simple or difficult test, it was enough to just watch the episode with another streamer, but Almond replied that he thought he could easily score more points. Yu Haiyan smiled and said that the guy was too confident, and she clearly did not like it. The girl announced the start of the test, and Almond concentrated on winning this one. The test started, and the guy had only one task to survive to the end. At some point, he was attacked by dangerous objects from different sides. But Almond managed to successfully dodge the attacks that threatened him. The axe that was flying at the guy flew past, and Almond exhaled with relief, realizing that it was very close. He analyzed that as soon as the lights came on, he was immediately attacked. And now he was ready to move a little faster because he understood how the system worked. The guy noted that they kept throwing weapons at him from the blind spot, and it seemed a bit strange. The attacks became more frequent, and there was less and less time to dodge them. In the last seconds, the guy managed to escape from the attacks, and Yu Haiyan really wanted the young man to lose. The girl said that Almond would not be defeated easily and that it was worth making an effort. The viewers started asking the girl to compare Almond with the record of Electron, who dodged the shelling for 30 minutes and 39 seconds. And Almond had to surpass this result because he wanted not only to survive, but to prove to everyone that he was the best. Yu Haiyan watched the guy pass the test and said that it would be very difficult to break Electron's record. The presenter noted that the second stage of the test had begun, and the guy was facing a complication. It was not easy for Almond before, but now he had to use his skills to the fullest. In different places, the floor slabs began to disappear, and Almond had a high probability of falling into them. The boy carefully analyzed everything that was happening and thought that it only seemed that the tiles were disappearing suddenly. But before they disappeared, a slight vibration was felt. Therefore, the young man's tactic was simple: move faster. Yu Haiyan told the audience that Almond did not know what the tests would be like in advance, and therefore could not study and prepare. She said that Almond was doing very well and that he was already in the top 11. The presenter could not believe that this young man had really used the capsule for the first time only 3 weeks ago. Almond continued to move very quickly to avoid falling down. And suddenly, the difficulty of the test changed, and in addition to the falling floor, flying weapons were added. The young man was constantly thinking that he had to hold out for 30 minutes, and was sure that he would succeed. Doctors of the game company could not understand what was going on because the guy's speed and reactions in reality were slightly higher than normal. And during his stay in the game, these indicators were higher by 250 points, and it seemed impossible to the doctors. One of the doctors said that it was certainly rare, but still possible because Electron had the same thing, and another doctor said that the guy was in his 20s, and Almond was already in his 30s. It was really hard for them to believe it, but the guy's vitals spoke for themselves. Suddenly, one of the girls said that if the guy was constantly practicing mental training, it was theoretically possible. But the other one did not want to believe it because it seemed like complete nonsense. Still, the girl insisted that if Almond had been training at this pace for 10 years without missing a beat, it was already a reality, and it seemed strange because immersive gaming had only appeared 8 years ago. If this was true, the doctors did not understand why the guy was abusing himself so much. Yu Haiyan summarized that Almond had been holding on for 15 minutes and felt quite confident. His speed of movement did not change, and he managed to successfully avoid all obstacles. Suddenly, a huge mace fell in front of him, and he noticed that the further he went, the more dangerous the weapon became. He felt that the level of difficulty was increasing again, and he did not know what to prepare for. Suddenly, lightning began to strike around Almond, which was much more dangerous than anything before.